वीरि नन्दिनि नन्दितमेदिनि विश्वविनोदिनि नन्दिनुते गिरिवरविन्द्यशिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिणि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनि रोषिनि दितिश्रुतरोषिनि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुषुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
What I was saying. I was saying that thank you for joining. Let me know if the audio is coming fine. And I'm worried that audio might not come because I'm confused about the entire setup because I've moved to a new place. And so I forgot to turn my mic on. So since I moved to a new place, I'm very confused about this entire setup, and I've kept the mouse a little below so that my entire face is visible. So I was worried, yeah. So anyway, who all have joined? Lots of people have joined. It's great to see you all. This is our first live stream of the year, right? So happy New Year, guys. Abir Zain, hi. Vraj Modi. I thought Deep Savarkar on thumbnail meant Savarkar as deep state. Then yes. Nava Vimarsh, hi guys. So guys, are you all following Nava Vimarsh's channel as of yet? They're about to hit monetization, and they are already shooting like a rocket right now. Snehangshu, hi. Here to learn, hi. हाँ तो दिव्या बोल रहा है कि दादा तुरंत लाइव आ गए हम मैसेज करने के बाद. Yes, so we are basically going to discuss and listen to and react to two separate interviews, as I mentioned in the title and the thumbnail. First is just a half an hour thing that first mysterious sociologist sent me, then Deepda himself was, I think there's a way to post it on the WhatsApp status, I think, which by default sends it to everyone in the inbox. No, so so that way Deepda sent it to me as well, and that's how I found out about this person whose name is Pushpita something. Pushpita Gupta. Yeah, she's a Bangladeshi origin, British politician. She's in the Labour Party of UK. She's a councillor at the moment and a Hindu human rights activist. And I don't know much about her. I've seen the interview about 11 minutes. I did a rough search on Google and I found out that she probably had called for the independence of Bangladeshi Hindus at some point. I'm not sure. Vraj Modi is saying the Vivek Ramaswamy book was the first live. Oh, that was in 2025. I see. Happy New Gregorian Year. Yes. Already following. Thank you. Happy season New Year. Would you please raise the height of your camera? Okay. I think, yeah, looks nicer, I guess. So, how many black shirts do you have? I have been in metal bands since 2010, and I've been playing metal since 2007. So, how many black t-shirts do you think I own? Nice script, thank you. So, the second video is what Divya sent. Okay. So, Dr. Janaki Bakhle went on a Pakistani podcast. I don't know if it was shot in Pakistan. What a insane budget for them. So that's very fascinating, and I have no clue what she has discussed there, because we are discussing from our membership live streams her book Savarkar and the making of Hindutva. So I'm very very curious to find out what she has said about Savarkar in that live stream, in that podcast. And uh, we are at a weird time again, the midnight. I was supposed to start the podcast in the morning and then do my music in the evening, but so far my schedule is all chaotic. In a new place, shifting went on for days and days, my setup, etc., putting up the bookshelves here and there, all that went on. So it's been all very confusing. um, the only source of nicety and joy in my life right now is finding out every other day one Ajayatul composed Marathi song or the other, and then listening and then getting blown away first and foremost, and listening to it on loop for hours and hours, days after days. Okay, every other day I discover some other Ajayatul song. I have listened to all their best stuff. The Agnipat stuff, though, everyone has heard, but in the Marathi industry, Baiga, Baharlaha Madhumasa, then Apsarali, to everyone has heard. Then To Sandrati, then all the Chandramukhi songs, then of course Sairat songs. Now, just yesterday or day before yesterday, I found out about their song Khela Mandala. Oh my god. I'm beginning to realize that they might not have made a single bad song in the last 10 years. And you see, uh, people vote with their feet, right? You can call a place bad or good, but if everyone keeps emigrating to that place, you know that all other statistics, human rights, oppression, capitalism, etc., are all bullshit. People are going to one specific place, leaving all other so-called better places for human rights and labor, etc., leaving those behind, better healthcare of Cuba, etc. But if they are going to a certain place, that place is objectively better for that particular person, at least better than the place that person is leaving. In the same way, I think it's absolutely clear to the YouTube channels or the record labels who release Ajayatul songs that in the entire country, all of a sudden, people are finding out Ajayatul and re-listening to his songs or rediscovering his songs 10 years, 15 years later. Which is why I found out that they have re-released Apsara Ali with the HD quality audio just 1 month back. And they have released Khela Mandala just 3 weeks back. That's great to hear, because when those songs originally released, HD or quality audio was not available. The premium audio was not available on YouTube. They're making these available now because they are seeing the success of Baiga, etc. Have you seen the PM speech in Kashmir inauguration of tunnel? No. Omar Abdullah's speech, all people burqas and those people were clapping heavily, while Modi's speech, nobody was clapping there. Yeah. That's true. Well observed. That is the scene with Kashmir. 2-3 जनरेशन लगेंगे कश्मीर का माइंडसेट चेंज करने के लिए, वो एक दिन में थोड़ी हो जाएगा. Good night attendance. Current Marathi music scene. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because एक अजयतुल सुन के ही खत्म नहीं हो रहा है, बाकी और क्या क्या कर रहा है पता नहीं. मैंने अभी उनका पॉडकास्ट देखा एक यूट्यूब चैनल पे. Yeah, that is what we are going to discuss and listen to. Deepda will be on our channel. Nice. With him and Abhishek. Oh, very nice. Okay, let's start then Deep Haldar's interview of Pushpita Gupta. Let's see what she has said.
I'm with Pushpita Gupta, who's a 3-time Labour Party councillor. But she's in Delhi today not to talk about Labour Party or UK politics, but to talk about Bangladeshi Hindus. Pushpita, hello and welcome to The Print. So that's my first question to you. You should be talking about UK. Why are you talking to me today about Hindus in Bangladesh?
Thank you, Deep, and namaskar, everyone. And I live in UK for the last 28 years, but I'm from Bangladesh. I'm born and brought up in Bangladesh. What happened when I was in Bangladesh, when I was little, my father passed away. And then we have 6 siblings. My mom was really young widow. She got 5 daughters who were almost teenagers, although I was little. And that was a really struggle in Bangladesh to survive with young women, with young girls. And I saw the struggle. I actually did see the struggle. A lot of times there was a political powers, there was election, every time we were being attacked. And then there was a lot of hiding. My mom used to hide her daughters here and there. And I must say, my father and my granddad were a freedom fighter. And my uncle, who were born disabled, who were not able to walk, but he was a political leader. And he refused to leave the country while during 1971, although he couldn't walk. So he decided to stay in the country. So I grew up with these stories, like what happening to my families and what I'm seeing. And one morning, my mom became very religious after my dad passed away. And one morning she woke up very early morning, around 5 o'clock in the morning, and she screamed. We all woke up. I was very little. I went there, and my mom collapsed in her temple. Some people spreaded beef in her temple. She could not take it. And her belief was it is a punishment from God. She did not have any hatred from anybody. She did not believe that anybody could do this to her. Her neighbor could do this to her. Somebody can hate her. She could not believe that. She used to believe that's a punishment from her God. And mentally, although she survived from her stroke, that moment she had a massive stroke. She was in hospital for many months, but mentally she never survived from that. Although she died in cancer later on. But for me, they actually killed my mother because she had many opportunities to move to India, but she never did. She was a very proud Bangladeshi, and I'm her daughter. And the day my mom passed away, I promised myself, I'll fight for this. I will fight for my mother. And there are many mothers like my mom, many daughters like Pushpita. There are many stories in Bangladesh, and I want to fight for them. I want to be a voice for them. Even I'm living in London, I'm in politics, and my heart is in Bangladesh. And this is why at the moment we are told Bangladesh is not safe to travel. British embassy is saying nobody should be visiting Bangladesh. Me being a councillor, I need some kind of permission to travel to some certain countries. I was told Bangladesh is not safe.
You were told Bangladesh is not safe in UK?
Bangladesh is not safe to travel.
You heard this warning message
Yes,
in UK that you should not travel to Bangladesh.
Yes,
currently.
And also British High Commission from Bangladesh given a press release saying British should not be traveling to Bangladesh.
Right. So what brings you to Delhi then? Why are you in Delhi?
Because the sufferings of Hindus are,
Abhirzan, that is the point of us doing the reaction in the first place, and that is the point of Deepda interviewing her in the first place, that she's one of those rare specimens who has grown a spine, who has been aware of these issues. Although it's not like Bangladeshi Hindus are not like most of Kolkata people, right? But it's a majority of them are aware of the reality, but not all of them speak up. She speaks up as well. And someone asked something, Elliot, I want to respond to this. He's saying, bro, we need to do something on economy side. GDP growth slowing down. Elliot, I have a conspiracy theory answer on this. Okay. I think up until 2029, Modi is not going to prioritize economy anymore because he has seen that doing insane infra, GDP growth rates, massive development has not paid off on the ballot box. And historically, in India, it has never paid off. We have discussed this. You don't come on our live streams. That's why you often ask questions that come across as weird to me. But if you do check out our live streams with Mystery Sociologist, you'll find out that this has been a recurring theme of our discussions, that in India, especially Bengal even, because I don't know that much about other states, whoever tries to do real good, cutting across party lines and ignoring, disregarding just the narrative of their particular political party and doing actual real good for the citizens, gets fucked immediately. Because you can say Indians are loyal in certain ways and Indians are not loyal in certain ways. So we do hero worship and deify our politicians in some situations, and we don't when it's kind of required. Actually, Jyoti Basu went on screwing the state decade after decade, year after year. No accountability. Nothing ever happened to him. Buddhadev Bhattacharya, you ask any Trinamool politician today, Trinamool supporter today, CPM supporter, BJP supporter, anyone, all of them will agree whatever Buddhadev Bhattacharya tried to do was a good thing. Only some of them have this idiotic complaint that he did not acquire the land in a proper manner, which I don't take seriously even as a libertarian, because CPM had a history of not doing any fucking thing properly. Why the fuck would they take one land properly when it was for an actual good thing? So I forgive Buddhadev Bhattacharya for being not a perfect free market guy. But then Mamata Banerjee, 2016 to 2011 to 2016, actually did good works. Two examples I have given repeatedly. The roads of West Bengal were fucking MotoGP level, most places of West Bengal, okay? I was going around on my motorcycle traveling entire West Bengal, North Bengal, Sikkim, Darjeeling, Kalimpong, Jharkhand, Odisha, etc. So I was accessing a lot of state highways. All of them were absolutely beautiful, okay? Not just the national highways, even the state highways in random villages, okay? 2016 onwards, all of a sudden, Mamata Banerjee realizes, if I do real good to the people, they will become independent. If they become independent, they might actually look for better alternatives. So their baseline expectations change that, okay, so good roads are the normalcy. So why not now ask for good vehicles on the good roads? And if Mamata Banerjee can't deliver those good vehicles on the good roads, hypothetically, it's just a random example. So let's vote Mamata Banerjee out. And no politician wants that, because most politicians to some degree will be narcissists and megalomaniacs, because without that kind of insanity, you can't become a CM or PM, I think. Now, the second point, I think what Mamata Banerjee realized was that if people become too independent of the state and don't need or care about the political Trinamool or the government, then all the police officers, babus, the insane gundafication of the entire state machinery that has happened under CPM and increased under Trinamool, all of them go broke, all of them go jobless, and they are going to fuck my party. They are going to make me go out of power immediately. So fuck this shit. Let the state burn. I'll just chill. I'll be CM. Let these fuckers complain. Because if I don't, they're going to fuck me. Because that's what they did to Buddhadev Bhattacharya. Same thing with Narendra Modi. 14 से 2024 तक तो डेवलपमेंट के साइड पे कोई कंप्लेन नहीं था, फिर आ गया 240 पे. अब सिर्फ अलग चीजों पे ही वोट होगा. अब भूल जाओ तुम इकोनॉमी. अब 5% जीडीपी ग्रोथ रेट है, ये 5 ही रहेगा, 4 भी हो सकता है अगले साल. आई वुडंट बी सरप्राइज्ड अनलेस मोदी फील्स सेफ. He is not going to care about the economy, because no one votes on economy. Only you and I vote on economy, maybe. It's only the educated urban youth, middle class votes on economy, and even the hypocritic fucking socialist middle class who otherwise votes for CPM, Congress, etc., all of a sudden becomes anti-tax, taxation is theft libertarians when it comes to BJP's taxation. So Modi knows those guys are useless, and we know those guys are hypocrites. So who is he really going to care about? So 5% growth rate में ही अब जीना है.
It's enormous. It's not one interview I could explain. It's every day, every single day, every moment. You don't know what's going to happen next. So these people are suffering, and no media is covering them. No media is talking for any Hindus. Polices are not supporting. Armies are against Hindus. You probably know there have been attacks on Hindus in Chittagong, and armies were actually destroying all the CCTVs. And I call them my brothers and sisters. And because I traveled to Bangladesh for many years, my fight for these Hindus is for last 21 years. I'm physically active. I go to Bangladesh every single year, and sometimes twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. I also almost opened a autistic school in Panchgarh in northern part of Bangladesh. So the connection with Bangladesh, my connection with Bangladesh is very pure, and I got many followers. I don't call them followers, I call them my brothers and sisters. And they are hiding, they are in fear, they're living in, like, I cannot just explain. And I want to be their hope. This is the Christmas holidays. So I thought, this is the time. If I cannot go to Bangladesh, I would have gone to Bangladesh now to see them, to be there for them, giving them the hope. We're here, do not lose hope. We will fight for you. But I cannot go to Bangladesh. So Delhi is my hope. I'm coming here and seeking help and asking media, please do report on Bangladesh, please do speak on Bangladesh and let the world know what is happening in Bangladesh and what is happening to women in Bangladesh, young girls in Bangladesh. So rape, mothers being raped, daughters being raped, and that rape is happening in front of their fathers, in front of their brothers, but the media is not covering. And Dr. Yunus, he's the main of interim government. He's saying these all are India's propaganda. So if Dr. Yunus is not acknowledging what is happening in Bangladesh, then how do you expect the police or other medias or army will support us?
Ma'am, you say that you have come to Delhi to speak about the plight of Bangladeshi Hindus, but I believe you're not the only one who has come. There is a delegation of Bangladeshi Hindus from across the world. Could you tell us how big is your delegation and what is your plan of action in Delhi?
So
I'm glad you asked this question. My main profession is music, which is why I care about the economy. But I'm just one of those musicians who actually understands a bit of economics. But most musicians are so illiterate on everything other than music. It's absolutely, I find it cringy to talk to them or hang out and have a fun conversation about anything with them because they are, after all, artists. No art for being a professional musician is a weird fucking thing. You have to hit a perfect balance of practicality and emotions. If you don't have the emotions, you can't think and put yourself in the shoes of the other person or any other person and imagine stuff and create melodies and write poetry and stuff. But if you don't put a sort of a full stop on your emotions, you can't do the professional part of it, which is handle rejections, pursue people, and listen to other people's suggestions and stuff. So musicians have a separate part of the cosmos cut out for them. So which is why they understand nothing of economics, society, sociology, anything. Some of them understand a bit of philosophy, but all that philosophy is also regurgitated commie bullshit. So the moment you talk about politics or economy with any musician, it's going to be full of just random fluffy terminology, sloganeering. Why aren't people listening to good music, etc.? Those kinds of weird ass complaints. So I care about the economy because I'm a musician, because I know who actually pays to do music. It's either the biggest producers or the middle class guy who wants to put out a song of his. So I absolutely need those people to pay less taxes.
I represent United Hindu Alliance from England, and I have another colleague, Sushant Gupta, who also came. We have delegation from America, Canada, Switzerland. We have delegation from France, Oman as well, and
nice.
Some of them also from Bangladesh. I'm not disclosing their names because it's not safe. So it's what happens. So like people who live in outside Bangladesh and who are from Bangladesh, everybody cries for Bangladesh because we all want to see our families being safe. How would you feel when you are eating your food and your father and mother being killed? Yesterday, I met somebody who fled from the country, from Bangladesh, and he said, my father got cancer and there is nobody to look after him. And I know exactly how he's feeling at the moment because my mom died from cancer. And when my mom died, I was 8 months pregnant and I couldn't go to see her. And I know exactly.
Ritam, it does often seem like that, but I have realized that it's not necessarily the case. If Bangladeshis and someone can coalesce them and organize them into shifting to one particular state and forming at least one Hindu majority state, then their survival is possible, and we need Hindus to survive there, because otherwise, and this is a very crass and dark thing to say, especially with actual Bangladeshis listening to us on the live stream, but in one way, India is safer if certain Hindus do exist in Bangladesh, unfortunately, but because, I mean, you can't have another complete Pakistan in Bangladesh or a sort of a Palestine. But it's not a hard and fast rule, really, because let's say in the worst case scenario, if no Hindu survives in Bangladesh, or all of them have an exodus and escape to other countries, including India, then we'll just have to treat that country as a forever enemy or forever on war footing. So we'll have to spend all our defense budget on fucking them. So if we don't want that, and we don't really want to, if we don't really want to or encourage the displacement of so many people, then we'll have to support the existence of Bangladeshi Hindus in Bangladesh. I think the major way to do that is by forming at least one Hindu majority state inside Bangladesh.
Clear that this is my personal journey, and I can see this journey is not just my journey. This journey is, there are millions. There was 2 crore people in.
Abirjan, very well said. But the point is, if this happens, you'll never find out about it.
In Hindus in Bangladesh, the same stories. So these delegations, so everybody wants to help these people, but nobody can travel to Bangladesh. So we always have a contact. We last month we went to United Nations as well to seek help, and then telling them what is happening in Bangladesh. So we decided, let's go to Delhi and see if we can do something about it. We're not terrorists. We were telling people this is when I was traveling to India, I was telling in my social media I'm traveling to India because I cannot travel to Bangladesh. And the same with my other colleagues.
How big is the delegation, ma'am?
Delegation, we are 17 of us. 17 of us and many countries, yeah.
Right. So can you tell us a bit about this United Hindu Alliance? What does it stand for? Is it an alliance of Bangladeshi Hindus across the globe?
Bangladeshis and Indians, as there are some. Indians means they are originally from Bangladesh. So they cry for Bangladesh. Then they have the same pain as we are going through. They're not, there are a lot of Bangladeshis, Indians living in UK. They actually left everything. They had no choice. Like that previously it happened. It's not just happening after 5th of August, but it's been happening. We did not get much justice during Sheikh Hasina's, when Sheikh Hasina was in power. There was a lot of Hindu persecution happened. There were a lot of, if you must have heard, Rasharaj is from
M. Shastri lobbying in West Bengal. So there is a section, even among the Trinamool supporters, even among the Bangla Pakhis, who are, or the Rantak Pakhos, who are allegedly in favor of capitalism and stuff. I don't know how can you be in favor of capitalism and opposed to different language-speaking people living here on the basis of competency and at the same time. But anyway, they are capitalists. So there is a growing demand for that in the state, which is why Mamata has not completely given up on business, right? At least on paper. She's not saying that businessmen are evil people, fuck them, kick them out. She's not playing the Jyoti Basu card. The problem is that everyone who can invest in the state knows that she doesn't have her gundas under control. Everyone who can invest knows that she can't deliver the goods on the ground. That even if Mamata Banerjee wants business in her hearts, the state infrastructure, the political machinery, the state functioning machinery is dependent on gundas, tolabaji, corrupt babus, and corrupt police officers. So I don't see a way out. Unless some insanely great party with insanely great economic vision, with an insanely able chief minister is in power with at least for 10 years, 15 years, and has other ways to stay in power, which will probably include freebies. But I don't know how you do freebies in a fucked economy like West Bengal also do good for its economy at the same time. It might be beyond saving, but if at all it can be saved, it will be a very slow process.
From Bamanbaria, and he's a fisherman. He's a simple fisherman, and sadly he cannot even write his name. But they said he posted something on Facebook against Islam, against Prophet, and they announced in the mosque saying we need to attack these people because they said something. He said something against Prophet. So they actually ruined the whole village. There is the place called Nasir Nagar. They attacked the whole village, saying this is the propaganda, this Facebook post. But this is happening now again in Sunamganj in Sylhet. They're saying the boy posted something, but he didn't. It's just a comment. When we talk each other, you have to, if you criticize me, you have to be ready for me to criticize you, give you an answer, right? So they're not ready to get any answer. They're constantly attacking temples, they're constantly attacking Hindus, they're constantly bullying us, but they're not ready to get the answer. Even now they're talking against Bangabandhu, who has given us Bangladesh. So when you write the true history,
who has given us Bangladesh?
They're against us. They're saying, no, this is not true. So it's attacks from every part of the corner. They I would say they are very organized. They are very organized. Even we did not get justice when Sheikh Hasina was in power. We did not get the justice. But I think these people who are in power now, they were there when Sheikh Hasina was there in the party. The name of Awami League,
It's an interesting point you made that Hindus did not get justice when Sheikh Hasina was in power.
Yeah.
So why is the delegation coming to Delhi now? Why are you speaking up now? Why did you not speak up before? What has changed?
So the change has, like when Sheikh Hasina was in power, we were able to go to Bangladesh. We were able to meet Sheikh Hasina's ministry.
Imagine the standards of expectations that, why was a particular PM a good PM? Because at least we could go to that country.
We as in Bangladeshi Hindus who stay abroad.
I used to have meetings for the law minister, the home minister, even Sheikh Hasina herself. We used to give her the look, what is happening. Sometimes people don't know what is happening because they're busy with other things, they're traveling. But we used to go to Bangladesh. We used to have a protest and say, now we don't. I don't visit Bangladesh. This is my first visit to India. This is my first visit. I don't have families in India.
So people would say that it's only been 4 months since Dr. Yunus took over as the caretaker of the interim government in Bangladesh. So should we not give him more time for things to settle before we point the finger at him?
Even when he came, the Sheikh Hasina left the country 5th of August. He came to Bangladesh 8th of August. And then he actually acknowledged there are attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh. And then he changed his mind. He's saying he just recently, I forgot the date, I think 17th of October or November, 17th of November, he said in Al Jazeera, this is India's propaganda. Do you understand what I mean? So whatever happened in previous government, Sheikh Hasina's government, these 4 months it just cannot explain how many attacks on Hindus has happened. We have a spokesperson for Hindus, Chinmay Krishna Prabhu. He's been jailed for no reason. And we're not even allowed to go to the court. We cannot have hire a lawyer. They're not even letting lawyer to come.
Yeah. The way the Chinmay Prabhu case is being handled, if it was on any other country, every goddamn human rights related NGOs, lawyers, commissions, and adjacent professors, etc., would have been up in arms. The only reason they are not doing it, and the only reason they often don't do these sorts of things, is because the Hindus might get too pissed and do a genocide. ये क्या जेनोसाइड का जुजू है अजीब भाई, मतलब ये कैपिटलिज्म का जुजू और जेनोसाइड का जुजू हमेशा के लिए इंडियंस को का सत्यानाश के लिए रखा है स्टॉक करके. By the way, Nava Vimarsh is asking a very interesting question. That I mentioned Mamta did great work for 5 years. How, not great work, but pretty awesome work compared to what she did from 16 onwards. How she was able to deliver despite the baggage of 34 years, CPM Babu Thug Nexus. First of all, I forgot to mention the other thing that she did really great, which was break up the Darjeeling district into Kalimpong, Darjeeling separate districts. DGHC used to be the sole body who used to handle all these places, Kalimpong, Darjeeling, etc. And all of them used to go on doing their Gorkha Mukti movements and stuff from time to time. But Jyoti Basu decided, while meeting with Subhash Ghai Singh, that okay, I'm making you the king of that entire land with this place, with this organization called DGHC. You handle the funds, you have fun, chill, now fuck off. So Darjeeling, the place Darjeeling is not the same as the entire district Darjeeling. Okay, Siliguri and all used to come in the district called Darjeeling, Kalimpong, etc. The place called Darjeeling, where people go to visit, the hill station Darjeeling, that place reaped all the benefits of DGHC. And places like Kalimpong, etc., were absolutely fucked. When I used to live there, it was like living in medieval India, or worse than that probably. When I went back to Kalimpong on my bike in 2017, it was a completely different thing. Okay, the roads in Kalimpong, the hill station Kalimpong, were as fucking awesome as the roads in Salt Lake Sector 5, the tech hub of West Bengal. When I was in Kalimpong, the connection, the cultural connection that she was able to execute. Okay, that's what I'm giving an example of. When I lived in Kalimpong, the people of Kalimpong often didn't know the name of the chief minister of West Bengal, the prime minister of India, etc., except the families, patriotic Nepali families whose kids serve in the army, of course. So when I go back to Kalimpong, I'm seeing Nepali posters of Trinamool Congress with Nepali people in the posters, Nepali leaders and stuff from Trinamool Congress that they had groomed. And all of them welcoming Mamata Banerjee and all, because she used to go on visiting Kalimpong. And that really pissed off the former Subhash Gising people and all the people who were reaping the benefits in the Darjeeling Hill Station. That was a brilliant divide and conquer policy. So those sorts of things. Now, how did she do that? The same way that Narendra Modi did it after coming to power, after a fucked system was left behind by Congress. How? The way Narendra Modi did it 2014 onwards, the way Mamata Banerjee did it 2011 to 2016, is with the help of a word which Sanjeev Sanyal also has used repeatedly in some interviews up until 2-3 years back, on which we can't really put all our hopes on, which is conviction, just the desire or the will to do it, or the will to do good. That no, I am a prime minister, I am a chief minister, I will do good for the people no matter what the fuck. I won't think 10 years where my party will be. I won't think whether I'll get re-elected or not. I have to do these nice, awesome things for the place I'm representing. So by sheer force of will, that's how Vietnam or Ho Chi Minh City and all, they are seemingly first world cities. We can't manage that kind of a standard of living in most of our cities. So how is that? Vietnam, Sanjeev Sanyal, I'm going to paraphrase Sanjeev Sanyal here. He used to say that first we used to give the excuse that we are a poor country, therefore we can't do it. Now we are a much richer country and we still can't do a lot of things. What the fuck is going on? So the main issue is intention, conviction. So Mamata Banerjee का intention था, conviction था 11 से 16. नरेंद्र मोदी का इंटेंशन कन्विक्शन सब दिख गया है 14 से 24 तक. अब थोड़ा इधर उधर से कम हो रहा है मुझे लग रहा है.
Because they put cases against these lawyers. 78 or 79 lawyers are under the murder case.
Yeah, is the United Hindu Alliance talking about Chinmay Krishna Das Prabhu?
We are, yes, it's absolutely. United Hindu Alliance are, there are more than 22 organizations in the UK. It's not only London based, it's in the UK, and then we're trying to, there are alliances in the Europe, and America and Canada. And alliance, we formed this alliance because what is happening in Bangladesh and what is happening with the Chinmay Prabhu. The alliance acknowledge, we're telling Yunus government, he's our spokesperson. Why he's in jail?
So you have the alliances told this to the Yunus administration.
Yeah,
we have spokesperson.
Yeah, we have given a written to British government. We have written to Bangladesh High Commission. We actually physically went there to protest and given a memorandum to Bangladesh High Commission and saying why he is in jail. He should not be in jail and we need to get him a bail.
So what is the British government's stand on this issue?
British government, of course, we kind of like lobbying, we're telling what is happening, the true story, because when the government, when the country policies, their approaches are different. So we have Catherine West from Labour MP. She recently visited Bangladesh. She had a meeting with Dr. Yunus. Obviously, Dr. Yunus given her false information. And Dr. Yunus said, yes, you are concerned about Hindus or minorities in Bangladesh, but we will be providing more policies for their protection. That's what Dr. Yunus told Catherine West. So you have noticed there are a lot of, there was a discussion in the parliament about Bangladesh. And the Course Party MPs were asked Catherine West what Dr. Yunus said and what is happening now. And now Catherine West is concerned. Just before we came to Delhi, we had a meeting with Health Secretary, West Streeting MP. And he's very concerned. He's very, very concerned what is happening. So he will organize another meeting soon. We go back to UK with Catherine West and then giving her the information. And giving her of course, she already knows what is happening in Bangladesh, but Dr. Yunus given her the false hope. But we have a PPG in House of Parliament. It's all-party parliamentary group.
Who the fuck gets false hope delivered to them by Dr. Yunus? How big of an idiot do you have to be to expect something out of Dr. Yunus? So who's being naive here? Either she knows everything and is being politically correct and therefore saying, yeah, she was kind of fooled by Dr. Yunus, or that woman was a dumb fuck herself.
For Hindus. So we had a discussion, and then very recently Dr. David Lammy.
अर्वाचीन भारत, पैसा, ये सब पैसों का खेल है बाबू भैया.
Given a press release from the Foreign Office and saying this is a full phase of what is happening, the full stories of minority attacks on Bangladesh. So the government is aware of what is happening with Hindus or Christians, and then Ahmadis are in danger as well in Bangladesh, as well as people who progressive people who are in culturally active or cultural activists. There were, there's called Shilpokola. They were doing a drama. They were stopped. No, you cannot do this. Bangladesh history, Bangladesh history and culture is very rich, very, very rich.
Yeah.
Worldwide, people celebrate Bangladesh. Even if
Yeah.
you go to London, if you go to America, you see when we celebrate National Day, Vijay Diwas, or 26th of March, the Independence Day, you see a lot of foreigners, English people are joining this celebration because they are very proud what Bangladesh has been achieved and what Bangladesh.
Rishabh, I'm not glad, but it's interesting that you pointed this out. But the problem that Ahmadiyas face, which you are saying that जहाँ जाते हैं मार खाते हैं, तो उनका तो ये प्रॉब्लम है कि उन्होंने बोल दिया कि प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद के बाद भी कोई प्रॉफिट होगा, इसलिए मार खाते हैं हर जगह. अजीब बात है कि वो नेशन ऑफ इस्लाम नाम का जो रिलीजन है यूएसए में, जो कि बहुत सारे ब्लैक लोग उस नेशन ऑफ इस्लाम में ही आते हैं, जिसकी वजह से रैंडम मुस्लिम सरनेम्स होते हैं बहुत सारे ब्लैक अमेरिकन्स के, जो कि प्रॉपर मुस्लिम है नहीं. जिस दिन इस्लाम 10-15% पहुंच गया यूएसए में, उस दिन देखोगे सबसे पहले डंडे इन ब्लैक लोगों के ऊपर पड़ेंगे, क्योंकि इन लोगों ने एक रैंडम एक इस्लाम बना के रखा है अपने आप से, ठीक है. एंड नोबडी इवन नोज द गाय, ओके, who actually created that religion. I mean, people know the name, but he's sort of a mysterious figure. No one knows his background and stuff. He came out of nowhere and created this religion, okay. So, and he's a prophet of that Nation of Islam religion, okay. तो population वहाँ पे बढ़ेगा जब सबको जब पता चलेगा कि ये क्या कहाँ का इस्लाम है, तो बहुत पढ़ने वाली है उनको. तो oh, by the way, yeah, I wanted to inform you guys, not inform, just share with you guys my fun experience of 3 days of my association with Kumbh Mela. No, I'm not going there, but how I was associated with it. So, Iman Chakraborty has been invited to perform at Kumbh Mela. Now, among many other musicians from the entire country, it's going to be a fascinating music concert as well, along with the other spiritual importance, of course. So, but because there's going to be about 40 to 45 crore people, they are going to do lip sync. Okay, not just Iman Chakraborty, everyone. That's how these events occur. Wherever such gigantic events happen, and the main priority is not the music, like in NH7 music festivals. No matter how big the number of artists and no matter how many parallel music concerts going on inside one venue, etc., they are going to prioritize the music only because it's a music festival and everyone's going to have their sound check and stuff. But in such places where it's a different event, but side में थोड़ा म्यूजिक भी चलेगा, वहाँ पे लिपसिंक ही होता है यूजुअली. तो पहले क्या, लाइक इवन ऑस्कर, ग्रैमी एंड ऑल, इन जगहों में भी लिपसिंक ही होता है. तो पहले क्या होता था कि या फिर हमारे अवार्ड फंक्शंस, फिल्म फेयर वगैरह में, तो ऐसे ही रैंडम फिल्म का सिर्फ गाना ऊपर चला दो, सिर्फ सिंगर जाता है, थोड़ा करके मुंह हिला के चला आता है. अब थोड़ा बेटर हुआ है कि एक इवेंट के लिए आपको एक अलग पूरा अरेंजमेंट करना पड़ेगा. जो अरेंजमेंट आप उस लाइव शो में बजाएंगे, वैसा ही आप टीम पूरा खड़ा करेंगे, उसके ऊपर रिहर्सल्स होगा और फिर सब जाके वो ट्रैक चलाएंगे और उसके ऊपर सब हाथ हिलाएंगे और मुंह हिलाएंगे. तो वो अरेंजमेंट चल रहा था इमान चक्रवर्ती का, और उसमें मैं रिकॉर्डिंग इंजीनियर था मेरे दोस्त के स्टूडियो में. कोइंसिडेंटली मैं जब इस नए जगह पे आया, अगले दिन से ही वहाँ पे रिकॉर्डिंग शुरू हो गया. तो 2 दिन 12 घंटा ईच रिकॉर्डिंग चला. थर्ड दिन 3-4 घंटे का रिकॉर्डिंग चला. तो बहुत बढ़िया शो होने वाला है, जो लोग जाएंगे बंगाल से. एंड द सेट लिस्ट दैट इमान चक्रवर्ती's team has created, the arrangement has been basically done by Iman Chakraborty's husband, Nilanjan Da. He's a phenomenal arranger, very reputed drummer, music arranger, tabla player, all of it. He first became famous with his band called Mrittika in Kappa TV. Kappa TV you all have heard, right? So Kappa TV mein he went with a band called Mrittika. They did covers of old classical based Bengali songs and stuff. So he has arranged all these stuff. So we recorded bunch of tabla, dholak, banjo, guitar, bass, everything. So the set list that Nilanjanda has created really fascinated me, especially because they chose Sojugada as well. So they have covered all the regions and stuff. They are doing Bihu stuff. They are doing Kannada. Sojugada is Kannada or Telugu? Kannada only, right? Someone was telling me that it's Telugu. I always thought it's Kannada because it's in Garuda Gamana Vrishabha Vahana. So then they are doing Rajasthani stuff and all of India they are covering.
Become Bangladesh before 5th of August. I'm talking about before 5th of August. If you look into the Bangladesh media on 16th of December, there is nothing. There is nothing. And the one of the advisor from Yunus government, he's saying Bangabandhu himself is a Rajakar.
Bangabandhu is Radhakar. ऋषभ पहले हो जाने दो, देखते हैं. अब राम मंदिर के इनॉग्रेशन में एक भी बवाल नहीं हुआ. दैट वाज अ बिग achievement in itself, but 40-45 crore is a different ball game. Obviously hoping nothing happens, but let's let him first execute it, then we'll fully appreciate it. And by the way, someone was saying scam. No, doing lip sync in these concerts is not a scam, man. It's impossible, because when the fuck are they going to do the sound check, right? क्योंकि फेस्टिवल तो चलते रहेगा, पूरा का पूरा कुंभ मेला चलते रहेगा. एक स्टेज में कहाँ उनको खाली जगह मिलेगा साउंड चेक करने को, है ना? ऐसा तो नहीं है कि 1 महीने पहले जाके साउंड चेक करके आएंगे. तो सामने अगर 40-45 करोड़ लोग खड़े हैं और वो अपने आप में थोड़ा सॉफ्ट वॉइस में भी दोस्त के साथ बातें कर रहे हैं, फिर भी साउंड इतना जोर से होगा कि कोई साउंड चेक ठीक से कर ही नहीं पाएगा. तो साउंड चेक इज प्रैक्टिकली इम्पॉसिबल इन दिस सिचुएशंस.
He doesn't even acknowledge. He's bullying him in public, in the media. Do you understand what I mean? Right. So they are destroying the culture. They're destroying the history. They even saying they want to change the Bangladesh national anthem because it was written by Rabindranath Tagore. They want to change the name of Bangladesh. Not only that, they want to change the constitution where Bangladesh was born. So it does mean that they're not acknowledging that Bangladesh, the Bangladesh country, they're not acknowledging it. They want East Pakistan.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So
no, Abhirzan, I haven't seen it.
In East Pakistan, no Hindus should be living in East Pakistan.
Right. What is your expectations from Delhi? Are you planning to meet members of the India government?
Yes, we have met, and we will be meeting.
You have met already?
Yeah, we have met.
Who have you met, ma'am, if you could tell me?
So I'm not allowed to tell that to media at the moment. And we will have a press conference on Monday. And we want Delhi to cover what is happening in Bangladesh. Find people who can tell the story, who can tell the actual stories, what is happening in Bangladesh. And of course, contact Bangladesh government and ask why Bangladesh government, or no government, Dr. Yunus released all these terrorists, the Hizb ut-Tahrir and Jamaat Islamis who are in the jail. They released them. Hizb ut-Tahrir is a banned organization. This organization not only harmful for Bangladesh, it's for India and the whole world. So this is a concern. This is not only concern for Bangladesh, this is concern for the whole world. So whole world should come forward and have a discussion with Dr. Yunus, why this is happening, why they've been released. Even I understand democracy. He's talking about democracy. He's saying everybody has the right to do their politics. Politics is one thing. Extreme views are one thing. This is we were talking about prevent. What is your prevent methods? When you're releasing all these terrorists from your jail, and they're threatening Hindus, or they're threatening the teachers, you have noticed there are no good teachers are left in any university, any college. They are forced to resign. They've been forced just to resign from the court. What has left? Nothing. And I think it's the time to Dr. Yunus to come forward and say, apologize, say sorry to the nation, not only nation, the whole world. What is happening in Bangladesh is not right.
Ma'am, there will be those who tell you that Bangladesh has finally moved from dictatorship to democracy. That the last election, 2024 election, was literally stolen by Sheikh Hasina because BNP did not participate in it. Absolutely. The Jamaat was barred by the courts to participate in it. So, she was an autocrat, and she was running the country with an iron fist. And finally, Bangladesh is moving towards democracy. What do you say to that?
Interesting.
If it is a democracy, there is a democratic way of resigning a prime minister. Why prime minister had to flee the country? There is a democratic way. Talk.
But it was a students' revolution. It was a mass revolution.
It was when they started. If you recall, they started for quota.
Quota reforms.
Yeah, quota reforms. Sheikh Hasina. By the way, I'm not into Bangladesh politics. I'm not a member of Awami League. I was not a supporter of Awami League. I'm a supporter of 1971 because my parents, my father and grandfather were freedom fighters. I believe in Bangabandhu. So that's why people think she's a pro-Awami League. That's why I'm fighting for my own rights. This is...
Yeah. Teno Heka Banzai. Yeah. Yes, lots of people have been sending that to me. I will have to check it out and do a live stream of it, discussion of it. 1924. Yeah, it's true. But my problem in this situation, in this context, is the same with people who say that Buddhadev Bhattacharya was too arrogant. He did not acquire land properly. Wait, look at the context. Look at the setting. क्या कौन सा मिल्टन फ्रीडमैन का चीज होगा ये इन सब जगहों में?
This is my personal journey. The election, I did not support this election. When 2024 has happened.
7 January.
Yeah, no, I did not support this election or previous election. I did not support. I don't believe in that. But if they are believing in democracy, why they are Hindu persecution? Why they kept on attacking on minorities, Christians? If you see on a Christmas Day, just 2 days ago, the attacks on Christians. So if we are talking about democracy, there has to be a democratic way of doing things. There is a talk, there is an acknowledgement when there is an attack, and if you need to acknowledge, even your ruling party doing the attack, you need to acknowledge it and you say, we will investigate. What is happening, we will investigate. They're constantly giving murder case against the Awami League government or Chhatri or even the students, Hindu students. Even they were not in politics. They were not in politics. They were just university students. They were given a murder case because they're Hindus and they probably have a friend. I have a friend who are Sheikh Hasina's ruling party, Sheikh Hasina's politics. I have a friend with Chhatri League. It doesn't mean I support Chhatri League or I do Chhatri League. They're just my friends. So because of their friendship or they're just attacking Hindus, you will not. Shamal Dotto, the journalist, he's been putting in jail for what? So you cannot talk about anything. If you talk about 71, if you talk about Bangabandhu, if you talk about your history, if you talk about your culture, you are putting in jail or you're given a...
Yeah, Abhay, do you still check out Timpul's podcasts? So they were taking this exact line of argument that what are they saying? That in order to protect democracy, we must not let people express their views on the ballot box. We have to prevent Trump from contesting elections because we have to protect democracy. Same with Modi. इतना democracy है, इतना democracy बचाना है कि democracy को मारो, उड़ा दो, थोड़ा गाली देने का कम कोशिश कर रहे हैं हम. So, and Suman Awasthi is pointing out this. Mark Zuckerberg said that Modi lost the election. Yeah, and I've heard this elsewhere as well. I think on Timpul's podcast only, that they are trying to create this truism, both leftists and right-wingers of USA, that yes, since 2020, the whole world has lost faith on their nation heads and head of state, etc. Therefore, Trump lost, then Biden lost, Trudeau के ऊपर से सबका भरोसा उठ गया, etc. And so elections happened in India. They just mentioned election happened in India, and then they mentioned that everyone in the West lost the elections. They forget that यहाँ पे भरोसा नहीं उठा भाई.
False allegation or there's something. So I don't think it's called democracy. I don't think it's called democracy. There is nothing is happening, nothing in order in Bangladesh. You won't be able to prove one single cabinet or one single place that this place is working properly in democratic way. Neither a school, no college, court, hospital, nowhere. The doctors were treating people. They killed somebody in the operation theater. They went in and they killed before doctor could give him a treatment. They killed him. They were looking for a Chhatri League student or Chhatri League supporter. So they were looking for him. They could not find the person. They killed his mother while she was praying. Do you think it's a democracy? So how painful? Can you put yourself in this position? Can I put myself in this position? I came here in Delhi, and because I'm talking, my mother being killed while she's praying. Can you take this? And this is not only one story. This is happening. This is constantly happening in Bangladesh.
So finally, would you say that
Deepda is looking like he's in the Everest base camp. And yes, Abhizen, mainly Dalit Hindus are being put in jail and stuff, and Dalit leaders in India are sleeping, of course. But that's what people don't realize. The majority of Bangladeshi Hindus are lower caste, right? And I think the only upper castes are most probably Kayasthas. That's what I keep hearing. The surnames are all Chaudhuris and stuff. Not that many Brahmins. And most of them are lower castes. उनके साथ ही अत्याचार हो रहा है. When we say Bangladeshi Hindus are in danger, we mean lower caste people are in danger. भाई क्या यहाँ पे alliance मरवा रहे हैं? So Rishabh is saying Jaipur Dialogues had a video about some clashes on the Bangladesh border. Not heard. When did they say there was a clash on Bangladesh border? I haven't been checking those channels for a while now. And Abirzan is saying the VAT, the Yunus government announced already made GST, yeah, GST and VAT in Bangladesh, yeah. Bangladesh pe bhi GST aa gaya. We have to pay VAT on Mish now. By the way, VAT and GST is different. Modi government brought GST. VAT was created by Oshim Gupta of CPIM, who's a pass out from MIT, by the way. Okay, he was our finance minister. Why isn't Australia suffering from? Because it's almost impossible to illegally immigrate to Australia. That's why. It's the same in Pakistan when we say exactly.
Hindus in Bangladesh are worse off today than they were before, or is it the same?
Absolutely much worse than
How they were before August 5th?
Much more worse, because there was the teachers. If you look at the teachers, you will not find any teachers in a university. Hindu teachers. I'm talking about Hindu teachers. None of them are left. No freedom fighters are talking.
I personally know some Hindus in Bangladesh who have been asked to resign, and if not resign, they have been asked to vacate their quarters.
They're hiding themselves. There are freedom fighters who had a suicide. He taken his life because he can.
I'm not exactly getting your question. Could you frame it a little differently? You're saying, but Hindus leaving their so-called ancestral land, isn't that the problem itself? You mean that they shouldn't leave the ancestral land, right? But if my grandfather from both sides hadn't left, I would not be sitting here doing this podcast. I would be having probably the same beard and saying something else from a different podcast, living in Dhaka. No, we would be piss fucking poor as we were back then. The 1991 liberalization of India's economy changed the fortune of West Bengal and Indians. That's why I'm a musician now and a podcaster and not a gamcha seller. That's what I was saying the other day on Navavimarsha's English podcast. No, yeah, they were doing an English podcast, and I was saying that upper castes at least have cultural capital, and lower castes have reservations and stuff. Middle castes, the Banya castes have some money. It's the middle caste poor ones like my family. They are the ones who get fucked every way. We don't have anyone to fight for us on the reservations and stuff. Not that I want reservations. I'm absolutely opposed to reservations, but I'm not even getting reservations. I don't have cultural capital growing up. I did get some of course, because of, again, post 1991 liberalization, my grandfather taking some bold decisions, then my parents, my mother teaching me a lot of stuff. But it's not like the generational capital, cultural capital that upper castes have, right? And I don't have money like Agarwals or other Banyas, and even the Ghoti, like people who were the middle caste Shahas who were here from before partition. I'm not rich like them, so kuch bhi nahi hai bhosri ke. And even then I'm opposed to reservation. So I was saying that as a joke that you are welcome, Indians, that I'm against reservation.
You cannot talk, you cannot do anything. Hindus never had this situation. They are worse than even 1971. 1971, India supported them. They were refugees in India. Now India not giving visas. Borders are closed. Hindus cannot travel to India.
What do you have to say about India's visa policy post August 5, and also what are your expectations from the Indian government?
Of course, this is their internal matters, and I would urge the people who are in real danger. I'm sure India government are aware of this. They should be allowed to come to this country. And we all have a right to live our life. We all have. And when they were being announced, some of the names were announced. We want their head. You will be killed. They're saying in public. They're saying in social media. They're saying in the media. So these lives matters. Hindu lives matters. So India government should acknowledge that Hindu lives matters. Even we Bangladeshis, we're Hindus, but we are from Bangladesh. These lives matters. India government should have a discussion, must have a discussion with Dr. Yunus and stop this atrocities on Hindus in Bangladesh. It must stop now. And we demand the release of Dr. Chinmay Krishna Prabhu's immediate release because he didn't do anything wrong. He's our spokesperson and he needs to be released.
Right. Ma'am, thank you so much for taking out time and talking to us, and all the best for your press conference.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You would be working in a sweatshop, yes, creating gamchas for USA. So let's check out the next podcast now, which is weird as fuck. Dr. Janaki Bakhle in a Pakistani podcast discussing Savarkar. Thanks to Divya Mani Tripathi for sending it. Brahmin genes. I wonder what they're going to discuss.
The only fascist state which had a kind of theory about what the state would do was Italy.
Retired lawyer, मेरे ख्याल से वो active है अब तक.
Fascist state. Fascism means the state and the business class, the capitalist class, or the capitalists collaborating, colluding, and setting one specific path that now no one can oppose because the market and the government are in cahoots, and all of them decide to do one particular thing and no one can oppose it. That's fascism. Like what was about to happen in USA, what was already almost going on and then is now getting deconstructed and getting destroyed. Now, this is what a lot of people don't realize. Please realize, DEI and reservations and stuff are not the same things. People often hate DEI more than reservations and affirmative action. Don't do that. DEI was bankrolled, funded by capitalism, which is why it was always going to be based on market realities. Okay, the capitalists thought that by doing DEI, it either they will get market benefits as well. Maybe the people really want these things and will get some good relations with the liberal politicians and stuff. I guess this has become the narrative and stuff. They realize it wasn't the case, and all of them are now backing down, right? Including Zuckerberg. Reservations are not going away because it has not been bankrolled by capitalism in India, or the market realities are forever going to be ignored because this has been done by just the state, not the market. So that was fascism. यहाँ पे ये सिर्फ state autocracy है.
So you're dealing then as well with an archive that on the one hand is slightly in code, right? Where you can't say things overtly.
While at the same time, there is a world of a difference between a Gandhi and a Savarkar, even though they may both be labeled anarchists by the British, by the colonizer.
Anarchists. ये anarchist word गाली के तौर पे यूज होना कब बंद होगा भोसड़ी के? Anarchy मतलब कि everyone takes matters into their own hands, and that doesn't mean just doing crimes. People, statist people have this idea that the moment the bureaucrat stops watching out for you or looking out for you, the only livelihood that people are going to resort to is doing harmful things to other people. और कोई काम नहीं है, सुबह से शाम तक तुम सिर्फ चोरी करोगे और खून खराबी करोगे, और कोई काम नहीं है भोसड़ी के तुम्हारा. Anarchy is not that. Anarchy is an absence of a state, and everyone else does business transactions with each other. And of course, whoever does break the law, they get fucked with private security, which rich people today anyway have. We pay for the pot-bellied corrupt police officers who don't protect us.
So when we're looking...
I'm not sure. Perfect call. Perfect cell. Interesting question. Does anyone know if she's an Indian citizen or not? By the way, she's the wife of Nicholas B. Dirks, who's probably the top 5 favorite sociologists of mine, or anthropologists of mine on the caste issue. Nicholas Dirks, Max Weber, Declan Quigley, Irfan Habib, Dayabati Roy.
Looking at these historical figures, and we're trying to swim against the tide, swim against the
The British would have termed Savarkar a terrorist.
हेलो नमस्ते सत श्री अकाल अस्सलाम वालेकुम बड़ी खास एपिसोड है क्योंकि इंडियन
Yeah, good, Rishabh. Send them to me on Instagram. तो यही तो होगा, है ना? And people are selfish anyway. But when the system operates just on self-interest, that's when systems are so efficient and so not corrupt. That's when a society flourishes. Now, it has not been tried completely. I think ancient India came close, but there was some semblance of a state at least, because the king at least got something out of the populace in terms of taxes and stuff. But it stopped being that kind of an anarcho-capitalist area. Gradually, more and more, it decreased over the years, over the centuries, and it got completely screwed when the Mughals arrived mainly, and then when the British took over, of course. But even then, the British way of capitalism or mercantilism, even that was in a way more beneficial than what the Mughals were doing, and which is very interesting. It came to my mind when I visited the Indian Museum recently. It was built by the British East India Company. Even the Raj Bhavan was built by the Viceroy in 1780s sometime. Okay, so 1757 में 1757 में ये लोग आते हैं और 10 साल में ही वाइसरॉय बोलता है कि भाई एक भारत जैसा बड़ा देश चलाने के लिए हमको एक पैलेस चाहिए. He literally says this. He says a country like India needs to be ruled from a palace. I can't run this from a rented house. So build me a Raj Bhavan. Then people built him the Raj Bhavan, but in Bengal, where the governor lives. But near the end of his career, he gets show-caused for misappropriating funds while building the Raj Bhavan, even though everyone else, all the viceroys, and even when it went in the hands of the British government, all of those fuckers lived in the Raj Bhavan only. बस गाली पड़ी जिसने बनाया उसके ऊपर, ठीक है. But anyway, so the British were colonialists who came. They did extractive colonialism and left, or bhaga diye gaye. Islamic kings were settler colonialists who never even fucking got called settler colonialists. And the fun thing that I used to discuss repeatedly during the beginning months of my channel, that why aren't Muslim kings called settler colonialists? And then on one of our live streams, or I think video, I used to do recorded videos back then. We looked up websites of legitimate Ivy League universities and their sociology and anthropology departments and political science departments to look up the definition of settler colonialism. All of them mentioned only white people going to other countries. Bangladesh is not settler colonialism. India is not settler colonialism. Pakistan is not settler colonialism, according to these people. But those settler colonialists never got kicked out because people didn't realize how big of a threat they are. In the same motive of Buddha Bhattacharya getting screwed, Mamata Banerjee getting screwed 2016 onwards, or stopping doing good stuff and all. In that same way, the Mughals, who forever fucked us, they don't get kicked out. The British, who gave at least the tools for articulation and creating an education system to create more collectors for their profit. But those people who got educated in that system, they stand up and say, fuck off from our country. But fuck off किसको बोला जाता है? जिसने थोड़ा बहुत कंजर्वेशन किया हमारे कल्चर का, जिसने थोड़ा बहुत एडुकेशन किया, not the people who only fuck the country. So that's the way of the world.
इन हिस्ट्री हम पढ़ने की कोशिश तो करते हैं, जानने की कोशिश तो करते हैं, बट बड़ा कम मौका मिलता है कि टू हैव एन एकेडमिक.
And the bigger shame is that Savarkar has been kept away from us. His persona as a anti-casteism advocate, that has been kept out of reach from us. And what hurts me even more is his literary prowess. ये किसी को पता ही नहीं चलेगा जब तक वो सावरकर इंग्लिश में उनके प्राइमरी सोर्सेज से नहीं पढ़ेंगे कि व्हाट अ ब्रिलियंट राइटर ही वाज. क्यों नहीं पढ़ेंगे हम सावरकर? मैन, रीड रिवोल्ट ऑफ 1857 सावरकर्स. If you don't fucking cry after the first 1 hour or 2 hours of reading that book, I will buy you that book personally.
of her stature in the studio to have these conversations. जानकी बाकले बर्कली में पढ़ाती हैं हिस्ट्री. सरवारकर पे पहले आर्टिकल लिखा था, पहले म्यूजिक पे भी एक बुक लिखी थी. अब 15 साल मेहनत करके सरवारकर पर किताब भी आ चुकी है. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल नमस्कार कासाएस.
आपने मेरा जेंडर ही बदल दिया. ठीक है, वो मैं ठीक हूँ, बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ.
ये गूगल ने
अगदी मजे.
मराठी में कैसे हो जेंडर्ड होता है.
कशे आहात.
कशा आहात is for women.
No, कसा आहेस would be what you would say for a man.
अच्छा.
कशे आहात is what you would say for a woman. और कशी है.
AI कितना पेट्रियार्कल है.
हाँ, बहुत पेट्रियार्कल है.
कि उसने सिर्फ मुझे सिर्फ मेल ऑप्शन
मुझे मर्द बना दिया.
बट कैसी हैं आप?
मैं बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ. मैं बहुत खुश हूँ यहाँ आके.
कैसा कराची आपको कैसा टेक
बहुत
कर रहा है?
बढ़िया. I'm loving coming to Karachi. I had come to Lahore some years ago, which was also wonderful, and had wanted to come to Karachi. And mauka mil gaya, so I'm just delighted to be here, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of the city today after your podcast.
Looking forward to how Karachi treats you. हम टॉपिक पे आने पहले मैं चाह रहा था सरवारकर के बारे में हम थोड़ी जाने.
Bangladesh didn't really convert. They were not. Most of them were not in the Hindu Varna fold because they were mostly tribal people.
एंड एज प्रोफेसर्स हमारे कहते हैं कि कोई स्टूपिड क्वेश्चंस नहीं होते. मैं आई विल चैलेंज दैट नोशन बाय आस्किंग स्टूपिड क्वेश्चंस बिकॉज़ मुझे इतना नहीं पता. बट बिफोर वी एक्चुअली गेट इनटू द सब्जेक्ट, ये जो एक तरीका है सोचने का कि कॉलोनियलिज्म ने हमारा जो जहन है वो एक तरह से माइल किया, एक इट मेड अस थिंक अलोंग सर्टेन लाइंस. सो जो नेशनलिस्ट हिस्ट्रीज इंडिया में लिखी जा रही हैं वो एज अ रिस्पॉन्स to
100% current state incentivization of keeping caste identities alive. जहां जहां पे नहीं है वहां पे क्यों नहीं है, और जहां जहां पे है वहां पे क्या ऐसा है कि वहां पे चल रहा है, यही हमको पूछना है. Unless someone says that the places in India where there is no casteism, people are just better, nicer people, and the places where there is casteism, they are just fucking assholes for some mysterious reason. उसके पानी में कुछ अलग जहर है, इसलिए वो लोग भोसड़ी वाले हैं. ऐसा अगर कोई बोलता है तो ऑफ कोर्स दे कैन लिव इन देयर इमेजिनरी वर्ल्ड. आई डोंट. आई बिलीव द सोसाइटी रन्स ऑन कन्वीनियंस एंड इंसेंटिव्स. तो भाई आज का कास्टिज्म एग्जिस्ट कर ही रहा है क्योंकि हर कास्ट को कोई ना कोई कुछ तरह से इंसेंटिवाइज कर रहा है अपने कास्ट के नाम पे भाषणबाजी करने के लिए. उसके वजह से ही जो कास्टिज्म का खराब बिहेवियर का जो एक सोर्स रह गया था वो सोर्स भी नहीं जा रहा है क्योंकि कास्ट आइडेंटिटी ही नहीं जा रहा है.
कॉलोनियल हिस्ट्रीज हैं तो उस चीज को हम डिटैच कैसे करें. बिकॉज यस दे आर ट्राइंग टू बी एंटी कॉलोनियल, दे आर ट्राइंग टू बी डी कॉलोनियल. बट जिस तरह रुमिला थापड़ भी लिखती हैं कि के.एम. मुंशी जैसे लोग कोशिश तो नेशनलिस्ट हिस्ट्री करने की कर रहे हैं, बट जो कॉलोनियल ट्रोप्स हैं वो उनमें ऑलरेडी पाए जाते हैं. तो दिस एक्टिव डी कॉलोनियल नेशनलिस्ट हिस्ट्री लिखने का जो प्रोसेस है उसमें भी कॉलोनियलिज्म सीप इन हो रहा है.
See, if you're going to write a history of a period in which colonial occupation is not just powerful, but colonialism in India, in British India, is not the outright conquest of one country by the other, right? It is a trading company, the East India Company, which establishes a foothold, and then there's a slow creep, if you will, in three ways. Yeah, one through direct conquest, but the other two ways are not direct conquest. They're through treaties, they're through other kinds of arrangements. But bit by bit, right, over the course of 100 years, from 1757 to 1848, say,
before she and the host goes on a tirade of saying how evil the British people were. Of course they were absolutely insane fascists. Not exactly fascist, yeah, kind of fascist as well. But remember at least that they were more often than not getting the help of Hindu leaders here and there and Hindu kings here and there, because people who were fed up with Muslim rule as well. Okay,
British East India Company acquires 1 million square miles of territory. Now, this does not happen without sort of a deep interference.
Rishabh, I agree to a large extent because reservation तो नहीं भगाया इन लोगों ने reservation पे because they believe in the Dumontian view of caste. But I like BJP for doing one particular thing, which is flipping the narrative in every state. जहाँ पे जो dominant caste है उससे वो सीएम नहीं चूज करता है बीजेपी, कोई और कास्ट का आदमी को वहां पे सीएम बना देता है. दैट वर्क्स आल्सो, बट वो पूरी तरह से वर्क नहीं करेगा. ये थोड़ा बहुत ही काम करेगा. असली काम तभी करेगा जब इंसेंटिव रहेगा ही नहीं. हाँ नीना, व्हाट द हेल इज दिलीप मंडल सेइंग? बाप रे, ही इज up and turning the knob pretty quickly. मैंने तो सोचा था ये इंक्रीमेंटल चेंज करके करके आज से 15 साल बाद जाके थोड़ा ऐसे चीजें बोलेंगे जो आज कल परसों से बोल रहे हैं. What the fuck? Insane things he's saying.
And a knowledge of the customs, the laws, the religion, the taxation system, the legal system. And all of it gets altered in the process. So when you have 200 years of this and you're writing a history of this period, even if you're writing an anti-colonial or a decolonial history, which of course all of us historians try to write, you can't do it without taking colonialism into account. So colonialism को हम हटा नहीं सकते. You cannot redact colonialism from the picture. अच्छा, उसका भूत सवार है. And you have to address it. Now, the way to address it is not to accept a colonial narrative. But by the same token, you don't have to accept an anti-colonial narrative or an anti-colonial nationalist narrative, right? So the question for a historian like me and many others, most of my colleagues, is how you recognize and address colonialism, write a history which is not trafficking in either colonial or Orientalist tropes about Hindus and Muslims and so on. And yet you sort of challenge as well a kind of brute nationalism, which tends to be, in a kind of bald dichotomy. British were evil, Indians were great, or Gandhi came back from South Africa and liberated Indians. So the attempt to write, I would say, a complicated, complex history is really what all of us historians, including me, try to do, whether we're successful or not.
So when you engage in this process of writing...
Yes, some good questions here. Rishabh is saying, would it work in the long run to have a lower caste party face in West Bengal and cut off the upper caste triangle on politics? In one way, yes, and in one way, not. तो प्रॉब्लम है कि अगर सच में कोई लोअर कास्ट पार्टी होता अब तक वेस्ट बंगाल में, या फिर आज भी अगर पैदा होता है एंड दे डू गेट सम फुटहोल्ड, व्हाट वुड हैपन इज the weird situation that all upper castes are safe and only the lower castes get killed in every political violence and stuff and bear the brunt of all insanity, mostly face all the insanity of West Bengal politics. That would not happen. But the problem is, as we have seen in pro this caste that caste politics, all of these parties are socialists themselves. तो बंगाल का जो इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन है वो सेम ही रहता. In terms of who is safe, उसमें लोअर कास्ट अपर कास्ट दोनों रहते, और कौन मर रहा है उसमें भी लोअर कास्ट अपर कास्ट दोनों रहते. ये सिर्फ एक तरफा नहीं होता. The number of people dying would still be same. So in a way it would have worked, in a way it wouldn't have worked. Some lower caste people who have probably been killed in the last 5-10 years, they would have probably been safer and big leaders by now. उससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं होता. हमारा जीडीपी ग्रोथ रेट फिर भी गड्ढे में ही रहता.
History, and I know you've spoken about Benedict Anderson and how he's written about Jose Rizal and the idea that it's not just one way traffic. And वो Edward Said की Orientalism के बाद से एक consciousness आई है कि colonial history जो लिखी जा रही है वो implicit explicit biases से लिखी जा रही है. हाँ,
तो भाई colonial history का के खिलाफ जो bias का बात होता है वो तो सिर्फ अटक जाता है criticizing British तक. जो settled colonialists है उनके खिलाफ तो कोई बोलता नहीं है, तो इसका भी limitations है. So anonymously opinionated, thank you for donating 100 rupees, contributing 100 rupees to West Bengal's GDP. He's saying Maze karo, the Shahzad guy comes close to almost being genuine, well-meaning, but then the socialist globalist. Yeah, I know. He's kind of a run-of-the-mill liberal. So I had seen one podcast of his when the other famous Pakistani podcaster guy who lives in Canada or USA, I think, who visited India and was saying what a great transformation Modi has done to India, GPay, etc. UPI. तो वो सब डिस्कशन मैंने देखा था इसके पॉडकास्ट पे. ऋषिकेश जोशी, thank you for contributing $5 to India's GDP, West Bengal's GDP. He's saying, I've watched your entire Janaki Bakhle series. Thank you for your efforts, although it hurts to see a Marathi appreciate Pak. Yeah, वो बुक हम जल्दी कंप्लीट करेंगे.
But then अगर उसके रिस्पॉन्स में nationalist histories हम देख रहे हैं and based on people's ideas or agendas or narratives, one would privilege one over the other. So when you're going through these sources, how are you making that determination of reading these biases into different works? It doesn't mean that we replace one with the other. So the colonial goes out, or the idea that Eastern scholars, even though I hate that binary as well, but generally, let's say Indian scholars, Indonesian scholars have not engaged with the West at all. But that traffic, as you say, is not one-way traffic. There is engagement, there is conversation, but it's not necessarily predicated on a relationship of just them providing the theories and us getting inspired from it.
Right, okay. So the first thing is that, bias is not something I'm that worried about. I think it's inextricable. You try and work around it or against it. In my case, particularly in the Savarkar book, right? What I was letting myself be guided by were the sources in the original language, right? And so what struck me in particular, and I'm segueing to talk directly about the book, inshallah, I'll answer your question along the way about how you sort of try and write this history without either falling into the sort of Orientalist or nationalist trap, and recognizing that the kind of influence has been, or at least it's assumed to be primarily one way, right? And so the first thing that I would say to you is that I take and have taken a lot of my cues from my former teacher, Partha Chatterjee, right? And so I take them, in a sense, not less from Ben Anderson, who is a
Oh, she is a student of Partha Chatterjee. Holy shit. Partha Chatterjee is not the Trinamool Partha Chatterjee, okay? He is one of the most celebrated academics in Bengal.
extraordinary scholar, but more from Partho's response to him on the subject of nationalism. So the idea about nationalism.
कोई अभी बोल रहा था कि बंगाली ब्राह्मण्स वो ज्यादा ओके है या मराठी ब्राह्मण्स, तो एक मराठी ब्राह्मण ने एक और बंगाली ब्राह्मण का नाम ले ही लिया. दादा ब्राह्मण रहा है तो वो है क्या ना. Lots of reasons. They are in the academia space. तो academia ही ब्राह्मण्स का काम है. तो if someone says that writing the past texts of Hinduism was not academia, then I can't do anything, talk to them. But I consider that to be the academia of those years, the yesteryears. But since they remained in the academic space, अब academic space ही कमी बन गया तो वो भी कमी बन गए. People are gullible nut jobs, no matter how educated they are, more often than not. And उसके बाद एक और प्रश्न मैं उत्तर देने वाला था, कहाँ गया? Yeah, why people, why Bengalis hate Marathas and stuff. Yeah, तो वो जो बोर्गियों का अटैक होता था, तो उसमें they were fighting Muslim kings of Bengal, but the collateral damage was happening to the Hindu and Muslim villagers, common people of Bengal. उनके घर वर जला के भाग जाते थे वो लोग.
For instance, was that it was invented in Europe in some capacity. And then it just trickles down, and all post-colonial or anti-colonial nations just follow. They tumble, if you will, into a kind of spiral of mimicry. Okay? What the West does, we just do. In India, thoda sa namak mirch laga ke, thoda sa masala dal ke, but fundamental alteration nahi hoti. Partho challenged this thesis, and he challenged it in fundamental ways by splitting it into the thematic and the programmatic. So the thematic of nationalism, you could say, came from Europe, but its historical articulation in India, in particular in India, was not mimetic. It was not mimetic. And Partho demonstrates this through looking at these three moments in the history of Indian nationalism.
तो उसके बाद भाई आशीष नंदी फिर काहे सावरकर को बोलता है कि ये तो भाई वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन नेशनलिज्म हो गया.
But that is and has been a very influential kind of way for me of looking at this material, where you don't say that, look, I'm going to do something which is completely divorced from any influence of the West, right? You can't. Much like colonialism hovers over us. A former colleague of mine, Sudipto Kaviraj, had responded to a similar question. He said the ghost of Europe hovers over us. So in my case, I follow, okay, not exactly, but I follow the kind of way in which Partho approached it, which is that regardless of the thematic or the theoretical, the historical articulation of that thematic disallows a kind of easy ascription of mimicry to it. Yeah? And so that's the way I approached this book too, which was to say, there's no doubt that Savarkar, like any other intellectual of his time in the 1920s, would have read what we would today call the stalwarts of a sort of European intellectual history, or a British intellectual
Garibaldi,
history.
Mazzini.
He would have read Mill, he would have read Macaulay, but he would have read Nietzsche, he would have read Spencer. And Savarkar actually gives you all of those texts. You can find them in the various sources.
Yeah.
You don't find much evidence, by the way, that he read Marx, but he did read Mill, and he read Macaulay, and he clearly read Mazzini, and he read Garibaldi. So he was sort of focused on reading material that was relevant to his agenda about a kind of anti-colonial nationalism. But at the same time, Shehzad, right, what struck me when I wrote the book was that the regional, local, sort of deep rooting that he had in Maharashtra.
अरे इतने सारे बढ़िया प्रश्न,
Marathi poetry.
बढ़िया प्रश्न मुझे मत पूछो, मुझे सब उत्तर देने का मन कर रहा है. तो first thing is, I want to point out to people that Janaki Bakhle, we have read about half of the book, has done very, very, very rigorous research while writing the book. She has gone through archives of today's Indian police, the past British police data, and even Scotland Yard data, found countless sources from here and there saying, which shows that Savarkar was practically under surveillance ever since he was 16 years old. Okay, ये सब बाखले के book से ही हमको मिलता है. I have another conspiracy theory in my mind that Janaki Bakhle might have been hired or kind of been nudged or pushed by American Hindutwadis, who I have seen in many examples. Some of them who are part of those organizations like the RSS and VHP branches of America and stuff. They really do good stuff. I think they are the ones. ये मैं हिंदी में बोलता हूँ, ठीक है? तुलसी basically हमारी बंदी है. विवेक शायद हमारा बंदा है, सुहाग शुक्ला के साथ उसका तस्वीर वस्वीर भी आ गया है, तो उन लोगों में बात शायद होता ही है। अब चंद्र आर्या भी शायद वैसा कुछ खेल है, पता नहीं है, आई हैव नॉट फॉलोड हिम टू दैट एक्सटेंट, बट मुझे लगता है कि जानकी बाखले को भी इन लोगों ने ही अप्रोच किया था कि आप अपने तरफ से एक ऑनेस्ट रिसर्च कीजिए सावरकर के ऊपर और देखिए, आप तो है गांधीवादी, मगर आप लिखिए अच्छा रिसर्च से क्या मिलता है आपको। तो when she does write the book, what she's saying is that yes, Savarkar might have been a stooge for the British, even though she doesn't give any evidence of it. She just goes on repeating it and tries to insinuate it at best. Okay, she basically hopes that we believe. She hopes that we take her emotions into account and conclude that yes, maybe Savarkar was doing all of these fascinating, awesome, brilliant things because the British wanted to use him against Muslims. But she goes on dismantling one myth against Savarkar after the other. She shows that Savarkar was being unfairly profiled and was under surveillance ever since he was 16 years old. The British were being fascist against everyone, including Savarkar. Savarkar suffered. Savarkar was against casteism. And the biggest of all, the Muchlek argument, the Mafivid argument, वो तो जानकी बाखले ने 5-6 बार पूरा उड़ा दिया है. Okay, any commie today, if they say the Savarkar was a Mafiveer, you don't need anyone else to dismantle or debunk those arguments. You have Janaki Bakhle's book to absolutely make a joke out of that argument. That has been possible because of Janaki Bakhle. She's the only credentialed historian in the whole world who has proven repeatedly in her book that the Mafiveer argument doesn't hold any water, because he had no fucking intention of staying in that jail. Because the people who give the Mafiveer argument think, because they don't know enough, that Savarkar basically had enough of the suffering after a decade and then decided मुझे भागना है यहाँ से भाइयों, तो मैं थोड़ा माफी लिख देता हूँ और मैं चलता हूँ यहाँ से. She points out that Savarkar started writing those petitions the moment he set foot in the jail, and that's what he did in every jail and every time he was arrested. Okay, and she says that he had no intention of even following on that issue. Okay, he had no intention of quitting politics. He was just doing that as a practical matter. अच्छा, अब अरेस्ट हो गए तो अब काकड़े भोसरी के कुछ लिख दो, गलत सही निकलो, फिर से अपने काम में लग जाओ. That was the sole intention of Savarkar, and this is being proved by Janaki Bakhle. So whether she's on our side or not, that's up for grabs. I think she is probably in the Dilip Mondol way.
In Marathi literature, Marathi novels, that somehow got severed from all of the writing about him. And the more I went there, the more I didn't quite need to make the case for a decolonial or an anti-colonial. It just emerged in the course of writing about him by paying close attention to his literary output, his poetic output in the language that he used and over which he displayed, as I came to discover, a sort of unparalleled mastery. And so that was sort of the approach that I took for this book.
Would you attribute this severance, and to make the case for the book that a lot of his writings in Marathi, surprisingly, are not being explored?
Yeah.
Would you attribute the severance to the limitations of translation? So, like, for instance, even when colonial histories are written about Mahmud Ghaznavi, even if the word is expedition, it's translated as jihad. So, and jihad has a certain connotation. It favored colonial histories to translate it as such in those circumstances. There is a word in the famous water poem. Again, I might be butchering all these words. Pramaham, which essentially means land of the ancestors, but a lot of people translate it as fatherland to make the case as it's the same as Pitrabhu.
Pitrabhu is
to make the case that it's to invoke the same idea that Hitler invoked in terms of the Deutschland. So once an English audience is reading that imagery is evoked without necessarily making that connection to Nazism. So you going back to the original text, how conscious do you have to be that when I'm translating these words, they may appear differently to different audiences based on their understanding of history?
That's a terrific question. Thank you for asking that. So let me answer something sort of prior to this question, which is about the book, right? So when I started doing research on Savarkar, right, I thought I'd write a quick book. Well, it was not quick.
Yeah.
It has taken far too long, but I hope it is better for having taken quite as long.
16 years?
As I could someday.
Ek lifetime kar le.
Bahut saal lag gaye. But there were a few things that happened, right, in the course of writing about this book. The first was that I discovered it's usually when you set about on a topic, you set about on a topic that you think people haven't written about it, to mail. मेरा उल्टा हुआ. I discovered, to my dismay, that everybody writes about Savarkar. Everybody writes about Savarkar. Scholars तो लिखते ही लिखते हैं, but उसके अलावा, RSS members write about Savarkar. Retired engineers, doctors, lawyers write about Savarkar. Then you discover
retired lawyer ख्याल से वो active है, अब तक मुझे lawyer
नहीं, लिखने में कोई हर्ज नहीं है, but I certainly could not go in and say कि मैं पहली किताब लिख रही हूँ, ये तो नहीं है. अच्छा, the incredible, redoubtable Dhananjay Keer, who has written biographies of everybody. अच्छा, तिलक की लिखी है, Ambedkar की लिखी है, Savarkar की लिखी है. So there was firstly the discovery that there's an enormous amount of material on Savarkar and an enormous amount in Marathi on Savarkar and biographies of Savarkar.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of say, now what am I going to contribute to this, right? What am I going to contribute? Sheila Karandikar, one of Savarkar's associates, writes a book which is something like 450 pages in Marathi on 5 years of his life. So the writing on Savarkar, the biographical writing on Savarkar begins somewhere in 1926 and continues till today. So there's a long, steady stream of output about Savarkar. That corpus is very undisciplined. कहने का क्या मतलब मेरा by undisciplined? उसमें it's almost primarily a kind of form of secular hagiography. Acha? It's not a critical corpus. यहाँ वहाँ है, but it's not primarily a critical corpus. And that led me to a different part of it, which is that Savarkar is generally approached, in large measure because of essentials of Hindutva, and what is seen as, rightfully so, as his kind of very angry writings about Muslims. He's seen in very polemical terms, and he invokes polemics. So in the course of those polemics, what happens is that either you have a kind of literature that just defends him as the misunderstood nationalist, the misunderstood revolutionary, the only important nationalist figure who demanded this, that, and the other, that India have an army, India have a navy, the only kind of protector of the Hindu community, right? And that's on one side. On the other side, and now I'm going to get to the question that you asked me, is the kind of writing that has him as a almost fascist, a complete fascist, a proto-fascist, tending towards fascism. I don't find the term fascism that useful, personally. Not because I don't think there are strains of a kind of authoritarianism or a kind of dominance in his writing, but because, for me, the only real kind of fascist state was not the Nazi state. The Nazi state was an authoritarian state, right? The only fascist state which had a kind of theory about what the state would do was Italy. And in the Doplovaro, in the kind of very carefully choreographed architecture that would harken back to then the third Rome, to the concept of Romanita. And the more I read about sort of Italian fascism and how the state was central to it, the more it struck me that fascism in an anti-colonial period in which the Indian state was still a figment of the imagination, it hadn't been created. We were still talking about the British state in India with the East India Company up until 1857, and then, of course, the British after that. So what did it mean to talk about fascism here? It's also the case that fascism is associated, of course, with Nazism, and it's associated then with the genocide. But all of that, the genocide, for instance, is discovered after the fact, right? It's not discovered in the early years of Hitler's rise. So the historic parallels didn't feel compelling enough for me to use it. And there are enough scholars who are doing that. So I didn't want to add to it. I wanted to do something else. So on the question of translation, which you asked me, it wasn't that Savarkar was mistranslated as fascist, right? Savarkar was termed a fascist by various scholars.
Right.
That wasn't the bit about translation that sort of concerned me. What concerned me, and what I was very grateful for, paradoxically, was that a great many of his Marathi works, which were central to explaining not just his appeal in Maharashtra, but beyond, were never translated and never read. So, for instance, it came as a great surprise to even members of the scholarly community that Savarkar...
For those of you who haven't read her book on Savarkar or who haven't followed our live streams on her book, one of the fun things we found out, one of the interesting things we found out was that Savarkar was writing about Hindu, basically. I have been kind of afraid to use this term because of the cocaine stuff that Tommy Robinson has been through, but I've kind of wanted to say that Tommy Robinson is the Savarkar of England these days. But anyway, Savarkar was talking about rapes of Hindu women, girls, young girls, systematically, basically grooming and stuff. And all over the British Indian state back then, British Indian region back then. In one of his writings, he in fact talks about Sandeshkhali in Bengal even back then as a place where Bengali girls are being butchered.
Savarkar was what I would call a caste progressive, right? My own former teacher who I invoked, Partha Chatterjee, when he read the manuscript for me, said he didn't know anything about Savarkar's caste writings.
Partha Chatterjee, one of the foremost social science academics in Bengal, didn't know about Savarkar's anti-caste narrative. देखो यहाँ पे है हम और यही myth Janaki Bakhle luckily is breaking. Like I've said a million times on this channel, I'll remind you all again. The syllabus of presidency sociology teaches Ambedkar's views on caste, not his views on Islam. Savarkar's views on Hinduism or Hindutva, not his views on caste. ये क्या है? ये मैनिफेस्टो पढ़ाया जा रहा है, क्यूरेटेड, निटपिक्ड. हाँ, इसको हम काउंटर करेंगे. काउंटर क्यूरेशन, काउंटर निटपिक नैरेटिव. और भी मतलब सोशलिस्ट तो अल्टीमेटली बड़ी आइडियाज नहीं ला रहे हैं, तो हम क्या इसको काउंटर करने के लिए अगर निटपिक नैरेटिव हिंदुत्व मैनिफेस्टो पढ़ाए क्लासरूम्स में, हम क्या अच्छे हिंदुत्ववादी बनाएंगे या फिर गांडू हिंदुत्ववादी बनाएंगे? My opinion is that both sides should be taught. Now, don't just teach Savarkar's views on caste and Ambedkar's views on Islam. Teach both their views on everything. But anyway, so you see, again, we can use Janaki Bakhle for these things. Finally, one credentialed historian is actually pointing out that yes, Savarkar was a caste progressive. किसी को पार्थो चैटर्जी को ही पता नहीं है. क्या अजीब हाल है.
Took me aback because I think of Partho as sort of probably the most learned person I've ever met in my life. And so I thought, all right, if I can surprise Partho, that's a good sign. Yeah. But it also came as a surprise to people that Savarkar was a poet, not an occasional poet, not a sporadic poet, but a poet by disposition, by instinct, by training. Written 100 poems, published his poetry as a young man, socially progressive poetry. And so I was very grateful then that people hadn't read him in Marathi.
Isn't his poetry as a child which first got him into trouble?
His poetry...
While he was still in school?
Yes, his father actually warned him that this was poetry that he should not publish because of British surveillance of sort of revolutionaries. The main revolutionary in the family was not him, actually, it was his older brother. But because of it, the family was under surveillance. So let me just finish off. So that posed another question for me for research, which is how do you write about a figure who has spent virtually his entire life under surveillance? Which means that he's cautious about what he says and what he writes. That he did...
ये एक कॉम्प्लीमेंट है कि नहीं? सबको तो ब्रिटिश कॉलोनियलिज्म से बहुत नफरत है ना. तो अगर नफरत है और अगर वो खराब ब्रिटिश कॉलोनियलिस्ट किसी को सर्वेलेंस पे रख रहा है, क्यों? वो दोस्त है भोसरी के 16 साल की उम्र से, माफी वीर है इसलिए सर्वेलेंस पे रखा था. तो सी, सावरकर इज अ हीरो टू बिगिन विद. What Ashish Nandi says is kind of interesting, or Ashish Nandi was saying that someone else has said it, that Shashi Tharoor was, I think, pointing it out, that if you take Savarkar's writings up until him going to Andaman or writing Essentials of Hindutva, then Savarkar would be appreciated or respected as much as any other revolutionary. Is the fact that he wrote that Mafi letter and petition and then wrote Essentials of Hindutva, that's what pissed people off. But as coincidentally I have found out from a very old Bengali encyclopedia from 82 or 84 or late 70s, I don't remember, from my mother's childhood collection, which my grandfather had bought for my mother when she was young. And in that Bengali encyclopedia, there is one paragraph on every goddamn topic in the world, and the paragraph on Savarkar, even in the late 70s or 80s, whenever it was written, I think Day's publication, even that paragraph says only and only good things about Veer Savarkar. What a great revolutionary he was. तो माफी वीर आर्ग्यूमेंट भाई बहुत टाइमली अचानक कांग्रेस वाले निकालते हैं. ये हमेशा से ये आर्ग्यूमेंट नहीं था.
Destroys things that he thinks would get him in trouble. So you're dealing then as well with an archive that on the one hand is slightly in code, right, where you can't say things overtly, and on the other with an archive that has frequently been destroyed by the subject of your research himself or his family or his associates or his friends for fear of British arrest.
You've spoken about how Indian nationalists wrote the history of how the Italians made bombs and how they transferred guns, which was obvious to everybody. That's a manual of what you need to know, but even though it's pretending to be a history of how Italy did it. Many years ago at NYU Abu Dhabi, you were asked this question as well, that in terms of who's called an anarchist, depends on who's in power, and what their definition of anarchy maybe is different from ours. But when we look at these figures and when there's a movement towards re-owning our own history, looking at Indian history, we reject these labels of who gets to define violence in James Baldwin. Everybody's spoken about it as well. While at the same time, there is a world of difference between a Gandhi and a Savarkar, even though they may both be labeled anarchists by the British, by the colonizer. So when we're looking at these historical figures and we're trying to swim against the tide, swim against the colonial histories, how do we still acknowledge the fact that a Bhagat Singh or a Gandhi or a Savarkar may have worlds of differences and still be critical of certain ideas, not just
वर्ल्ड्स ऑफ डिफरेंसेस? हाँ, भगत सिंह का वो लेटर हमने पढ़ा था हमारे लाइव स्ट्रीम से, याद है भाइयों और बहनों? अवतुदनी, व्हाई डजंट ही डिजर्व द टाइटल ऑफ वीर? Because he didn't die as a martyr.
How can we be critical of these figures without falling into the same tropes that we're trying to reject?
So the British would have termed Savarkar a terrorist. I don't think of Savarkar as a terrorist. I don't use that word for him. I don't. That's what
Yeah,
they
of
thought
course.
of. I mean, Winston Churchill thought that the suitable fate for Gandhi was the same fate that he thought would be suitable for Hitler, which is to have both of them killed under the feet of elephants, right? You just stay away from it, right? The thing about the archive is that you're dealing with the colonial archive. Of course, I'm dealing with the colonial archive. I have an entire chapter on police surveillance, the police surveillance of Savarkar, right? The archive is not something from which you get truth. Shahzad,
Yeah.
it's not, right?
Right.
The archive is a repository
Yes.
of a colonial administration.
Well
It's
said.
the repository of what in a moment of, shall we say, what the British would call a riot, or the British would call, a riot in Bombay.
Exactly.
There are dispatches being sent from one policeman to another, from one agent to another. That's not giving you the truth of what happened.
Right.
And in any case, truth is beyond my pay grade. Okay?
Well said.
I'm a historian. I can read the archive. But one of the things that I had actually said in my talk at the IBA was that I also take my cue, I said Partha Chatterjee, from a historian by the name of Reinhard Koselleck. And in an article, now the title of which I'm blanking on, but I will get it for you, he said the source exercises a veto power on you. And I take that very seriously. So what do I mean by that? So if I get a police report, which I did, okay, I have a police report on Savarkar. It's a compilation of material about Savarkar that a colonial policeman, a fairly high-ranking colonial policeman, will then depute his watchers on the street and the people who are doing the kind of grunt work of spying. Okay? They will get together, and then somebody else compiles that into a narrative, and then somebody else cleans it up, and then it's presented as a police record. So in that sense, that police record is already a palimpsest. Yeah? It's already layers upon layers upon layers of different people compiling that information. So what do I do with it, right? How do I read it? I read it for a number of things. I read it, first of all, that the colonial police believed he was important enough to place under surveillance, right?
Yes, यही मेरा point है, first and foremost, about the things in the context of she debunking common narratives against Savarkar. But M. Shastri's question, कोई इसका उत्तर अगर है किसी के पास, सोच के जरा बताओ. He's saying, Dada, what do you think is the point of this podcast episode? Why is even Pakistan experience trying to learn about Savarkar and revolutionaries? Why? They hated them. Very interesting question. Why? क्योंकि अगर मतलब पॉडकास्ट के व्यूज का ही बात होता तो संपत को ही बुला लेते. क्या चल रहा है यहाँ पे? Or are they looking for credentials that we only talk to real historians and discuss a popular figure in India for the views and stuff? I wonder. Anonymously opinionated, again, thanks for contributing 100 rupees to West Bengal's GDP. The ideological team that doesn't want to call him V didn't have any members, ending up in Kalapani. Wait. Moinak Bhattacharya. Thank you for contributing 2 euros to Bengal's GDP.
Then I go to why would they believe that he was. So try and get into the mind of a colonial policeman. Yeah? And then you look carefully at the writing and you look at the language that is used. And now we come to your question, right? Do they call him a terrorist? Do they say he is dangerous? Why do they say he is dangerous? What is the activity that they consider dangerous? Well, they consider his poems dangerous, right? How do they know about his poems? He's writing them in Marathi. And so it's a kind of...
भाई poems dangerous हैं, हाँ? ये मैं कभी म्यूजिशियन होने का घमंड नहीं करना चाहता हूँ, मैं कर भी नहीं रहा हूँ, बट आई जस्ट वांट टू पॉइंट आउट दैट आर्ट हैज दिस पावर. ये पावर को मिसयूज कर करके हम लोग आज आर्ट को गाली देते हैं, मगर आर्ट का यही पावर है, और ये पावर की वजह से ही लिबरल आर्ट्स, सोशल साइंस, ह्यूमैनिटीज रन्स द वर्ल्ड, नॉट साइंस, नॉट स्टेम. स्टेम इज द एम्प्लॉय ऑफ सोशल साइंस. एंड भाई कविताओं के लिए सर्वेलेंस पे डाल रहा है 17 साल की उम्र के बच्चे को.
Detective work that you do, right, to just take that one document, which tells you a great deal if you're slow and patient and careful enough with it, and you're not using it just to get the truth of what the British thought, right? But you're trying to get to much more than that. You're trying to situate this kind of relationship between a British policeman concerned about, quote unquote, maintaining law and order. Well, we know what that is. And trying to get the kind of rabble out of the city, or to contain something. There's almost an epidemiological language that is used here, right? So this Chitpavan Brahmin, as they describe Savarkar, who is spreading the disease of something. It's almost like the British are trying to curb it, like it's an epidemic of anti-colonial revolutionary nationalism. And so I guess what I'm saying is that in the course of doing that work, willy-nilly, you actually stay away from sort of buying lock, stock, and barrel into a colonial narrative anyway, because you're pulling it apart to try and see how it was put together. And that process reveals a great deal. It reveals British colonial anxiety. It reveals why they think somebody is dangerous, and why they think, for instance, Savarkar and Gandhi are on a spectrum of dangerousness, both equally dangerous. Right. And so then when I'm trying to figure out why then did they release him? They had an option. They could have used the pick to leave system. They knew he was quote unquote dangerous. They've been surveilling him for all of these years. Why release him? Now I can link it to something else, right? So I can link it to what I read in one of these 200 Marathi biographies about what Savarkar was saying to somebody in the Andaman Islands about the Khilafat movement and why he was worried about the Khilafat movement, what he thought was going to happen with it. And then I know that the British are placing under surveillance the Khilafat movement leaders as well. So I put these two together. And then when I get...
So her section on Khilafat, we have not read it completely, but her section on Khilafat and Savarkar's writings on Khilafat is where her writing is the weakest. She just goes on randomly discarding all the concerns that Savarkar points out. But luckily, her being an honest academic with whom we disagree, she does bring out clearly as fuck the exact arguments that Savarkar had against Khilafat, at least, okay? Where we can, that's been our conclusion so far, based on how much we have read the book, is that she goes on trying to convince us that Savarkar was not a hero or not that important, and she goes on showing fact after fact after fact, and further reinforces in our hearts that Savarkar was in fact a Giga Chad. Okay, that's the result of her book, hilariously. Okay, one interesting point here. Teno Heka, are bhai koi easy naam rakho. Teno Heka Bazi is saying, won't Elon Musk change that? STEM is running the world now. No, STEM is not running the world. नहीं तो इलन मस्क को ट्विटर क्यों खरीदना पड़ता? बिकॉज डिस्कोर्स इज स्टिल रूलिंग द वर्ल्ड, ओके? इसलिए उसको ट्विटर खरीदना पड़ा. वो स्पेस एक्स और टेस्ला लेके खुश रहता अगर, तो वहां से वर्ल्ड क्यों नहीं चला? ट्विटर ही क्यों खरीदना पड़ा? बिकॉज डिस्कोर्स, बिकॉज आर्टिकुलेशन, बिकॉज सोशल साइंस. Let's see. How do you people get guts to call someone who fought for not Vira? Savarkar created... he has following among JNU students. It is like a hitman's job from Indian left. Who?
A scrap of evidence, a scrap of a letter which I found, in which there's one colonial policeman who says to another, because Savarkar has written this sort of apology letter claiming that he will not engage in political activity anymore, we cannot make use of him as we would like to. Now, what use would they have made of him? They knew exactly what he was going to say. So do they make use of him knowing that as soon as he comes back to India, or he's brought back to India, he may not say anything about the British, but he'll say plenty about Gandhi, and Gandhi is their biggest headache. So he comes back to India and he says things about Gandhi. So
this is another thing I've observed in the book, that she is a self-declared Gandhian, okay? Now, she's insinuating that the British used Savarkar to piss off Gandhi, to oppose Gandhi, or to piss off or oppose Muslims, okay? But that doesn't mean that Savarkar के intentions में कोई कमी थी, Savarkar के efforts में कोई कमी थी, ये नहीं है. She is pointing out that British used this skill set of Savarkar for their benefit. तो अगर उसके बेनिफिट से, उसका तो बेनिफिट अल्टीमेटली हुआ नहीं वैसे, ठीक है, मगर इससे हमें क्या? We are opposed to Islamofascism, we are opposed to Gandhism. तो I see nothing to be pissed off about Janaki Bakhle's book so far.
Then I can see that for somebody who is placed under surveillance, despite the fact that he violates the terms of his agreement over and over and over and over and over again, they never rearrest him. They just let him be. And so,
yeah, maybe for those reasons, that British were happy that Savarkar was pissing off Muslims and Gandhi.
So now what I've produced for you is a critique of a colonial surveillance system in the anti-colonial national period in India. And I haven't given you the colonial line on anybody, on Savarkar or Gandhi or anybody, but I've done it through the archive, and I've done it through a reading of the archive.
For people who are listening, their conspiracy theory ears might be perking up. So when you mention something like that as being maybe tactical by the British, would it be unfair for certain people to read into it as maybe a complicit agreement? Is there any evidence of that?
None.
It's just tactical.
So Angrez Bevkoof to the.
I mean, arguably.
You can't colonize somebody for 200 years, right? That's not an act of stupidity. That's an act of state strategy, okay, careful manipulation, the army or force, a combination of everything, all right, a combination of force, the instigation of collaboration, the takeover of native industry, so on and so forth. That's what I mean. And And the management of a colony with a handful, 1,500 covenanted civil servants in India, 1,500 covenanted civil servants in India, running a subcontinent, colonizing a subcontinent, right? The strategy played no part in this.
And no, it wasn't just strategy, bro. Rich Hindus and politically powerful Hindus knew the British staying on meant them being safer, them being in power, and if at all someone cared about the Hindus who were not in power and influence and stuff, so all of them were also safer under British rule. If the British left and Mughals are back in power, all of them are fucked.
The strategy played no part in what the British do. I mean, we know that divide and rule is one of their policies. We know that if the Hindu-Muslim communities came together, as they did in the anti-colonial movement, okay, unki to band bajni thi. So strategically, would they not sort of try and work against that? A unified opposition to colonial rule is what any colonial power fears the most.
I think uska shayad sabse badi misal 1857.
1857.
How monumental was Savarkar in rebranding that
1857?
from a mutiny to a war of independence?
I mean, in my opinion, very important, right? Because it's not that he's the only one. Marx was sending dispatches saying this is more than just a mutiny.
Yeah.
But the reconceptualization of
ये एक ना मेरा confusion है. आजकल मैं सुन रहा हूँ कि Savarkar was the first one to call revolt of 1857 it's India's first independence movement. And growing up, I had heard that Karl Marx was the one who said that revolt of 1857 is India's first independence movement. Can anyone confirm who said it first?
Mutiny in, shall we say, Hegelian terms, the introduction to that 1857 volume is interesting because he's actually making a case for something which is more. 1857 is neither a mutiny nor a full-fledged rebellion, right? It occurs in a swath from north to northeast. It's not, there's not very much happening in South India. There's not very much happening in Sindh. There's nothing happening in Bombay, right? There's nothing happening in Gujarat. There's nothing happening in Multan.
There's a lot happening in Multan.
No, there's a lot happening in Multan. You're right. But there's not much happening in Bombay, not much happening in Sindh. So it's the British downplay it as a mutiny, and they downplay it as a mutiny also because they're used to such mutinies. It's not the first mutiny. There was another one in Vellore before it. But it's not a full-blown rebellion, all right? And Savarkar actually reconceptualizes it as a national rebellion or a kind of the stirrings of a national consciousness, right? Very Hegelian. And he does that in the introduction. The book is, the best way to get a book read is to ban it, okay? The best way to get a book read is to ban it. So the British ban it. So
The Barbara Streisand effect.
Of course, it circulates underground. Now, here's where it's very difficult to figure out exactly how many copies and how they circulated. But once again, the police archive tells you what,
Ban karoge, black market mein pahunch jayega immediately.
It tells you that they found copies of this book that were smuggled in between the covers of a Bible or in between the covers of an English novel. And so you can tell the importance of the book by the rapidity with which the British amend acts to catch it. Right? So they amend the Sea Customs Act, they amend the Postal Act. They give postal officers, sea customs officers enormous leeway to sort of open luggage and things like that, all in search of a book. The fact that they're so worried tells me that it was important. I know Nehru read it and said it was a little florid, but an important book nonetheless. Yeah.
Bhagat Singh had also read it. They found it.
Yeah. So that book is important because of its sort of reconceptualization of 1857, not as a mutiny that was successfully put down by a Christian god working in concert with the British, okay, which is how it was disseminated in England, that, it was the hand of God that allowed for this victory. But that reconceptualization was certainly important. Was the book readily available, Shahzad? Ye mujhe pata nahi. I know that there's a sort of underground circulation of the book. Once it goes underground, it circulates and it gathers a certain importance.
So 1857, in Savarkar's mind, was it a unique event where the national consciousness was...
Savarkar or kya tha? He was basically a punk rock guy standing up to the state and circulating underground his creative material.
Or were his beliefs about Muslims, जो उनकी हम writing में एक evolution देखते हैं, 1857 में, it's almost very complimentary of the idea that Hindu Muslims are working together, they have a national consciousness, that doubt that the Muslims can never be loyal to this land isn't seen in that writing with that vigor or with that hatred, if I may say so. So would you say that he views 1857 uniquely, or would you say that his ideas about Muslims in India evolved after writing that book?
So my argument is that there is not the kind of radical change that other scholars have put. And I'm bucking the trend here, right? I mean, there are very, very learned scholars, Marathi scholars, Yadi Phadke, for instance, or even Senapati Bapat, who would say, I want back the Savarkar of a previous period, not the one afterwards. Or Yadi Phadke would say his experiences in the Andamans really turned him against Muslims. I'm not that's just not an argument that has ever made adequate sense for me, right? And for a lot of reasons. So let me get to the 1857 book. There is a consistency of argument between the 1857 book, Essentials of Hindutva, and in his other writings. And that is simply this, which is that Muslims are in a minority in India. But if they sort of pledge allegiance and a monogamous commitment to India, then there's no trouble with them. There's no problem. It's not their Pitrabhu and Punyabhu, without a doubt. Because उनके पैगंबर नहीं थे in the territory of what he calls India. Okay? But so long as they are patriotic, that their loyalty is not divided, कोई problem नहीं है. Okay? In 1857, he sees that. Now, in 1857, he also projects backwards into 1857 this nation that doesn't exist. Okay? There's no India in 1857. There's no independent India in 1857. But it's in his head, right? The conception of a nation is in his head. And in that conception, because the Muslims fight side by side with Hindus against the British, okay, there's no problem. When you come to the Khilafat movement, okay, that's a divided loyalty. That's a divided loyalty. And that one sends him over the edge. So my argument about him is not that a bad experience with an Afghan warder in the Andaman Islands suddenly turns him anti-Muslim when he was not anti-Muslim at all. That's not the conception I have at all. There is an everyday prejudice that all of us in India and Pakistan and then Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, we live with. You know this, right? And by prejudice, I mean we will refer to other communities in language that is not so flattering. Routinely. You know, in India, Bengalis will refer to Tamils in one language, okay, or they will refer to Punjabis in another language, and since I'm Maharashtrian, I can tell you the language that is used for Maharashtra. They will speak of Maharashtrians as Ghatis, right? As sort of rough and tumble, not civilized like the Bengalis. So that sort of daily level of prejudice was not what
I thought Ghati was a caste and it was a caste abuse, because the only time I've heard the term Ghati is I think in page 3 or page 3 probably, or some other who's the director of page 3, that fantastic director who got accused of doing casting couch, something Madhur Bhandarkar, वहां पे वो पुलिस ऑफिसर को एक कोई रिच ब्रैट आके बोलता है साला घाटी and stuff. So I thought it was a caste slur.
Concern to me, right? I take that for granted. I don't think any late 19th, early 20th century male, female living in British India was not full of some kind of prejudice, right? That would be silly to assume. So I don't think that a kind of anti-Muslim prejudice pops out of the sky in the Andaman Islands and then all of a sudden he turns that. What was interesting for me was the kind of excess almost that I saw in his writings. Okay? And I saw that excess coupled with the Khilafat movement. And I saw it not because of religion, which is why I completely reject the idea of him as a religious fundamentalist, among other reasons. But it is because it confirms for him, okay, something that he suspected all along, or he held all along, which is that it wasn't clear that Muslims would be patriotic. Okay, and the Khilafat movement suggests to him, even though the nation is nowhere in sight, it's nowhere around in 1920 to 24, right? But the fact.
अरे ये क्या आर्गुमेंट है? अरे नेशन साइट में नहीं है इसलिए खिलाफत को क्रिटिसाइज करना गलत है. दिस इज आवर आर्गुमेंट. व्हेनेवर खिलाफत कम्स टू द क्वेश्चन शी स्टार्ट्स सेइंग वियर्ड थिंग्स. तो भाई बाकी कोई भी रेवोल्यूशनरी किस बात पे रेवोल्यूशन कर रहा था भाई? खिलाफत वाले को आज लेफ्टिस्ट नेशनलिस्ट बोलते हैं, टीपू सुल्तान को नेशनलिस्ट बोलते हैं, और फिर फ्रीडम फाइटर बोलते हैं. तो फ्रीडम किस बात का हो रहा था भोसरी के? इंडियन नेशन स्टेट तब नहीं था, तो ये लोग किस बात पे किसके लिए लड़ रहे थे? सिर्फ सावरकर को इंडियन स्टेट होने के लिए वेट करना पड़ेगा रेवोल्यूशन करने के लिए? व्हाट इज दिस आर्गुमेंट?
fact that they would have an extraterritorial loyalty, okay, is what sets his rage in a completely excessive direction.
I mean, if we set aside, which you would find, which the assumption you would find in every prejudice, that Muslims constitute a monolithic community, when we set that aside, in the synthesis, while you make that argument, that Savarkar says that as long as they're loyal to the nation, it's not a problem, but as a layman, isn't implicit in that argument that the Muslims are unique, where everybody else will stay loyal to the nation. Their loyalties must not be challenged. But a Muslim, even if he pledges loyalty to the nation, it must always be looked at doubtfully, which is maybe not found in 1857. So the fact that Muslims must uniquely be doubted and must
तो भाई और किसी का उम्मा तो है नहीं, हम क्या करें?
uniquely be considered, as they will never be loyal to this nation because their loyalties lie elsewhere. Their loyalties will always be divided. So you're saying that they will always stay loyal to the nation, but implicitly you're also saying, but ये कभी होंगे नहीं.
No, you're saying they have to demonstrate it constantly. You're saying something more than that, not just that ये होंगे नहीं. You're going to say दिखाना पड़ेगा बार-बार, दिखाना पड़ेगा. So Muslim community has to prove over and over and over again, constantly.
हाँ, तो उम्मा जिसने खड़ा किया है उसको ही तो प्रमाण देना पड़ेगा. उम्मा बोलो नहीं है, हमको कुछ नहीं आता जाता है पैलेस्टाइन से, तब डेमोन्स्ट्रेट नहीं करना पड़ेगा. या फिर वो बोल दो हो गया डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन. अरे ये आर्गुमेंट, एंग्लो इंडियंस पे क्यों नहीं आता है? इंडियन, कोई एंग्लो इंडियन कहाँ उसको कोई ऑफेंड हो रहा है ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट को या फिर कॉलोनियलिज्म को, जो हम दिन रात गाली देते हैं? कौन सा एंग्लो इंडियन का कौन आज तक खड़ा होकर बोला है नहीं हमको दुख होता है भोसड़ी के, वेस्ट को गाली मत दो? कहाँ होता है ये सब?
Like the Christian community does not have to. Like the Parsi community does not have to.
I mean, the
Acha.
Jews in India also
Don't have to. The Jews in India
The
don't
same
have to.
arguments apply. उनकी loyalty होता
बिल्कुल.
है.
But the difference
हाँ,
between
why? That is the question.
those communities is that Muslims make up a sizable minority. Acha, ये छोटी
No,
मोटी
no, no. This was an argument given to me by a close friend of mine, presidency, sociology masters, and graduation. She said that yes, the only reason you are bringing out all these problems in terms of just Muslims, and you are saying that Hindus have never had any problems with other minorities and stuff, is because Muslims are a big, sizable minority. So, to which I said that, okay, you see, it's not, their population didn't fall out of the sky. So how did they become the majority? Why else isn't the other minorities that big? The procedure that happened in them becoming such a big minority is the procedure we are concerned about. That is the core problem, and that procedure has everything to do with the ummah thinking. तब क्या करें? तब डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करना पड़ेगा. तब बोलो पैलेस्टाइन का माँ का, उसके बाद हम नहीं पूछेंगे डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करने को.
नहीं है. Okay. And the contrast for me is with Gandhi. Okay, and this is the other thing, right? Which is that when you write any history of the modern period, which is the colonial period, you can't write it without Gandhi. Okay, the ghost of Europe hovers over us. Gandhi ke bagair, it's just not possible. I mean, then you're writing a very redacted history if you take Gandhi out of the picture, because there is no other politician with that kind of world historical power, right? It would be like writing or trying to write the history of the African American civil rights movement and saying, "Bhaiya Martin Luther King ke baare mein likhenge." Acha. And so so let me answer a slightly different question as well, which is that what I was going for in this book was not just a biography of Savarkar, okay? Because there's so many written about it. I was going after the intellectual history and appeal of an ideology, right? And how it was seeded and how it sort of stays on the back burner for a little while, for a good 40 years. And then the explanations that, no, Hindutva or this ideology is completely linked to liberalization, the sort of economically deterministic argument. I didn't find that. I felt much more that, to quote Hegel again, the owl of Minerva flies at dusk. And if that period of the 90s is dusk, then that owl of Minerva had been perched for a good long time and had been perched for 100 odd years, and that the 1920s were a much more formative period to figure out how in this kind of shared crucible, that Savarkar was part of that conversation with Gandhi and Nehru and Jinnah and Ambedkar and so on and so forth, and Maulana Azad and Vallabhbhai Patel, all of these figures, halaki I've only named many, those ke liye maaf kare, Sarojini Naidu, among others, that to sort of understand the kind of deep history of this ideology, you have to go back and look at those conversations. Now, those are not necessarily conversations, Shahzad. It's not like Gandhi, Ambedkar, and Savarkar sat at a table or at your podcast and sort of
podcast story
and duked it out कि भैया हमारा क्या मतलब है होगा हाँ फिर वो गड़बड़ कर देंगे ना translation की. But I could, as a historian, put them in conversation. Right. And even if the actual conversation didn't take place, I could sort of reverse engineer that conversation by looking at what was said when it was said and whether it was in response or what was happening in that period, to see how, for instance, if there was something that happened, like for instance, no, I'll go into too much detail. I won't do that.
Communal rights 1929-30 तक जो एक decade था, directly linked that to colonialism. So ये uniquely idea है, and I haven't read the book yet, but आपका जो article था, उसमें I think you talk about कि book Hindutva and its origins में, not the ones that Savarkar wrote, कि Hegel का outgroup in-group वो use कर रहे होते हैं, Muslims uniquely outgroup हैं, तो ये तो directly चलें सैम हनिंगटन तक नाम जाए तो ब्रिटिश colonial tropes है, तो ना चाहते हुए भी nationalist history, anti-colonial history लेते हुए भी Muslims का जो एक व्यू पॉइंट है कि बाहर से आते हैं, ये invaders हैं, मनाने मदासिफ की भी किताब है, book of conquest, रुमिला थापर की भी है, which rejects these origins narratives, तो Savarkar directly British colonial tropes use करते हैं about Muslims.
Tropes. अरे कोई कारण नहीं है वो ट्रोप्स का, वो ट्रोप्स ऐसे ही आसमान से टपक पड़ते हैं सिर्फ उम्मा वालों के खिलाफ.
बिल्कुल. And that is exactly correct. And which is why, when you asked me the earlier question, conspiracy theory ke bare mein, in that sense, if I were to speculate about why they released him, okay, he was an unwitting ventriloquist, shall we say, for what was a British point of view. Okay? And I say unwitting ventriloquist because
चलो भाई, unwitting बोल दिया है, हमारा काम खत्म यहाँ पे. That is what I'm saying. Unwitting बोल दिया है. Savarkar was not being officially. It's not like he had a conversation with British के अच्छा मैं अगर जेल से निकलूं तो आप मुझे ये करने में हेल्प करेंगे, मैं गाली दूंगा भर भर के मुस्लिम्स को और गांधी को, और आप हमारा ख्याल रखिए साहब। और ब्रिटिश ने कहा हाँ सावरकर गो, यू नाइस ब्राउन बॉय, गो फक गांधी आप। ऐसा तो कोई कॉन्वर्सेशन हुआ नहीं, तो चलो।
Because there is a kind of scholarship in India which wants to paint him as a collaborator, as a toady, as the fact that after he is brought back to India in 1924, why doesn't he just sort of go at the British, and why does he instead go after other things? Why does he go after caste? Why does he British ke khilaf kyun nahi kuch kehte? You know, I don't have any stake in denying Savarkar the label of an anti-colonial nationalist. I mean, he was an anti-colonial nationalist. It's for that reason that he spent time in the Andaman Islands, right? The anti-colonial movement was in full swing. If he was engaged in a conversation with Gandhi about the direction that it ought to take, well, then he was in the conversation about an anti-colonial nationalism anyway.
Yes.
However, it is something that I find particularly interesting, that whether he meant to or not, he certainly furthers a British agenda of dividing and ruling. Okay, and he furthers that agenda in the face of Gandhi's sort of determination to not let it happen. And you know, I've spent some time reading Gandhi.
No, see, we can be forgiving of her. She's just a very sweet little fangirl of Gandhi, who's also a very good historian, a rigorous historian, and honest with her findings. She is bringing out evidence after evidence, which kind of reinforces our narrative, but she comes to different conclusions. So I think that's why I have a lot of respect for her.
And it's very frustrating reading, because it's, you know, it's like boat mein you go back and forth. There's just contradictions everywhere. But contradiction is a sort of evolution in thought, right? You don't really want to imagine that anybody, you, me, you know, have one thought when we are 16 years old and then it stays the same. We don't change it. But what was also clear is that for all his flaws, and you know, Gandhi's flaws are sort of exposed routinely, that nationalism for Gandhi was about people. It was not about territory, not about landscape, not about blood. It was about people. And so Gandhi's support for the Khilafat movement is not a deep learned support for what the Khilafat was, kahan se aayi, kahan gayi, uska kya hua, Turkey mein kya ho raha tha, CUP ke bare mein kya ho raha tha. Oh, Gandhi's not concerned about any of those things. For him, his Muslim brethren, that's the word he uses, okay, wanted. It matters to them, and therefore it should matter to us. Okay, and there's a very kind of almost a...
अच्छा, तो साइद अमीर अली ने भी बोला कि आई हैव नो प्रॉब्लम विथ माय हिंदू ब्रेदरन, फिर भी हमको अलग देश चाहिए भोसरी के, तो तब क्या?
family rhetoric there, okay? You know, this is one of our family members. उन्हें चाहिए तो उनकी support करनी चाहिए. It's sort of astonishingly simple in that sense, right? There is you sometimes you search for a more complex reason in Gandhi, and then you come down to it's a simple reason for Gandhi. You know, हमारी बिरादरी है, उन्हें चाहिए, उनका support करना.
सिंपल नहीं है, वो इडियोटिक और शैलो रीजन है, एक्सप्लेनेशन शैलो है इसलिए.
तो इसमें खिलाफत मूवमेंट आई थिंक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग जंक्चर है, बिकॉज़ एट दैट टाइम इन मैं पाकिस्तान के पर्सपेक्टिव से बात करूं, for Pakistan, even though he should not be, Gandhi is considered a villain in our story. We don't like him too much. But he's the one standing with Khilafat movement. Yes. The father of Pakistan, Jinnah, is criticizing Gandhi for mixing religion with politics. Yes. He's saying, क्या तुम Khilafat movement के साथ दे रहे हो? तो religion politics mix होना नहीं चाहिए, दोनों चीजें बर्बाद हो जाएंगी. Who later found Pakistan based on the two-nation theory. And then you have Savarkar, who's... Genius.
Nice. Good job for bringing this point out.
Opinions get a bit more entrenched during this time. So would you say that it was just that love because writing तो यही मिल रहा है, but it's also a bit tactical like that कि अगर हमने एक ही मुल्क बनाना है, अलग नहीं होना, anti-colonial इनमें साथ चाहिए, so it also makes sense to support
इसके बारे में पूछ
for Gandhi to support a large-scale Khilafat movement tactically as well, right?
You know, I'm sure it was tactical because I would not want to deify Gandhi.
अच्छा.
Okay, it's more than tactical. Gandhi's writings on Khilafat are also linked to cow slaughter, which he, in really interesting ways, tries to remove from the language of transaction. Okay, so when pushed to say, why don't you tell Muslims to stop cow slaughter and then we'll support Khilafat? He actually rejects that. He rejects it in the language of a kind of anti-transactionalism. He was like, no, we're not going to make any of those transactions. Okay, it has to be a different kind of connection. It has to be a kind of solidarity with what our brethren want. And I will not put cow slaughter on the table as a transaction.
Oh. गुजराती जो सब हमेशा बोलते हो कि यू ऑल अंडरस्टैंड बिजनेस वगैरह, ये भाई महात्मा गांधी तुम्हारे स्टेट से था, देखो क्या क्या आर्ग्यूमेंट है उनका कि हम ट्रांजैक्शनल नहीं होंगे इवन व्हेन डिस्कसिंग द बिगेस्ट मैटर्स ऑफ द डे बैक इन दैट एरा in terms of whether the country will be in one piece or not, whether one community can live peacefully with another big community or not. हम कोई ट्रांजैक्शन ही नहीं रखेंगे, हम सिर्फ दोस्ती और प्यार मोहब्बत करेंगे.
But I believe, and then this is Gandhi, quixotic as always, right? That they will be persuaded out of love for us to automatically give it up. Okay. And so this is what I said, when you read Gandhi, he's difficult to tackle, but it's very, very stark in contrast to what Savarkar writes about Khilafat. For Savarkar, it just confirms that there is a kind of, shall I say, a drive to sovereignty for him that is inherent with the Muslim community, that, their kind of desire, the exceptionalism of Muslims for him is that they make up not a minority community, but because of this kind of extraterritorial loyalty, which is always a potential for them, always, okay?
Yeah.
Which is now, for instance, demonstrated in the support of the Khilafat movement.
Hmm.
Then the Muslim community is no longer a minority, because then it's the community of Muslims worldwide.
And see, this is why Janaki Bakhle is a good historian. She again brings out the point. She doesn't eliminate information from your eyes. She doesn't hide things from you. That's why this book is important.
Okay, and against that, then Hindus are in a minority. So what Savarkar does, and when I say skillfully, Shahzad, understand what I mean. I'm not praising him, right? Nor am I justifying it. I'm just excavating it, right?
Good.
What he does skillfully is reconstruct a majority community as a minority community and a minority community as a majority community, so that the language of victimization and anger that he will then bring into the conversation, okay, has the kind of passion of a minority community when it's the majority, when it's 84% majority, okay? I set about trying to figure out, how do you do something like that? How does this ideology take hold, right? Because this is so clearly not what Gandhi and, liberal secularist as Nehru is, it is so not what Nehru and liberal secularist as Jinnah was at the time, so not what Jinnah was saying, right? And it's an ideology on the margins. Well, until 1937, Savarkar is restricted to Ratnagiri district. From 1937 to 1942, he's head of the Hindu Mahasabha. 1942, he keeps the Hindu Mahasabhites aloof from the Quit India movement, which is the single largest anti-colonial movement in India. Okay. Then he's implicated in Gandhi's assassination in 1948. From 1948 onwards, he's acquitted because they can't find hard proof.
I haven't read Savarkar enough or even completed Bakhle's book, and I've never read Sampat's book. Why exactly did he not want people to go against the British in 42? Do you all know?
He lives in semi-seclusion until he dies in 1966. And yet, right, a figure who's on, shall we say, the margins of the mainstream, has such an enormous impact in his local region, and the ideology with which he comes to be affiliated, has such a, iski lambi dum hai. Okay? So those were the puzzles that I was trying to get to. So in that sense, I wasn't really concerned about sort of writing an anti-colonial history. I'd done all of that in my first book. तो उसे मैं पीछे छोड़ दी थी, वो कर लिया था मैंने. This one was much more a kind of an intellectual biography of an ideology and a phenomenon. And how do you write that? And how do you do it when the archive is hidden? How do you do it when the archive is destroyed by the person who's your object? How do you do it when the autobiographical materials are actually very slim? बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है. Acha. How do you do it when the biographical material about him is immense? And how do you recognize, or how do you figure out the way in which all these incredible contradictions sit together, right? Incredible caste progressivism. Incredible, right? When I'm reading him about caste, I'm saying, wow, this is, just get rid of caste, get rid of wholesale, निकाल दो.
हम जब इस caste और उस पे मैंने पूछना है, but maybe as an outside.
Ninod is saying that that was done because if he also boycotted along with Congress, all power positions would have. Acha. Interesting. You are saying this. I have not read independence history to this extent because I trust your judgment pretty much. So you saying this surprises me. So I would like to hear more on this.
I keep invoking colonialism because मैं colonial history पढ़ता हूँ, मैं Indian history इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं पढ़ता, तो मेरा ज़हन उसी तरह से सोचता है कि अच्छा यार, even this idea कि एक हिंदू oppressed majority थी और Muslim invaders आए थे, and in इस majority को मुस्लिम से बचाने के लिए British as liberators बन गए. That's classic colonial history being retold in a different way. At least that's how I'm viewing it. So this, and we've already rejected that at the start, the idea कि हम लोग intellectual नहीं हैं और सब वहाँ से आ रहे हैं. But to be fair, these notions of a nation state, Westphalian के बाद, democracy के बाद से बना है. So even though the movement towards sovereignty, the movement against the British sovereign nation, ये उनके खिलाफ हो रही है, but isn't it all coaxed in the same language?
How are you going to get away from that? You're in an anti-colonial struggle, okay? You have to engage it. How do you can't actually, in my opinion, you can't write an anti-colonial history which is entirely a nativist history. If you do that, you're going to write a redacted history.
But उसका जो एक base assumption है, which I'm maybe challenging in a way, and Benedict Anderson, Imagine Communities, I'm sure everybody's read that. So when Savarkar is invoking that notion of a nation, that idea is questionable as well. That ऐसा तो नहीं है कि खैबर पख्तूनख्वा से लेके बंगाल तक एक nation था.
No,
People had the idea of a nation, and then Savarkar himself says that nation building is more concerned with geography over history, and history is a tool to be used. So he's not concerned with being historically accurate as well.
No, not in the least.
So it's a project of this myth making of a nation. It's almost creating this nation.
Okay, we can take this argument seriously as long as then Muslims don't use the word "qawm" for all Muslims, मुस्लिम कौम जब बोला जाता है तब तो तुम फिर उम्मा के साथ एसोसिएट कर रहे हो अपने आप को. अगर तुम उम्मा के पार्ट हो तो पूरा का पूरा इंडिया नेशन ही है और हमेशा से नेशन ही था by that same logic. And in fact, com became such a common word that com became got adapted into Bengali. I think it was rejected later on when Bengalis became staunch Hindutvadis all of a sudden. They were pretty much for a long time. So I think after that, com got kicked out from the Bengali language because growing up, I had never heard of the word com in Bengali, except when reading Nihar Ranjan Ray's book, Bangalir Itihash. He casually uses the word com. Com badi bhabna ittadi. Okay. Com. He uses the word com. Koi okar mo.
Imagination, which is based on borders of the British Empire.
Mhm.
So इनके जहन में ये जरूरत है कि हम मुल्क बनाएंगे एंड उसकी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन होगी जिससे बैक ट्रैक करके ये नेशन का आइडिया इन्वेंट कर रहे हैं फॉर दैट जस्टिफिकेशन, और डू यू फील लाइक कि नहीं वाकई एक mythical idea of the nation इनके जहन में पैदा हो गया था, which historically maybe people in India or this region have not thought about this land as one nation?
So let me try and get your question. Are you saying that did Savarkar inherit his understanding of the nation from a European conception? Yes, of course. Everyone did. Okay. Which is why right at the beginning I went to Partha Chatterjee. Okay. Again, that is that's a base fact for me. Right? Just as it is right now, a base fact that we play cricket in India and Pakistan and we speak in English and in Urdu. Okay. I have no interest in trying to figure out a way in which I could excise cricket from India and Pakistan, or never speak English again, right? In that sense, let me refer to another one of my friends and colleagues who was also asked a question similar, and this is Dipesh Chakravarti. And he had responded to this question by saying, look, aren't you always going to tap into or reproduce a colonial problematic or a Eurocentric problematic? If, for instance, you refer to Heidegger all the time and you refer to Hegel and you don't refer to any sort of quote-unquote Indian scholars. And Dipesh had responded in a way that I found interesting. He said, I have neither guilt nor gratitude for this. Right? I'll use whatever I want. And I'll use, I'll use a Sanskrit text and I'll use Heidegger. It's, in a sense, you escape that problematic by not being slavish to it, right? By not being slavish to it, by in some ways, shall I say, reappropriating its power. To say, I will use whatever I want, and I won't use it in the way that you tell me I must use it. Okay. Robin Kelly, for instance, famous African-American historian, went so far as to say, look, I don't think of Marx as a finished product. I think of it as a work in progress. So I will expand on the work of Marx. Okay. And so then the conventional Marxists, the dogmatic Marxists, the Eurocentric Marxists will tell me, you've got Marx wrong. And I'll be like, yeah, maybe so. Okay. So that's a different act of appropriation, Shahzad, is what I'm saying to you, right? And so when I write a history and I say, Savarkar is interested in an anti-colonial nationalism, for instance, if that's what I'm saying, okay, I'm not saying, therefore, Savarkar is not trafficking in an idea that has come from Europe. What I will say is, let me look at the way in which he works that idea. Right? The thematic programmatic divide. And it is in the programmatic, in the way he works that idea, that you, to the extent that you can, sever some of that connection or some of that, or sever some of the anxiety of influence that you have about whether or not this is coming from the West, from the colonial encounter and so on. Does that make sense?
Where my struggle comes from, so let's say somebody in Pakistan makes the argument that from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to Bengal, all of this should be a Muslim nation. They might invoke some
linguistic nationalism or religious nationalism.
They might reappropriate a hadith to say that this is what the Islamic injunction was. So that doesn't exist in the case of this consciousness of Indian. So somebody is Savarkar sitting in Maharashtra. Where does he get this notion that from Balochistan to Bengal, this is historically an inseparable part of this mythical nation that has already existed? Or he's conscious of the fact that he is deliberately inventing that for political purposes? Or does he believe that, no, this
No, I think he believes it because there is the Akhanda Bharat coming from. So he does some very...
See, this guy is well-intentioned. He's almost well-read, but he's just massively misinformed on certain issues. I think most of us are that way, but चलो he is well-intentioned, तो हम थोड़ा बहुत इसको educate कर ही देते हैं. तो he just said that there is no equivalent of the Muslim view of calling Balochistan to Bengal one state. Okay? Nothing of that sort in ancient Indian text. Oh my fucking god. ये क्या बोल दिया इसने? Okay. इतने सारे टेक्स्ट हैं, इतने सारे टेक्स्ट. अगर टेक्स्ट नहीं भी रहता हो सके तो क्या हुआ? कल्चर सेम है.
Very odd philological things. All right. So, for instance, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but he has a sense of a Hindu empire in the pre-British period, in the pre-Islamic period, that extended far and wide, all right, as far as Zanzibar, which he considers the Anglicization of Hindu Bazaar, okay, or that a kind of Hindu imperium extended, and by Hindu he means not religious, by the way. It's not about religion at all. he will talk of Guatemala as Gautamalai, okay, the abode of Gautam Buddha. And so he will then look at the fact that the Ramayana goes into Indonesia, right? Or he looks at Angkor Wat and looks at the spread of that, what the Sanskrit cosmopolis, for instance. And that for him is tied into this conception of a Hindu imperium, right? Is it historically accurate? Of course not. Is it available for historical fabrication? Yes. That's what he does.
उनको ये सब करना पड़ा क्योंकि कोई और बवाल करते जा रहा था. As his statement explains everything that Savarkar writes elsewhere, that I am Hindu because you are Muslim.
He does, right? So your Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to Bengal has an analogy here. So for him, okay, it is the Indus is one border for him of Aryavarta. Okay. Where does he get the term Aryavarta? Aryavarta he gets from any number of Sanskrit texts. What does Aryavarta mean? Aryavarta literally means the land in which a sacrifice can be conducted. How was that land acquired in those periods? Through the horse sacrifice. Jahan bhi ghoda jaye, wo zameen humne hadap li. Acha? So it's in that sense he makes a very idiosyncratic, right? And I say idiosyncratic because it's not historically provable. But because the words are there, and right, and this is why he is part of what we would call the Hindu right, right? Because the word exists, because he can find Aryavarta somewhere, or he can find Bharatvarsh somewhere, or he can find that word somewhere, right? He will trace a kind of connected history, right? And he will trace that connected history, but he does not put it in the language of a disciplinary history, which is only emerging in the period that he's back in India, right? You didn't have disciplines in which you got PhDs in Indian history. A PhD in Indian history for generations was the history of the British in India. It wasn't Indian history. Right? So who was writing these?
So-called Bharatvarsh and all. So by that logic, then what should really be India then, according to them? Okay, so the classic commie argument then, India should be 50 different countries. The Gangadhar Adhikari master plan. Brahmin commie.
Things. There were Sanskritists who were doing translations, and there were other people who were trying to sort of excavate the records, but they weren't writing the kind of narrative history that I'm writing now. Not then. What was being written was historical novels, right? Historical novels about great heroes like Shivaji Maharaj and the retaking of this fort and the retaking of that fort. Okay. And it is that idiom that he uses to take his sort of philological, okay, ruminations about, the glorious periods of Chandragupta Maurya and this one and that one, okay, to posit this kind of unbroken history.
Would you say that he almost invented this?
तो भाई मेटाफिजिकल टेक्स्ट भी इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य का स्टेट भी सिग्निफिकेंट नहीं है, उनका स्टेट का बॉर्डर्स भी वो भी हम इग्नोर कर दे, छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज का भी विजन इग्नोर कर दे, सब इग्नोर कर दो. सिर्फ इंडिया सिर्फ अलग अलग 50 कंट्री बन के रहेगा.
This modern Hindu identity, because again, if you read the laws of Hindustan, the idea of what a Hindu is, historically, if I'm wrong, please do correct me, is not tied as such to a religion. It's the people of the Indus, Ind, Sindh, Sindhu, Hindu, people who live here. So him defining that, or at least attempting
Okay, so Jinnah was Hindu. Pakistan is a Hindu Rashtra.
to, at least making that groups, that you may be Jain, you may be Aryan, all these differences, let's set those aside. Now all this will be categorized as Hindu, and then Muslims become the outgroup. Would you say he's the first one to make that definition, or at least that's how Hindu, or what we now use the term as Hindu, has come to be, is because of Savarkar?
I would say he's certainly important in that, right? Is he the first? No. There were others who were sort of working to produce some kind of unified Hindu identity. Yeah. But also remember that you're coming off a period of so-called reform, right? Which is you're coming off a period which begins, say, with the founding of the Brahmo Samaj in the beginning of the 19th century and ends towards the end of the 19th century with the back to the Vedas, Arya Samajis, right? Turn the Vedas demotic. So there is this kind of like hack on, and linked to that is how do we kind of get rid of the practices in our community that are so abhorrent, right? So there's that kind of reform within, shall we say, broadly speaking, okay, the Hindu community. At the same time that you've got Ambedkar saying, okay, that Hinduism is just completely it has no principles, right? It is entirely about ritualism and the control of that rituals by Brahmins. So there's an incredible critique at the same time. What Savarkar does in all of this, right? And he does it with particular punch. He does it with particular force. So, I'm very reluctant to make people the creators of the origin, because you can always find somebody else who's, but he's certainly the one who I think goes the furthest in replacing Hindu as a religious designation with Hindu as an ethnicity. Okay. And so it doesn't matter what your caste is. Tum Bengali ho ya Tamil ho, tum Hindu ho. It doesn't matter tumhari jaat kya hai. Acha, tum Hindu ho. So if I were to put it in a very pithy phrase, I would say that for Savarkar, caste, all of it, not just untouchable, sara ka sara. Acha?
Moinak, the honest historian, because her conclusions are fucked up. We disagree with her. I disagree with her conclusions. But the data she is presenting to conclude that weird argument is the same data that we are using to come to a different conclusion. Therefore, she is an honest historian. So opinions to alag honge hi. You don't have rights over facts. You have rights over your own opinions. So if she was not an honest historian, she would write a book on Savarkar, explaining first to last why he is just a mafiveer and why that was the only thing Savarkar ever did. That's not what she does. She goes on giving evidence, even in this podcast, which in fact reinforces the fact that Savarkar was an awesome person.
Caste and untouchability were regressive. Hindu ethnicity is progressive. Mane, looking to the future. That I think he does with more force than anybody else does. All right. And the way he does it is to use the language of the epics, to use the language of literature. So he literally will turn the characters in epic poetry and epic literature into what I've elsewhere called peripatetic sort of markers of the territorial nation, right? So where did Ram go? He went down to Sri Lanka. Okay, so that's also India, okay? And where do you think the Mahabharata was fought? Well, that's India. And where, by the way, who went to Atak? That's also India. In this valley.
Yes.
So he uses epic literature, he uses poetry, okay, to sort of mark out that territory and to populate it with not, and this is of course a literary enterprise, right? But it's got a certain power to it because he couched it in poetic language. And so Hindu as an ethnic identity replaces Hindu as a religious identity. He's not interested in religion at all. He's not interested in it. For him, the main problem with it is that it has ascribed a false divinity to caste divisions that keep Hindus from recognizing their commonality and has allowed Muslims to convert Hindus.
इसमें आजकल काफी लोगों ने सवारकर को कोऑप्ट भी किया हुआ है, who might
No, but that's in our scriptures now. If my podcast is a scripture, then it is, okay. In the United Streets of College Street, Kolkata, Sri Lanka is also in Hindu Rashtra.
believe in those strict binaries, which I would love for you to speak about. If I'm not mistaken, Savarkar was quite critical of Brahmin elitism,
yes.
and you've spoken about the poem that he wrote about the orphan child and how critical he was of these ideas. So it's interesting that this community now owns.
Well, I suspect they don't read him. He wrote a series of essays called Jatyo Chedak Nibandha, all right, which are essays on the abolition of caste. And, that is, wo maine jab padha, I had to stop for a while and sort of completely redo my chapter. Because I had initially just written a chapter about saying, there's just instrumental. His sort of caste critique is just strategic. It's just instrumental. He's doing it just because he thinks that casteism allows for people to be easily converted away from the Hindu fold. I don't think that's wrong, okay, but I don't think it's comprehensive. I don't think that's full. I don't think that's a complete explanation. And in reading these essays, okay, there is not a single. I'm sorry, I'm going to not finish that sentence. I'm going to start with a different one. One of the reasons, one of the reasons this book took so long for me to write is that when I read Savarkar, there's not a single essay Shahzad, जिसमें there are not Sanskrit quotations. अच्छा, uncited. अब uncited तो होंगे ही, क्योंकि some of it he's writing in prison, some of it he's writing, in a kind of regional arrest. He's not exactly allowed to go into the archive or the library. In any case, वो archive जो बन रहे हैं, you could not go in there without a colonial patron. Which colonial patron was going to take Savarkar, who's under house arrest and considered a dangerous revolutionary?
Dekho,
A colonial archive of all things.
again, she shows Savarkar as a awesome hero.
So he's writing a lot of it from his memory. तो पहले तो उसकी दाद देनी पड़ती है. You have to actually recognize that, this is somebody of a prodigious intellect. Like him, don't like him. You recognize that he has a prodigious intellect. So every one of his essays is filled with one or another Sanskrit quotation. So after the fact, I became his research assistant. Okay, I was hunting out, ये कहाँ से आया, ये किसने लिखा हुआ, इसके मायने क्या है. So I was working like, a first year Sanskrit student with my Sanskrit colleagues, Bob Goldman, Madhav Deshpande. Now, because of this, right, even when he writes about caste, for instance, liberally scattered through his writings, okay, are quotations from the Manusmriti, quotations from the Vedas, quotations from the Mahabharata, quotations from the Ramayana, and they're all there. Then there are quotations from the...
Let me point out one concern with Manusmriti debunking birth-based casteism, etc. That only your karma decides you're a Brahmin or not. The counter I get always from traditionalists is that it's meant to be a result in your next janm. In this janm, if you are born in a Brahmin family, you are a Brahmin, no matter what profession you are in, no matter what your intelligence. And even in Brahma Puran, where I have read the most explicit debunking of birth-based caste, where through the mouth of Lord Shiva, it's being said. Lord Shiva is saying in Brahma Puran that only he who works and does Brahmin-like things is a Brahmin. No one else is a Brahmin. Nothing can get more explicit than that. It's in Brahma Puran, not in some anti-casteism movement even, okay? In Brahma Puran. तो वो जगह तो मैंने अलग सेक्शन करके अपलोड किया था. वहां पे भी लोगों ने बोला है कि नहीं भाई, ये तो अगले जन्म में होगा. इस जन्म में तो ममता बनर्जी से लेके अभिजीत बनर्जी सब ब्राह्मण ही है.
Purans. Now there are 18 major Purans. I don't know what they are. Okay, so I have to go ask my Sanskrit colleague, kaun se Puran likha hua hai? Then he would do things like he would use one line from one Puran, one line from another. Or he would rephrase the second line from the Puran, but in such a way that वो मीटर के हिसाब से वो जग जाता था वहाँ. अब ये सारा research करने में मुझे बहुत देर लग गई. But what I did discover was that he used
सावरकर ने नचाया लोगों को basically.
all of these texts and he pulled them apart. He pulled every last one apart. So he would go to the Vedas and explain to his readers, who are middle class Maharashtrian upper caste men and women, that there is no such thing as caste in the Vedas, that there is what we would call miscegenation in the Vedas, that the author of the Mahabharata, if we trace his genealogy, would be an untouchable in his time. Okay, that if you looked at Ram's trajectory through the Ramayana and you looked at किन किन के हाथों से राम ने खाना खाया, then you would say कि आज के कास्ट हिसाब से he was eating food from all the people that you would otherwise not say, you know, हमारी जात चली जाएगी or something like that. So there was a kind of seriousness about his critique of caste. Okay, अब तुम मुझे कहोगे कि भाई हेगल का भी वही critique था कास्ट के बारे में, मार्क्स का भी वही critique था, तो is he now Eurocentric in this? And I would say to you, sometimes even if it is an Eurocentric critique, you know, for Savarkar and for Gandhi and for Ambedkar, these critiques of caste were necessary. They were absolutely necessary. Right? Because caste produced the worst thing in the world in India, which is untouchability. Okay, untouchability. How is it that you could consider an entire community untouchable? Okay, but this is something that Gandhi goes after in his own way, Ambedkar goes after in his own way, and Savarkar goes after in his own way too.
Gandhi did go after it, but not effectively.
Okay. And he does it in these essays in a manner that made me rethink. Okay, made me rethink the question that is he doing this just strategically? No. Okay, he wasn't doing it just strategically, but at the same time, I would then counter by saying what reform is not instrumental. Now, women's rights movements has a goal at its end, right? You want certain rights. You're not just engaging in the conversation about women's rights just to have a conversation about it. So that kind of contradiction was equally a part of Hindutva in his mind. The kind of sort of gender progressivism. Okay, his gender progressivism was not saying औरतों को तुम वापस जाओ किचन में बैठो. Okay, his gender progressivism was तलवार उठाओ जो कर, you know, suffragettes को देखो इंग्लैंड में. अच्छा वो भीख मांगने नहीं गई है, वो कह रही है हमारा हक हम लेके छोड़ेंगे. That's what he admires. That is not what you know. I'm sorry, but it's not what Nehru admired or Gandhi admired or anybody else admired. So you've got these incredible contradictions. This kind of anti-Muslim sentiment, the othering of the Muslims, as you put it, entirely in line with a British colonial and an Orientalist conception. Okay, and then this incredible caste progressivism, gender progressivism, and a kind of very savvy recognition that history matters to aam janta. Matters to everybody. Okay, it's not just something जो university के department में हम पढ़ाते हैं. And that if you're going to reach that group of people, okay, you don't reach them. I'm not saying that Savarkar thought this comprehensively, but you reach them not in an academic language, but you reach them in the language of poetry, in poetic phrases. That history should be, you know, zabardast. It should be passionate. Okay?
So for him, doesn't that become the most important thing? Not actually what history or religion is, because I think Christopher Jeffrey called him.
ऋषि, अब ये तो हमें है हमारा uncomfortable discussion. Okay, I used to make this point as well during the beginning days of my channel when I was a bit more naive and a little more courageous. Okay, bhai, untouchability, I mean, given a choice, slavery, genocide, and untouchability. If these three were the only choice to you as a person who is not on the top rungs of society and power and influence, tum kaun sa loge? Untouchability is the least harmful out of all those three. But more importantly, this is what Kushal Mehra said a few days back on ANI podcast, where him and the Dost Cast guy were all invited, and Shahzad Punawala. Some audience questions they were taking, and the question was, should reservations be banned? And Kushal Mehra has said this before also with better reasoning, and in that podcast he gave some weird reasoning, I think, that no, you see, I'm a libertarian and I believe in merit, and I don't like reservation for anyone, but 300 साल से SC/ST के खिलाफ जो हरकतें हुई है उसके वजह से रिजर्वेशन शुडंट गो अवे. तो व्हाट काइंड ऑफ अ लिबर्टेरियन आर यू? ये क्या अजीब लिबर्टेरियनिज्म है लिबर्टेरियन का कि उसके लिए इतने सारे टर्म्स एंड क्वालिफिकेशंस है कि वो भोसरी के अप्लाई ही नहीं होता है. मतलब वो लिबर्टेरियन बन नहीं पा रहे हैं. He wants to be a libertarian. He can't be a libertarian even in his opinions because SC/ST के साथ इतना अत्याचार हुआ. But my question in this situation is that if historical bad behavior is the only reason for keeping reservations alive, then who had it worse? Hindus at the hands of Muslim kings or lower castes at the hands of upper castes? ये क्वेश्चन का एक ही आंसर है, एक ही करेक्ट आंसर है. कोई यहाँ पे भोसरी के ओपिनियन नहीं है. और अगर वो आंसर जो हमको पता है क्या है, वो अगर आंसर है ही, तो रिजर्वेशन किसको मिलना चाहिए, किसको नहीं मिलना चाहिए, एंड किस बेसिस पे मिलना चाहिए. और रिपरेशंस का क्या, जिजिया का. निजाम ऑफ हैदराबाद भोसरी के पूरा देश भिखारी है. निजाम ऑफ हैदराबाद रिचेस्ट, वन ऑफ द रिचेस्ट मैन बन के घूम रहा है.
An atheist. I don't know if you would agree with that notion.
I would not.
But one would. Okay, so if he's not an atheist, but he's not a religious fanatic, fundamentalist as well, as he's using history, he's also using religion, or would you say no, it's a genuine attempt at showing that this is what the religion says, or it's still tactful in a way that let me get this certain ideas out of the religion because it will help the movement, or it will help reform Hindus as we are today, not necessarily what the Vedas originally say.
So he never engages theology. He does not engage Hindu theology. And yet he will quote from Advaita Vedas. All right, he will quote from it. But he quotes from it, from notions of absolute Brahman, to say, if, for instance, everything comes from the same source, then the cow and the donkey come from the same source. So why do we worship the cow and not the donkey? Okay. So he clearly knows this literature, Is he an atheist? He never actually says, there's a word for it, Gnostic. Whoa, man, I don't read that in his language. I don't read it. I read rationalism. I read a kind of rationalist dismantling of superstition, what he calls andavishwas, blind faith. I see a rationalist dismantling of...
Holy shit. One of our audience members said he was more a rationalist than atheist, and now Janaki Bakhle is quoting our audience member, bro.
होली मैन, साधु, फकीर वगैरह वगैरह.
इसके कमेंट सेक्शन में भी मुझे उसको हंसी इसलिए आगे ज्यादा अंधविश्वास बोला. मैंने कमेंट सेक्शन में इस वक्त बहुत अंधविश्वास नजर आ रहा होगा जो लोग ट्रोल करने आएंगे.
वो मैं देखूंगी. अच्छा. So is this atheism? I'm again, like with fascism, I'm uncomfortable with this term. So in some sense, when you say, how do you not write an anti-colonial? How do you write an anti-colonial history without falling into those traps?
Yeah, what Rishabh is saying here, that was also a problem. Kushal said that STs were in fact so oppressed that they were not even inside the Varna system.
So atheism, fascism are two of those terms that for me just don't work in this context. And if I were to use them, then I would consider myself as doing what you would not want me to do, right? Write a kind of history that is just a certain influence is too powerful on me. I would say he's an agnostic perhaps, but a sentimental relationship to ritual. Beti ki shaadi hui, to, he sat down, performed the rituals. No atheist would do that, right? But at the same time, the sacred thread which he had, right? Because all twice-born boys go through the ceremony. He quipped about it. How do I know this? Because his son wrote about it. His son writes about it in a biography of his own father, that Savarkar used the sacred thread, जिसमें उन्होंने अपनी चाबियां बांध के रखी हुई थी, saying कि this must be because it's the sacred thread, it's a very strong cotton. So there's at the same time, the people that he went after more than anybody else were the Sanatanis. The Sanatanis who believe in eternal religion and are Vedists. He went after them, hammer and tongs. I would not call him an atheist. I see no use in calling him an atheist. I don't see the stake in calling him an atheist, right? I'm working much more with what he said about himself, not because it was the truth, like I said, but because I want to figure out why he would sort of write of himself like that.
It's interesting that Savarkar, like the modern Hindu nation as it's being formed, he might be considered one of the most influential ones, if not the father. If you look at Pakistan, Jinnah created it. Was Jinnah a devout Muslim? I don't think anybody can argue that, even if we don't go to the extent of arguing whether he was an atheist or agnostic. He was not a devout Muslim. If you read The Jewish State by Theodore Herzl, he's arguably an atheist.
Yeah.
He's using Judaism as a tactic.
Yeah. I know Haldars who are SC, and I know Zamindar rich Haldars as well. Wait, there was one important question here. Where's Abidjan's comment? Abidjan, yeah. He's saying, I don't know, after all this Hindutva red pilling and being the extinction side of Hindus in Bangladesh, I'm still watching and following Hindutvavadi Indic people. What is it called in sociology? It's called living in false hope. You are going to get extinct anyway, bro. Wait, another important comment. Kahan gaya? No, wait, some other thing.
Tactful way. And what he's saying is practical considerations of building a nation state are much more important than religious dogma.
Right.
If we get Argentina, we'll build it in Argentina. What we're concerned about are practical considerations. So it's interesting that these three figures
Yes, they are.
who are considered
I know.
fathers of national religious states may not be so religious in their personal lives.
The one who was more religious was Gandhi, right? Gandhi is a Vaishnav. Okay, very taken with the demotic Ramayana, right? But Gandhi too does not need, if you will, Shastric authority, right? He doesn't revert to the Vedas. What Savarkar does is he occupies, see, there is also one of the things that if you remove Savarkar from Maharashtra and just, make him just the one who wrote these historical works, right? You don't quite recognize that Savarkar is sort of stepping into a fairly deep tradition of this kind of critical writing about Brahmanism, about Brahmins, that has a long history in Maharashtra, right? Lokahitavadi's Shatapatre, for instance, is filled with this kind of sort of criticism of Brahmins and Brahmin privilege and Brahmin power. So Savarkar writes in that mode as a kind of Pandit Shastri, critical of his own tradition, right? Critical of Brahminism, critical of Andhavishwas, critical of this kind of almost a kind of literary illiteracy for him, literary illiteracy. Right? So when he's writing about the Manusmriti, he's writing directly to women. Okay, and he writes a piece called Manusmriti Til Mahila, the women of the Manusmriti. Right? He takes the Manusmriti, for heaven's sake, and he writes directly to women about, among other things, funeral rites, Shraddha rituals, and what meat was.
And we have read the Manusmriti from our live streams, and Manusmriti does have certain sections which are absolutely feminist as fuck. Now, Elliot Anderson is pointing out that Hindu Mahasabha formed alliance with Muslim League, supported two-nation idea. Then there is speech of Savarkar saying that Congress created it and Hindus will suffer in Pakistan. Yes. I don't know the exact order of these things, but I know that at one point, all these people, Savarkar, Ambedkar, etc., realized that if this is how things are, then Hindus and Muslims can't really survive together in one country. And because of that, maybe they joined hands with Muslim League. But on the other hand, the criticism of Congress was that you created a situation, you went on defending a situation where Hindus and Muslims could not live side by side. And Ambedkar's criticism of Islam again, or Muslims specifically, where Ambedkar does not say that what will happen to Dalits, what will happen to Dalits. He repeatedly says what will happen to Hindus if Muslims live and or gain power somehow after the British are gone. So those are weird stuff.
Cooked, and what meat was cooked in the Manusmriti, and what those women would have had to have cooked. In a sense, saying to them, if you want to be Sanatani, you're going to need to cook the meat of boars. You're going to need to serve the meat of turtles and all of these other animals. Right? So that's the kind of literary criticism that he does.
People have sent in a few questions as well. Let me just get to those. मैंने subtly ये shirt भी पहन ली थी, आपने अब तक recognize नहीं किया. Especially for this podcast, I picked out this color.
I have just assumed it is this color.
How Hindu Mahasabha led by him viewed the Muslim League and Congress as politics?
Very negatively.
How did Savarkar view communists? Same answer.
It's pretty much the same answer. There is an odd quip by Yadi Farke, who's now passed away, but he's one of those extraordinary Marathi historians of not just India, but Maharashtra as well. And, this is undocumented, but Savarkar was not modest. Okay? He admitted of no influence on him. And Yadi Farke has a quip when he said somebody had asked Savarkar. So I'm telling the person who's asking this question, basically hearsay, okay? Not evidence-based hearsay, that somebody had asked, Yadi Farke recounts a story, somebody had asked Savarkar, someone is asking me, have you read Marx? And Savarkar's quip was, somebody should ask Marx whether they've read Savarkar.
So Salman Khan dialogue hai.
Bada arrogant sa dialogue hai.
How did he stay away from August Uprising, Bharat Chodo movement, despite the large-scale violence by the British on Indians, while he himself had been a staunch revolutionary once?
Yeah, good question. This is partly his kind of rejection of Gandhi. Okay, and his belief that Gandhi was not, partly because, even Quit India in theory starts off as a non-violent movement. It doesn't stay non-violent, obviously, and Gandhi recognizes that he has no control over it. But it's about Gandhi. I mean,
she would say it's a superstitious way to do a healthy thing. Cold plunges, burns off a lot of your fat.
It is about opposition to Gandhi, to what Gandhi is doing in politics, and just a severe rejection of everything Gandhian.
How did he view the RSS?
The RSS was founded in Nagpur in 1925, and he would have viewed it with favor. All right, he would have viewed it with favor because of two things in its time. One, that it was actually telling. It was a cultural organization, right? The RSS is not a political organization in that it never fields candidates for any elections. It's a sociocultural organization. But he would have viewed it with some favor, not least because it was perceived by him as a kind of remasculinization of the Hindu community, which had sat around for too long, okay, reading Sanskrit texts and not being a sort of active part of the nation.
How Bhagat Singh viewed Savarkar?
As a fellow revolutionary initially. I mean, Savarkar was widely admired as a revolutionary, even if his views were not always to everybody's liking.
May I add some apolitical questions?
Of course.
Okay. Did Savarkar have PTSD?
I don't know how to answer that question.
सारे इसी तरह के.
I think it is fair to say that his health, okay, and I'm getting this from the police archives, that I think it's fair to say that he was not somebody of robust sehed, and that the years in prison did not help that. So from what I read, okay, about people who were with him after he left prison or was in Bombay after 1947, is that he struggled with his health.
I mean, he was tortured.
Yeah.
right? So
We don't know that.
wasn't he kept in solitary confinement for a long
Yes,
time?
but we don't know that, there was physical torture, we don't know.
That's torture in
अच्छा,
itself.
ठीक है.
उस तरह का
हाँ, उस तरह का emotion.
6-7 महीने solitary में रखा
हाँ,
ना उनको
रखा
अकेले.
हुआ,
I mean,
he was not treated well, but I don't know that he was treated any differently than all the other political prisoners in the Andaman Islands. Okay, and the reason I say this is that there is a kind of narrative about Savarkar. He's unique in being tortured, and that's all I'm saying. That he was
किसी ने
treated as a
पूछा भी
political
था
prisoner.
कि why was he kept over there when Nehru and Gandhi were kept in palaces? So you're rejecting कि ये
No, Nehru and Gandhi were not members of revolutionary associations, nor were they ever affiliated with bomb-throwing or political assassinations, which Savarkar and his brother were.
the Scotland Yard spread a rumor that he was homosexual. No, okay. Did he actually have any? I'm going to butcher this, so please forgive me. Ne majasi ne parat matrubhumila sagar.
हाँ, ने मजसी, हाँ, yeah.
Oh, ocean, please take me back to my motherland. My soul
ने
is
मजसी
wailing.
ने मातृभूमिला.
This is what he wrote while the British were dragging him to different shores.
No. This is what he wrote when he was at the seashore in Bristol. He saw the ocean and he wrote a poem. And the poem basically sort of invokes the ocean and says, take me back home.
Who was the actual mastermind of the two-nation theory? So Sayyid Ahmad Khan or Veer Damadur Savarkar in 1921?
Savarkar is not interested in a two-nation theory.
ये भी contradiction नहीं है. This idea that the Muslims will never be loyal to you, but
But
the
they must
Muslims should not be allowed to build a separate nation. They should stay as a minority.
That's right. You got it exactly right, Shahzad. This is like, you can ask
The
why
famous
is that?
Because I'm being a nice person by not asking them to fuck off from my country. Just be loyal. Don't follow your ummah. What's so fascinating about this? Right?
Anchor in Pakistan who says, "Kya ye khula to azad nahi hai?" Which is, isn't this an open contradiction?
It is, and is it a contradiction? It is a contradiction only insofar as you would say that no country or nation should have a minority population. If there are minority populations, then the state, I think, is obligated to figure out how that minority population can live and is represented, right? In Savarkar's view, there was no reason for the Muslims to leave, okay? But there was a reason for them to recognize that they were now going to be a minority population.
Who do you see as today's Veer Savarkar?
I don't.
Ask her what is Hindutva and why does Hindu Rashtra
There is
mean
no
as
Veer
per
Savarkar.
her and as per Savarkar?
Hindutva means Hindu-ness. Hindu Rashtra literally means a Hindu nation.
How come Savarkar was atheist and Hindu at the same time? I think it's on the address earlier. Can you ask what made her feel that she needs to write a book on this topic?
I don't know what made me feel that. I thought I was going to write a quick book, okay? I finished my first book and my husband and my former teacher, they said, तुम मराठी पढ़ती हो, तो सावरकर पे एक जल्दी से किताब लिख लो, किसी ने लिखी नहीं है. मैंने कहा ठीक है, लग गए 15 साल.
Did Savarkar really predict the 1962 war?
I have no idea.
Please discuss the case of arrest and return of Savarkar, France versus Great Britain in the Permanent Court of Arbitration.
So he jumps out of a porthole when the boat that is carrying him from England to India for trial, he jumps out of the porthole in Marseille. He demands political, what's the word?
Asylum.
Thank you. And French socialists are very taken with this idea. And so that case is taken to The Hague and it is rejected. And so he is returned to the British detectives and brought back to India for trial.
How inclusive was his conception of Hindu Rashtra? Did he differentiate between Hindu Rashtra and Hindu Rajya? How does he fare in comparison with his other right-leaning contemporaries?
Could you repeat that? That went by too fast.
How inclusive was his conception of Hindu Rashtra?
So stay with that. Huh?
Okay.
How inclusive? Completely inclusive on the one hand. All right. All you had to do was pledge great love.
Did he differentiate between Hindu Rashtra and Hindu Rajya?
Well, Rajya means rule, okay? Rashtra means nation. We're talking about the modern period. So he's not talking about kingship, right? But whoever this is who is asking this, the interesting thing about all of these thinkers is that I would say Nehru had a conception of the state, and he had a conception of the state partly because he traveled to the Soviet Union. And in the early years of the Soviet Union, okay, it made great leaps, okay? A great rise in women's education, a kind of breaking of a number of boundaries and borders, a kind of opera available to everybody where previously it was only available to the elite. So Nehru's very taken with that. And that notion of the state as engineering large-scale projects, right? Iron and steel projects, dam projects, and 5-year plans, the developmental state. I think Nehru has that conception. But I don't read a theory of the state in Savarkar. I don't read a theory of the state in Gandhi. Okay, so in that sense, it's not about Hindu Rashtra and Hindu Rajya as you're arguing. It's not that he wants one Hindu ruler back. He doesn't really have a conception of that.
But there is this eulogization of Hindu rulers like Shivaji.
In previous, but there's no suggestion that that's what we should go for, which is the important thing to recognize. That in that sense, all right, it's difficult to say that Hindutva is completely recidivist, right? It's not saying let's go back there. right? It's saying, let's remember that they were there and move forward, right? Which is why, this sort of...
ये तो जैसा दीपक का हाइब्रिड डिकोलोनियल फ्यूचर का बात है. We have to give her due.
Again, the contradictions of this ideology, which I was trying to get to, is that it's not regressive. अब लोग, नाराज हो जाते हैं when I use the word.
It's not regressive. Quote, it's not regressive. End quote. Circa 2025. Janaki Bakhle.
Progressive, because progressive is seen only in terms of kind of liberal progressivism, right? Women's rights, so on and so forth. He's perfectly comfortable with Dalit rights or women's rights. Those would not have bothered him at all. Women's education, none of those things. There's no return. Okay, so part of the issue for me with this book was saying कि आपने सावरकर के अगर टुकड़े किए तो each टुकड़ा would appeal to somebody, and उसमें से आपने, if you removed from all of that the things he said about Muslims, you would celebrate him, right? He was so progressive on caste, so progressive on gender, and what I'm arguing in this book is you can't separate it. You can't separate it, right? And I'm showing you how you can't separate it.
How popular was Savarkar?
Yes, and we are not separating it. That's why we are pretty happy with the book.
1940s and 50s, or is that he is given undue respect after his death? Is he more popular amongst the far right now?
Well, in
Yes.
the 1940s and 50s, he was affiliated and associated with Gandhi's murder, so he was not popular. He went underground. I certainly think there's a resurgence of his popularity now.
While Savarkar is often vilified, but other freedom fighters such as Lala Lajpat Rai, Lala Hardayal, and other various freedom fighters from the Arya Samaj and Anushilan Samati, like Sri Aurobindo, have somewhat same views, see the Hindu identity being central to the Indian identity. What are the reasons which separate Savarkar?
From Lala Lajpat Rai and others, from Anushilan Samiti. I mean, look, if you're looking for a strand of anti-Muslim prejudice, you're going to find it everywhere. That's what I started with when I said that, all right?
Oh, shit. Oh, shit. चलो, she even admitted that लाला लाजपत राय से लेके श्री अरबिंदो सब ने बोला है मुस्लिम्स के खिलाफ. ये भी उन्होंने एडमिट कर दिया. Judio Joestar, no, she is not criticizing his anti-casteism and anti-women thing. She just has a problem with his anti-umma thing, and she's saying that this is the mixed bag that Savarkar is. Take it for what it is. That's her position.
But it's, for me, what separates him are his writings. Lala Lajpat Rai doesn't do this kind of writing. Lala Lajpat Rai, it's also generational. Lala Lajpat Rai is a previous generation with Tilak and Bipin Chandra Pal. Okay, this is Savarkar, in a sense, is Tilak's heir, takes over from Tilak. Jinnah and Tilak. Oh, 18 Rati is okay. Yes.
Please ask her, is there something that wasn't planned, by the way?
Oh, well.
Please ask her, is there something in common with different movements like Brahmo Samaj, Arya Samaj, and the RSS? Some people argue all of them try to locate Hindu society when confronted with modernity due to colonization. How does Savarkar fall in that equation?
It
Interesting.
doesn't. The Brahmo Samaj is a kind of Christianized Hinduism, right? Brahmo Samaj comes about primarily to sort of eradicate sati. That's in 1828-29. It produces its own rituals. It produces a kind of Christianized ritual. So it's a reform society of the early 19th century. The RSS is not a reform society at all, and it's founded a century later in 1925. So as historians, we don't sort of leap around. It's like saying, I can't really put Savarkar in line with three societies that are separated by 50 years each. Right? The Arya Samaj is founded in 1875. Arya Samaj then breaks in two. Does Savarkar have anything to do with the Arya Samajis? Yes and no. He's certainly in favor of the idea that there should be no restriction on access, what we would in today's world call access. Right? Should access to the Vedas be restricted to the Brahmins? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right? So I think I've answered the question.
Thank you so much for your time.
Holy shit.
And maybe what should be...
Fuck. This was so awesome. This was so worth it. Thank you, Divya. आशा है कि तुम सुबह उठ के अच्छे बच्चे बन के हमारा लाइव स्ट्रीम देखोगे वर्कआउट करते करते. तो thank you, M. Shastri, for contributing $7 Canadian to West Bengal's GDP. It is time to bring Bakhle into the good side. She will make a great Kaushika. We can convince her that anti-Umma is a good thing. I think she is already, and if she goes completely anti-Umma as well, then she won't have any credentials left. She will be looked upon just as a random Sanjeev Sanyal Vikram Sampath. तो तब कोई वैल्यू नहीं रहेगा उनके बातों का. उनके बातों का ये सब बातों का वैल्यू है क्योंकि वहां पे वो 2+2=5 बोलती है. तो उनको बोलने दो भाई 2+2=5, क्योंकि और बाकी जो सब लोग 2+2=5 बोलते हैं उनको और जगह पे 2+2=4 दिखाना है, जो कि बाखले इज पॉइंटिंग आउट. यही है हमारा सिचुएशन अब. और But what if she's not? What would be the way to really bring her? Hiring her in Indian academia? वो तो कोई कर नहीं रहा है, करेगा भी नहीं कोई शायद. Let's see. So our live stream discussion is done. भैया आधे घंटे और stream करिए. If there's some interesting topics to discuss, of course. But I really need to sleep. I'm pretty much on Indian timeline these days, Indian IST timeline. Banarsi from Lucknow. Good night. Good night. Arvachin Bharat. Time to start Bakhle fan club and say she does. Don't bring her. Let society come to its own. कहाँ गया? Scroll up हो गया. Conclusions over decades. Mera's only answer is Dhruv has no impact on elections. Doesn't matter. Bakhle can be our secret. I think she already is. Why is her book not a big deal in Indian online right? Polymerist. The answer will piss off a lot of right wingers and a lot of my viewers as well. The answer is that she is not 100% in agreement with our views. That's why she is pretty much, I think, 60-70% in agreement with our views. What is your opinion on freeing temples so that donation money to Hindus have more children to support? Like Chinmay Mission School, yeah, of course, it should be freed completely. Vikram and Bakhle, great duo, yes, but I think they have some problem between themselves. Yeah, so what I was going to say is that the moment she stopped saying 2 + 2 = 5 on that issue, I was saying that she'll become another Sanjeev Sanyal Sampath. So the view is that strong on the left. I once gifted. No, I was a friend of mine, sort of a brother of mine, much younger than me, son of a friend of my mom's. He used to be pretty much a casual, normal Bengali leftist, the baseline leftist, that obviously leftist kind of a guy. And he bought into all sorts of leftist views, and he used to have a lot of problems in his body, pain in his body and stuff, all of which I declared to be just pussy excuses. And then he started working out, and then is now insanely fit and strong, and views my channel pretty frequently. And he's doing his PhD in the US. So when I first introduced him to Sanjeev Sanyal, he bought an entire set of Ocean of Churn, Land of Seven Rivers, and Life Over Two Beards का वो 3 book का एक set से मिलता है. He bought one set for himself and one set for another commie friend of his when he was a commie. So he was an open-minded commie who was into finding out different new ideas, open to at least new ideas. He was sure that yes, leftist things are good, but Sanjeev Sanyal seems to be saying something interesting. Let's find out more. So, but his commie friend was a more rabbit fucking nutjob commie. That guy read 4 pages of Land of Seven Rivers and said, "What the fuck is this? This is RSS history. I won't read it." And didn't read any of the rest of the book called Land of Seven Rivers, not the other books. So, समझो कि मतलब लैंड ऑफ 7 रिवर्स में भोसरी के 4 पेज सब पढ़ के लौड़ा बोल रहा है कि वो आरएसएस हिस्ट्री है. क्यों? क्योंकि इंडिया के पास्ट में कुछ अच्छा है भी, ये बोला है संजीव सन्याल ने, तो वो आरएसएस हिस्ट्री बन गया. ऐसा अपब्रिंगिंग होता है कॉमी का. तो वहां से ही मैं ही निकला हूं, और मैं भी निकला हूं, और वो मेरा दोस्त भी निकला है. तो जिनको पढ़ के लगा कि अच्छा ये सब हुआ है, हमारे पास में अच्छी चीजें हुए हैं, तो ठीक है. तो अच्छा, हमको बोला गया था कि नहीं है, अब पता चल गया है कि अच्छी चीजें हुए हैं, तो व्हाट्स द प्रॉब्लम? कुछ लोगों का अपब्रिंगिंग इतना घटिया बन गया है कि उन लोगों को पूरा मतलब जलन या फिर घृणा होता है इंडिया के पास्ट में कुछ अच्छा हुआ है ये सुन के. तो उन लोगों के आंख में बाखले अगर संजीव सन्याल बन जाए तो प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि ऐसे पागल भरे हुए हैं सोसाइटी में. For me, Sanjay Dixit is the most informed person on the right wing. Definitely one of the most informed. Possibly among the podcasters, possibly him. And I have a whole lot of respect for Ajit Bharti as well. I don't know if Ajit Bharti and Sanjay Dixit actually disagree on anything, but since I know more about Ajit Bharti's views on even things like freedom, liberty, economics, on things which I don't think Sanjay Dixit really disagrees. So I'm more inclined to say that Ajit Bharti is the most learned or educated guy in the Indian right-wing discussion podcast space. अरे एक और बुक लिया हूँ, टर्माइट्स. ओके, ওই প্রশ্নটা উত্তর কি পাকিস্তানিরা এত জ্ঞানের? Yeah, that's what we have been trying to find out. Why is this podcast happening? Who is funding it? Why Janaki Bakhle? Why Savarkar? I'm not sure. Ajit Bharti L, why? Sanjay Dixit is informed on Islam, not great on. He knows a lot of geopolitics and a lot of even he criticizes bureaucracy pretty harshly. When will BJP promote true Indian history in history textbooks after we come to a conclusion and unanimous conclusion about what the fuck is true history? क्योंकि कुछ लोगों के लिए ट्रू हिस्ट्री ये है कि अब राम मंदिर के जगह पे बाबरी मस्जिद था, यही पढ़ाना बंद कर दो. तो राम मंदिर ऐसे ही स्ट्रगल कर लिए, ऐसे ही एक मंदिर बना लिए, रैंडम एक मंदिर है, ऐसा सोचने लगेंगे. Sanjay Dixit recently called out the BJP for giving freebie. Yeah, he has repeatedly called out BJP for a lot of things, including freebies. Sanjay Dixit's guests are terrible. That I agree. And Sanjay Dixit, I have said this before as well. He is the only podcast host in the country, I think, who repeatedly calls guests who are less educated than him and lets them talk, even though he knows more than all of his guests on every topic, except when he invites Abhijit and Mitra, maybe. They are kind of equal on the things they discuss, but all his other guests are. It's a full-time profession for him as well, and he has a distinct demographics. तो उनके लिए मजा entertainment भी एक चीज है. Sanjay Dixit calls out BS very appropriately. Yes, he does. True history is obviously what Kami says. Yes. YL, IT cell contrarian for the lowest no economic equality praxis. I don't believe in economic equality anyway. Plus, I have an unreliable hearsay. He did. God, what the fuck? BJP is already teaching true history. The university sociology courses now teach Arthashastra. What the fuck? Have you told this to Mr. Sociologist? Vikram, some अरे भाई क्या सब comment है. SD Sanjay Dixit recently called out. When will BJP promote? Any more important comments or questions? मैं भी निकाला, but economic aspects what who's us rational people on the first place is still strong. Praxis rest blame economic failures and inequality on culture because plebeian. Good night Rishikesh. Commune culture, commune economics. Hey, Hindutwadi socialist. Unbreaking India and all religions are. Yes, I have read Unbreaking India, the most lucid book I've ever read. It started last term, Dada. I see. Arthashastra, sociology. Nice. But which translation of Arthashastra? Back in 2021, when I bought this penguin version of Arthashastra, I used to tell everyone proudly that yes, buy this one. Don't buy the penguin version. And Unbreaking India, so well written. Breakdown of so many topics into short chapters you can read casually. Audio what? Shukraniti is first sem sociology mandatory reading. Holy fuck. We have a truth will reveal itself attitude so that we don't argue or debate. Make UP great again. UAPA. Then which Arthashastra is better? The one that Sanjeev Sanyal mentioned on Prakhar Ke Pravachans podcast. He mentioned the translator name. Have you read Meenakshi Jain? No, only her, some of her papers and reviews of other commie historians. I haven't read any book of her. Everyone gets hate on the internet, but they tolerate it. Make Braj Pradesh great again, man. Let's separate it from. Satyameva Jayate is the mole, to be honest. Never liked the message of being passive behind it. That review was hilarious. Yes, yes. औरंगजेब बीना बजाता था, इसलिए वो बहुत ही पायस आदमी था. Shama Shastri. Shama. No, actually, never be much. The Shama Shastri one is in too much of an archaic English. No one will be able to follow it. Did Sanjeev Sanyal mention the Shama Shastri one? If he did, तब तो ठीक है, तब पढ़ो कठिन English क्या करे. So the Penguin one is in easy English. The introduction is pretty good, but the author was a retired IFS bureaucrat. Okay, तो उनको bureaucrat बोलते हैं क्या foreign service वालों को? Ellen Rangarajan, I think his name is. So he has, of course, worked hard at it. It's this big translation. The problem is the liberties he took, and how did he even get a contract to write for Penguin? And it was many decades back. It's not like BJP came to power and usliye ho gaya. So the liberties he took has really spoiled my taste for it. But I'll finish it someday from our live streams only. Like he said that the Aryan term has become too controversial, so I'm just going to use the word Arya. I'm going to eliminate all the black magic parts because they might be controversial or later interpolations, meaning all the parts where Chanakya talks about Tantra, उन्होंने गायब कर दिया. फिर there's a section where he says that Chanakya has said that these are the qualities that must be in someone for becoming a king or amatya, meaning bureaucrat. One of those qualities is coming from a good family. तो good family से तो लगता है कि शायद ब्राह्मण बोला होगा. And since I've lost faith in him on the translator on those issues, now I think that ब्राह्मण बोला था, खाली पीली इसने good family नाम दे दिया है. तो ऐसा liberties भाई नहीं चलता है. पेंगुइन ने ऐसे ही डाल दिया होगा, अच्छा कनेक्शंस था ऑथर का, या फिर अर्थशास्त्र वैसे भी कौन पढ़ेगा, बहुत सारे ट्रांसलेशंस है, इजी लैंग्वेज में है, इसलिए चलो दे देते हैं कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. बट this is very shoddy translation, and this is not it's not a translation that deserves the tag of Penguin Classics. Saw Nikhil Kamath Modi podcast. I don't intend to, unless someone tells me that no, there's something fascinating being discussed, and therefore we must discuss it. But ये क्या वो prepared questions वगैरह फालतू का. Podcast word के लिए गाली है वो. RP Kangle. RP Kangle वाला कौन है? RP Kangle is, I think, the very second translation of Arthashastra. Even that is pretty archaic English, I've heard. UPSC syllabus needs to change to yes. That watch it for lol, though, acha. The secular Kira will ruin our text too. Why does Ramakrishna Mission puja Jesus Christ? Why does now? The only answer I have is it's because they are being Ramakrishna Mission trads, okay? Traditionalists inside the Ramakrishna Mission sect. Why did it start? Because they thought British are here to stay. They probably will never go away. Chalo, let's accommodate them as in the pantheon of Hindu gods. तो अब वो ट्रेडिशन बन गया, तो अब फॉलो करो. संजीव सन्याल को बोल he should retire Davos economic stances he holds. हाँ ठीक है, बोल देंगे. Sir, please retire Davos economic stances that you hold. Creative license ले रहा है शुक्र नीति. RP Kangal. Wait, someone asked if I have read Aurobindo. I have read a lot of meaning, a large part of Life Divine. I'll finish it someday from our live streams only. It's an insanely tough book to read because of the English and because there was no editing done on it, because that's the sort of the kind of it becomes easy for you to read only because there's no editing on it. So itna kathin English hai, but that is not that big of a hassle because he goes on repeating the same concept 3-4 times in the future chapters or pages, and it's pointlessly 1200 pages long. तो अब लैंग्वेज किसी का अगर नेचुरली है वैसा, तो उनको तो हम बोल नहीं सकते कि नहीं आप इजी कीजिए, मगर एडिटिंग शायद हो सकता था, एडिटिंग होने से वो रिपीटेशन भी नहीं होता, तो मैंने तो जितना समझा है वो रिपीटेशन की वजह से ही समझा है। मगर इंग्लिश वैसा भाई, नीचा का जो ट्रांसलेशन है उसका बाप है श्री अरविंदो का इंग्लिश। And the book quality, page quality is absolute horseshit. I think Aurobindo Institute has found out that no one can really read this book. 99.99% Indians won't be able to read this or understand this book by just reading the primary source. They'll have to read some interpretation simplified version of Life Divine. तो चलो ये बुक सब लोग फर्नीचर की तरह घर में रखने के लिए, दिखाने के लिए रखते हैं, तो घटिया पेज क्वालिटी बनाओ। 1200 पेज बुक का थिकनेस है इतना सा, कैन यू बिलीव इट? विक्रम संपत का 951 पेज बुक का थिकनेस है ऐसा, और लाइफ डिवाइन है 1200 पेजेस में इतना सा। तो पेज क्वालिटी इतना घटिया है कि तुम पढ़ ही नहीं पाओगे आराम से, आंखों में मतलब 4-5 पेज अंदर का सब लेटर्स दिखता है। Recently ordered 2 books, Shaktiputra Shivaji by Sitaram Goel and Women in Islam by Dada, are West Bengal border people becoming giga chads? Yeah, I've heard. Javier Milei and Modi should meet ASAP. They won't. I'm wondering what's up with Modi not getting invited, because it's a clear message. It's not nothing. There's definitely something up. There's some very, very staunch disagreements going on between USA and Modi. कुछ बवाल होने वाला है शायद, या फिर बवाल चल ही रहा है, and therefore we are going to see some nothing significant maybe, but some problems Trump has realized with us kind of cozying up to China a little. मोदी को बुलाया नहीं है तो मिले, और मोदी भी कभी मिलेंगे भी तो फालतू के ऐसे वो हैंडशेक करके करके फोटोशूट करके छोड़ देंगे। Watch it for lols, it is terrible. H1B, I don't know. It is not customary for PM to attend. No, it is. It was expected of Trump to invite Modi because he's inviting all other right-leaning heads of nations. It's not customary, of course. But Modi lobbied Trump family in backdoor. Yes. Will you react to Charvaka podcast on the end of Hinduism? When did they do it? I have seen the end of Hinduism discussion between the 2-part discussion between Sanjay Dixit and Abhijit Mitra. It's too long and the audio is not that great. Indian PM does not attend inauguration. क्यों? बुलाएगा तो नहीं जाएगा. Putin, Xi and Trump should come on Republic Day. No, Modi didn't invite him. Milei is in his continent. Modi is not. Yeah, Milei is USA's stooge, bhai. Libertarianism works, but that doesn't mean Milei is not USA's stooge. USA propped him up. We did it recently. Oh, acha. So watch it on Nava Vimarsha's channel. Malda, Murshidabad, 24 Pargana, ki path hai. The way it's going, that's the path it will go on. EM is attending inauguration, but PM is not. That's after lobbying, right? That he asked for the invitation so that it's not a complete embarrassment. Vivek Ramaswamy gone to sannyas. Yeah, that's pretty mysterious. Has someone told him that you are being online too much and therefore saying something unnecessarily provocative things? Maybe his family has told him. I don't know. I don't think he's going to listen to anyone other than Apurva Tiwari on this, unless वो हमारा बंदा है and हिंदू deep state का part है and सुहाग शुक्ला ने बोला है उसको. How libertarians deal with Indian borders. अब लोल बर्टेरियन का बात कर रहे हो या लिबर्टेरियन का बात कर रहे हो, उसके ऊपर डिपेंड कर रहा है ऑब्वियसली. लोल बर्टेरियन बोलेगा तो आप बीएसएफ को डिफंड कर दो, सबको आने दो, सब हम यहाँ पे बैठ के मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करेंगे. The libertarian would say that I believe in the broken window theory. इलीगैलिटी के तरफ अगर किसी का एक नैक है, अगर किसी का एक टेंडेंसी है, तो वो भाई मोस्टली लीगल चीज ही करते फिरेगा. वो तुम्हारे सोसाइटी में कोई वैल्यू नहीं कंट्रीब्यूट कर पाएगा. हाँ, कुछ दिन तुम उससे थोड़ा मतलब 20-30 पैसे कम पैसों से कम सैलरी देके कुछ काम करवा लोगे, मगर वो probably criminal बन के ही रहेगा सोसाइटी में, तो which harms your society. Therefore illegal immigration cannot ever be tolerated. Vivek is done, unfortunately. Yeah, maybe. Can you read my previous comment? Didn't I? I did to Lokavya. Oh, yeah, Charvaka podcast. Yeah, I answered. If a person doing illegal things will continue doing illegal things, then do you not believe in spiritual growth? Yes, spiritual growth तो तब होगा जब वो spiritual growth के लिए कुछ करेगा. मतलब इलीगली घुस के 50 रुपए के जगह 10 रुपए में काम कर लेगा, तो उससे क्या स्पिरिचुअल ग्रोथ होगा उसका. Read my previous comments on Jesus and Vimalananda. Wait. Robert E. Voboda, Aghoda. Jews had a rebellion against their own pagan religion, and after that, Jesus has a rebellion against the Jews. So he was technically a pagan until Jews appropriated him for. Acha. No, the one even before. Okay, look, I'll check it out. Because of lack of Hindutva support for men's issues, I see many disgruntled Hindu men moving away from Hindu fold. I don't think so. They are going to be disgruntled from the state apparatus, marriage in general, but not really Hindu fold. I mean, it's not like they're going to become Muslim or Christians because they met a crazy wife. I want Vivek and Elon as a deep right wing. They are not deep. If they are in front of your face, then they are not deep state. It's not about funding. वो जो बच्चे convert हो रहा. अच्छा, is Vaishnavism more impactful in uniting Hindus? I don't know. Because ISKCON claims to be Vaishnavism, but it's not really traditional Vaishnavism, right? Wait, let's check out Lokavya's previous comment. Lokavya, are you certain that the Vedic Dharma and its respective civilization will survive against its Abrahamization from Islamists, Christians, and secularists, de facto Christians? Hinduism in some form will definitely survive, not in West Bengal. And but a bit of it, a bit of Abrahamization of Hinduism will happen. It's inevitable. घर वापसी कर लेगा और देहाती मंदिर को देगा. What more do you need from illegal immigrants besides naturalization? Wait, he's being anarcho-capitalist now. अरे वो कैसे घर वापसी कर लेगा? Why is Thomas Sowell so interested in India? Because, well, very good question. Because India is the perfect case study. तो हर देश में तो हम ये दिखा सकते हैं, देखो भाई सोशलिस्ट देश है इसलिए गड्ढे में चला गया, कैपिटलिस्ट देश है इसलिए उठ गया. इंडिया इज अ स्टेट वेयर यू कैन शो दैट यू सी चुतियापा हो रहा था, गड्ढे में थे, चुतियापा बंद किया थोड़ा बहुत, देखो कहाँ उठ गए. इसलिए ही ब्रिंग्स अप 1991 एंड इंडिया रिपीटेडली. What do you think of using the Dashavatar? Sorry, you were asking this question repeatedly. As a counter to casteism arguments, Parshuram was a warrior son of a Brahmin, Ram was the ascetic son of a king, and Krishna was a Yadav politician. Oh, never mind. Yeah. So, see, in terms of debating a commie on whether Hinduism actually advocates casteism or not, for that, you can, of course, use this. And then someone will, again, bring in the idea of next birth or some other text which has said something else, etc. So I'm not a person who has read much Hindu text, so I can't take this line of argument. So I take other lines to prove that casteism is an inevitable thing that happens everywhere, and therefore it has nothing to do with specifically Hinduism, as shown by Irfan Habib, Romila Thapar, Declan Quigley, Nicholas Dirks, Max Weber. You use every source against casteism, including the Shavatar. Right. जिनको जो आता है वो उस बेसिस से तुम डिबेट करो. I used to be ANCAP when I was younger, but Cappy propaganda and pushes people toward degeneracy. Anyways, my opinions, but yeah. Let me sleep. Guddam, धर्म की जय हो, अधर्म का नाश हो, and socialism का विनाश हो. Yes. See, just because USA में हुआ है इसलिए हर वक्त डिजेनरेसी ही होगा, ये ठीक नहीं है ये सोचना. We can learn from USA's mistake. Read Conrad Elst. Read Conrad Elst? No, I haven't read anything. अरे मैंने Conrad Elst का पूछ के कुछ नहीं पढ़ा आज तक, अभी याद आया. What the fuck? How haven't I read anything by Conrad Elst? Conrad Elst का इतना इधर उधर पढ़ लिया हूँ. Shit, I have not read anything by Conrad Elst. कोई book नहीं दिख रहा है यहाँ पे. Fuck. कुछ पढ़ना पड़ेगा. The point is that if Bhagwan is caste fluid, then why do you assume that now वो ये तो तुम्हारा प्रश्न का उत्तर कॉमियो ने दे दिया है दिल्ली 6 मूवी में, where who is the director? Raju Hirani. He shows that some guy says that ये देखो हनुमान जी तो सबके हाथ के, या फिर राम जी सबके हाथ से खा रहे हैं, तो आप क्यों अनटचेबिलिटी में विश्वास करते हैं? तो द कास्टिज्म बिलीवर सेज दैट वो तो जी वो गॉड है जी, उनको तो सब अलाउड है, हम तो इंसान है, हमको अलाउड नहीं है. हाउ गुड इज एल्स वर्क? Pretty good. I don't agree with him on everything, certain trivial things, but it's pretty legit work. No one debunks him to his face. People only debunk him behind his back. He gets wind of it and debunks it on Twitter again or writes a review. तो हम क्या करें? फेस टू फेस डिबेट नहीं करने से हम जिन्होंने पूरा का पूरा टाइम इतिहास पढ़ने में नहीं लगाया है, हमको कैसे पता चलेगा? Your opinion about future of AI in the next decade and its effects on India? More jobs, more creativity. Ayappa, Unique Sampradaya, KW Publishers. Oh, Ukrainians became cappies and their women made OnlyFans. Shah of Iran was a cappy and short skirts is how they are remembered. Pakistan under anti-land reforms. No, you see, Iran is remembered for short skirts today because the discourse has shifted only towards hijab, because it's a way to counter only feminists, no? Because feminists say that, see, wearing less clothes is progress and freedom. Therefore, if you say that, how can you support hijab? उसके लिए लोग दिखाते हैं कि देखो भाई शॉर्ट स्कर्ट पहन देते ईरान में, मगर ईरान और भी बहुत कुछ अच्छा कर रहा था तब. One based on good and karma. Yeah, but is there clarification on whether the gun and karma is from past generation or this life का गुण एंड कर्मा के बेसिस पे वर्ण होता है? और वैसे भी हमारा कंसर्न तो वर्ण एग्जैक्टली नहीं है, जाति है. हैव यू रेड श्रीकांत तलगरी ऑन एआईटी? ये प्रश्न तुमने मुझसे पूछ के बहुत दुख दिया मुझे. मैंने 2022 के जनवरी के बुक फेयर में वो बुक खरीदा था, द आर्यन इन्वेजन थ्योरी एंड इंडियन नेशनलिज्म बाय श्रीकांत जी तलगरी. उसका मैंने इंट्रोडक्शन पढ़ा है और फर्स्ट चैप्टर का थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ा है, and I was convinced anyway, इसलिए अभी तक खत्म नहीं किया है. Someday I'll finish it from our live streams only. Red Pill movement comes from the West, which is Christianity focused. If Hindutva side doesn't raise men's issues, Christianity influenced Red Pill. First line of Gita says karma is decided by birth. Later we get to change it through actions and bhakti. Which is the best commentary on Bhagavad Gita? ये क्वेश्चन का कोई आंसर है भी या? कुशल ने तो बोला है कि रामकृष्ण मिशन वाला बेस्ट है, और कुछ लोगों का मानना है कि वो गीता प्रेस का बेस्ट है. मैंने I've given up on this translation debate भाई. Where is casteism in Sanatan धर्म? ये क्या कमेंट है? Oh, अच्छा, that's a link. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says your identity is your soul. Which translation? Karma Yoga, the one that makes sense to you. Harsh, how is his health? Apparently suffers from a lot of autoimmune diseases. Whose health? Not written anything about previous birth there. Okay, if not previous birth, then does the karma of this life result in you being in that varna based on the action of this life in the next life? Secularists are taking up men's issues. वैसे invest there, I'd say. Dada, did you watch Sandeep Sanyal on Hinduism? Oh, I have watched the video. I watched it the day you sent it. We'll do a live reaction of it. वो बाकी है. Liberal framework for Hinduism, right? Yeah, उसका live reaction करना पड़ेगा. Read Swami Vivekananda all the four. No, I've not read anything by Swami Vivekananda. After Buddhism, karma definition kind of changed. Yes, many people blame Buddhism for solidifying birth-based casteism because of karma. Read my comment, starts with Cappies always. Yeah, I responded to it. You were gone for a while. Really good video by Sanjeev. Yeah. Harsh, okay, ये तो हो गया. I talked to him about SRG and Ram Swarup. I told him when I was reading How I Became a Hindu and how passionate he was for. Yes, How I Became a Hindu, one of the best books I've ever read. Have you read Deepak Ghosh? The Bhagavad Gita is clear. Your nature decides your varna. Does it decide in this life or the next life? And Krishna specifically calls out birth. Oh, acha. Holy shit. अरे तो ए ऋषभ, ये एक बात बताओ तुम कि ये तुम लोग बार बार गीता ला रहे हो एज अ काउंटर टू बर्थ बेस्ड कास्टिज्म एज a sort of a matter of fact and obvious casual thing कि देखो भाई गीता में है तो कहाँ का बर्थ बेस्ड कास्टिज्म. तो मुझे बोलो कि तब इतने लोग कहाँ से इसका जस्टिफिकेशन ढूंढ निकाल रहे हैं. स्टेट इंसेंटिवाइजेशन तो अब है, स्टेट इंसेंटिवाइजेशन से पहले कैसे जस्टिफिकेशन निकाल रहे थे, किसी को कैसे दिमाग में आके नहीं, लेट्स डू समथिंग दैट कृष्णा एंड भगवत गीता एंड शिवा इन ब्रह्म पुराण सेज, उसका ऑपोजिट कुछ करते हैं, चलो कुछ करते हैं, निकालते हैं. ऐसा कैसे हुआ फिर? By the way, we need to step up. Delhi University is teaching Shukraniti, but the syllabus claims Shukracharya is a radical. Puneet Sahani. I've heard Puneet Sahani only once or twice because I'm not that concerned about that part of the nationalist discourse. क्योंकि वो फाइट करने के लिए और भी बहुत लोग हैं और उसमें मेरा बेस नॉलेज ही कुछ नहीं है पंजाब के लेकर, इसलिए मैं घुसता नहीं उसमें. For me, Kashmiri Shaivism and Tantra is the pinnacle of Hinduism on par with Upanishad. Feudalist society, मनुस्मृति में ये सब बर्थ बेस्ड है, I guess. Haven't read it so yet. So, but अब तो लोग तो मनुस्मृति कोट करके ही बोल रहे थे कि भाई बर्थ बेस्ड नहीं है, इंक्लूडिंग सावरकर. लवेश, what are your views on Acharya Prashant and Sadhguru? Acharya Prashant, I was disappointed because of his criticism of Kantara as a movie. Other than that, I have not listened to him much. And Sadhguru, I don't listen to Sadhguru at all. I only the only anything by Sadhguru I've watched are two things. One was his appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, where I found out some interesting things about depletion of topsoil, and his sort of group trip to Kailash Mansarovar. What do I think of him? I don't think anything of gurus because first of all, who am I to unless they are doing extremely significantly something harmful, I'm not that bothered about them. If they are giving someone some discipline, some focus, something to fall back on and some mental peace, ठीक है, करिए जो करना है. तो they are just not in my cinematic universe. That's all I'm saying. और अगर गुरुओं को लेकर ये चीज है कि जो लोग इनके भक्त है, जो लोग इनको सुनते हैं, जो लोग एक्चुअली डिसाइपल है, मे बी इन पर्सन और इवन ऑनलाइन, they are so dependent on those gurus that if they are my viewers, I don't want to piss them off unnecessarily because these two people are not that significantly harmful. And although Acharya Prashant seems to, I've heard that he gives sort of a woke version of Hinduism. तो फालतू में, मतलब अगर तुम्हारा कोई मेंटल लाइफ का कुछ स्टेबिलिटी चल रहा है आचार्य प्रशांत की वजह से एंड या फिर सदगुरु की वजह से, वो मैं अफेक्ट नहीं करना चाहता हूँ विथ माय क्यूरियस एजी गाय विथ वाईफाई कमेंट्री से. Those are a little more, I think, serious and delicate matters to discuss. We need to differentiate between Kathavachak and gurus. Yes. Communities were feudal. If we were born in a tribe of degenerates, we were a lower, but we can leave the tribe and become better. But Sampradaya has to accept us. Turacharya has been convincingly explored. Acha. Yeah, seems to me. Bro, but Krishna was born in jail. Kansa and other Asuras used to call him cow herder because he was a normal village boy. For me, Kathanjali. Later commentaries and Smritis brought it, I think. No, but my question is, पहली बात तो है लेटर कमेंट्रीज को हिम्मत कैसे हुआ? भगवत गीता, लॉर्ड कृष्णा, ब्रह्मपुराण भी वैसे बहुत ओल्ड नहीं है, ठीक है. आज का जो ब्रह्मपुराण सर्कुलेशन में है, जो कि विवेक देवराय का ट्रांसलेशन है, ये 1300 AD 1200 AD का ब्रह्मपुराण है. तो किसी का हिम्मत कैसे हुआ ये सबको डिस्कार्ड करके नया बर्थ बेस्ड कास्टिज्म बनाने का? और उसके बाद किसी का हिम्मत कैसे हुआ कि गीता, कृष्णा, ब्रह्मपुराण, शिव जी छोड़ के लेटर कमेंट्रीज फॉलो करने का? With rise of AI in coming decades, don't you think socialism and communism will see a resurgence again? Not necessarily. Coffee at night, I used to sleep, but with tea, I. Oh, someone asked, what's your brand of coffee? I used to be like, any coffee will do. So I was going on consuming Nescafe for a long time. Now a friend has been gifting me Colombian brew, and this is the best coffee I've ever had. Have you seen Premanand Maharaj? No. There are so many anti-caste discrimination to. Yeah, that's my point. I know these things. I'm convinced of your argument. I'm saying इतने सारे लोगों को ये कैसे दिमाग में नहीं आया? Because I'm saying that casteism ultimately है inevitable और अब तो states incentivized भी है. So what I'm basically countering to you is that it didn't happen based on any text. गीता में लिखा हो या ना हो, ये इससे किसी को फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. Which is proven by the fact that people actually rejected Gita, Brahma Puran to go on with casteism, because it's an inevitable thing that will happen in society. No one cares about texts as much as they pretend to. Even Mahabharata has stories of changing varnas for good. Yeah, जहां जो लिखना है लिख दो. लोग प्रोफेशन बेस्ड एसोसिएशंस बनाएंगे, कुछ प्रोफेशंस का वैल्यू अलग होगा सोसाइटी में, उसके बेसिस पे तुम्हारा स्टेटस हाई होगा या लो होगा, और सब लोग चाहेंगे कि अपना बेटा बेटी अपने या एटलीस्ट बेटा अपने प्रोफेशंस में घुसे, और फिर वो करने से एक जॉब सिक्योरिटी भी रहता है कि हाँ और कुछ करना नहीं है, मैं माइक बनाता हूँ, मेरा बेटा भी माइक बनाएगा गारंटीड, मुझसे जो माइक खरीदता था उसका बेटा भी मेरे बेटे से ही माइक खरीदेगा, तो हो गया पूरा इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी. और अब जो माइक बनाता है वो डिस्क्रिमिनेट करेगा किसके साथ? जो कि माइक स्टैंड बनाता है. वो काइंड ऑफ इजियर टू मेक है, देयरफॉर थोड़ा लो पेइंग है, तो भाग भोसरी के माइक स्टैंड मेकर. ऐसा ही होगा. जितना बुक में लिख दो कि नो नो नो, एनीवन कैन मेक माइक, एनीवन कैन मेक माइक स्टैंड, नो वन गिव्स अ शिट. Bhaiya, I want to unite at least 20 Hindus. How should I? ये तो आरएसएस से पूछना पड़ेगा. Maybe during Ashoka period it started changing, but this is my guess. I don't know. I'm saying it's inevitable. Yes, exactly. They ignored these texts because this suited castes in media. No literature can. Yes. Exactly what Rishabh is saying here. You have black coffee? Yes, only black coffee. Without milk, without sugar. Do a live book reading of Mitasri. I once heard Thomas Well saying Indian society would have been better have we. Yes, obviously. अरे इसमें प्रश्न कहाँ पे है? He is against affirmative action as well. For caste literature and script, they refer to Smritis. Yes. Last question. Outside of artificial economic equality, how else will we combat an increasingly individualistic, industrialized society as a religion civilization, which is because see, community का बेसिस ना कुछ के बेसिस पे हो ही जाता है. कम्युनिटी अभी तक तो था प्रोफेशन के बेसिस पे, मतलब कास्ट नाम से, जाति नाम से. बाद में भी वही होगा. मतलब हम वी आर ऑल टेक ब्रो टर्म ही है कास्ट. तो कोई ब्यूरोक्रेट को गाली देता है तो संजय दीक्षित भी खड़ा हो जाता है संजीव सन्याल को क्रिटिसाइज करने के लिए. वो है कास्ट सॉलिडारिटी. टॉलीवुड वालों को देखो, जो मैंने तुम तो बंगाली नहीं हो शायद, तो सबका कास्ट सॉलिडारिटी चल ही रहा है, तो उस बेसिस पे ही चलेगा. और उसके बाहर भी है फैन क्लब्स, हैरी पॉटर फैन क्लब वगैरह, ऐसे ही चलेगा. कास्ट हमेशा ही रहेगा, कम्युनिटी हमेशा ही रहेगा. इंडिविजुअलिस्ट जो हम बनते जा रहे हैं, ये सिर्फ रिलेटिव है इन कंपैरिजन टू द एग्जिस्टिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस एंड फ्रेमवर्क्स ऑफ व्हाट यूज्ड टू बी कॉल्ड कम्युनिटी ट्रेडिशनली. मगर नए कम्युनिटीज, नए इंस्टीट्यूशंस, नए कम्युनिटीज बन रहे हैं. कम्युनिटी के बगैर कोई नहीं रहता है. हाँ, अब कुछ लोग जो सुसाइड वगैरह कर रहे हैं, उसके साथ हाई कैलोरी डाइट वगैरह, और देखो 1990 से क्या हो रहा है, हमारा बहुत से चीज, हमारे जनरेशंस कुछ ना कुछ फर्स्ट टाइम कर रहे हैं। तो फर्स्ट टाइम करने से, पायोनियरिंग करने से सबका गार्ड जलता ही है, सबको बहुत कुछ फेस करना ही पड़ता है। तो अब बहुत कुछ ऐसा फर्स्ट टाइम हो रहा है कि मतलब अगर गांव से कोई लड़का पुणे बेंगलोर में जाके रह रहा है, वो किसी के साथ फ्रेंडशिप बना नहीं पा रहा है, उसका सर्कल, अपब्रिंगिंग, कल्चर कैपिटल, सोशल कैपिटल पूरा ही अलग है, तो पूरा अकेला जिंदगी बिता रहा है, सिर्फ दारू पी रहा है, जो खाओ भोसरी के सब कुछ हाई कैलोरी है, वर्कआउट का उतना उसको ज्ञान नहीं है, या फिर इम्पोर्टेंट है भी ये भी पता नहीं है, तो एक दिन वो सुसाइड कर रहा है। तो अब मतलब उसके लिए कम्युनिटी नाम का चीज सोसाइटी से उठ गया है, ऐसा नहीं है। दादा, हैव यू एवर मेट राजेश नंदी? नो। हैरी पॉटर फैन क्लब हैज टू बी द मोस्ट ट्रूथ। If you're Nastik, I urge you to listen to the Shabdas of Guru Granth Sahib. They are heart-wrenching and you would appreciate. I see. ये मैंने कभी सोचा नहीं, ये भी कभी पढ़ना पड़ेगा. Do not think of even comparing or mentioning in the same breath the Panth Sanatan with the... अरे भाई, ये हमको ऊपर भेजेगा. सोच रहा हूँ RSS ज्वाइन करने का. पापा बोले he'll talk since he works for BJP, being a communist. दादा, you नास्तिका और आस्तिका? Astika. But I never use Astika arguments. This is something I've learned from Ben Shapiro. But Ben Shapiro, I guess, uses it because of their civic nationalist kind of a situation. But I use it because I reach better, more solid conclusions. And Astika arguments just become easy. देखो ये text में है, या फिर मुझे लग रहा है भगवान ये बोल रहे हैं, therefore this and that. But I use my Astikaness only for my personal mental guidance and my spiritual upliftment, and for making me a mentally strong person and clear-headed person and motivated person. मुझे और कुछ नहीं चाहिए भगवान से. Do you see AI being integrated in government body? Yes, absolutely. Anytime now. And you don't know where to begin with Sikh history, then perhaps collab with the Hindu Vichardhara show. Right. I haven't met Rajesh Nandi. Anime anime gotra entai jati. Ish. Dada, do you invest in stock market, and what do you think about current situation in... I'm not a trader, no, so I don't give a shit about current situations. I'm only investing only for 20 or 30 years down the line. Yes, I do invest. Some Nifty Bs, some mutual funds, etc. What do you think about the institution of family? It's important. कोरियन ड्रामा जाति. डू नॉट कंपेयर. हाँ, हो गया. इंसल जाति. इंसल तो जाति है ही. But are the modern day communities as effective in supporting people as no, they are not as of yet. हो जाएगा. पहले दिन से तो वो भी नहीं हुआ था ना. ये सब communities तो मतलब एक generation पुराना है. Porn stars can also raise well-adjusted individuals. They get a lot of help from professionals. I don't think so. Make Discord, bro. No, I can't, because some Trinamuli will infiltrate it and someone will advocate for violence and I'll be in jail. Pakistani Zara Jati, lol. What's their farna? पूरा पाकिस्तान एक स्टेटस ग्रुप है. Any more comments? अरे सोने दो भाई लोग. And by the way, Guru Gobind Singh was a Durga worshipper and Guru Har Gobind was a Chandi worshipper. So maybe a podcast on them will be an honor for the Bongo Pakho, Rantak Pakho, who believe that they own... Yeah. And they think Bengalis have been forever worshippers of Ma Durga. ये संप्रदाय नाम का चीज तो ठीक है, मुझे पता नहीं था, मगर तुम लोग तो भोसरी के शाक्त हो, मटन खाते हो, तुम लोगों को भी पता नहीं है लौड़े. अब बोल रहे हैं कि जो लोग माँ दुर्गा को वर्शिप करते हैं वो ही है ट्रू बंगाली. अरे अजीब बात है. अब सब बंगाली में शाक्त है. ये क्लेम है उनका. Degenerate jati. Korea is cool because of their pop culture. Yeah. Are the cities getting more and more worse? In terms of pollution, yes. Let's chovarna. Circle jerk of cholesterol level. No. तुम नहीं जानते हमारे opposition को भाई. No other community is more obsessed with post gotra jati. Lol. Ish. ब्राह्मणों की तरह भिक्षा अरे भाई, बेगिंग एंड आर्म्स आर नॉट सेम अग्रवाल. ये देखो बनिया, एंटी ब्राह्मण बनिया. Out of 13 akhada, 3 are Sikh. I meant individualism ruining institution of family. वो तो a lot of things have been set in motion in the case of Bengal partition, in the rest of India, movies, Bollywood, Hollywood, etc. उसको हम रिवर्स कैसे करेंगे? जो जिस चीज ने डैमेज किया है उसी को रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा, और कुछ से नहीं होगा. और थोड़ा इंसेंटिवाइजेशन के, अगर फैमिली है तो टैक्स ब्रेक्स दो, जैसे कि हंगरी में abortion को libertarians have this sort of a first principle that don't disincentivize things, instead incentivize things. Okay, तो इसके लिए टैक्स बढ़ा दो, ऐसा मत करो, इसके लिए वो बैन कर दो, वो मत करो, उसका जो ऑपोजिट बिहेवियर चाहते हो वो इंसेंटिवाइज करो. तो हंगरी में जैसे कि यूएसए में लौड़े लोग अबॉर्शन पे, ठीक है, अबॉर्शन के खिलाफ मैं भी हूं, मगर अबॉर्शन पे भाषणबाजी करके कुछ उखाड़ नहीं पाते हैं. हंगरी में फैमिली होगा तो टैक्स ब्रेक मिलेगा, ये इंसेंटिवाइज कर दिया, अबॉर्शन का रेट्स घट गया बहुत बहुत हाई परसेंटेज से. तो ये सब चीजों से हमको जो इंडिविजुअलिज्म एट ऑड्स विथ फैमिली हो गया है, ये कम करना है. बट यू हैव टू रिमेंबर दैट इंडिविजुअलिज्म हैज हिस्टोरिकली नेवर बीन एट ऑड्स विथ कम्युनिटी, फैमिली, रिलीजन इन हिंदुइज्म, बिकॉज इष्ट देवता है ही इसलिए, तुम्हारा इंडिविजुअल ट्रेट्स के लिए. What's your opinion on sex education in schools for preschool children? कहाँ गया? अरे खुद से scroll up हो गया. हाँ, preschool children like in America for India, would it be a pro or con? Preschool children के लिए क्यों? I think age 15-16 से ठीक है. फिर भी I think that cat is out of the bag pretty much. अब पॉर्न कोई बैन नहीं कर सकता है, स्मार्टफोन कोई अगर फैमिली दे देता है हाथ में तो वो भी गया गड्ढे में. इंस्टाग्राम में भोसरी के मदर्स आर गोइंग ऑन ट्रेनिंग देयर डॉटर्स टू बी एब्सोल्यूट sluts. Either they have no conception of what a slut is, or they are that fame hungry that they want their daughters to become big celebrities when they grow up, or actresses, so they are preparing for that from now on. Or they are just that naive and innocent that they think that I see my daughter in a very cute and loving way, therefore no matter how she dresses and no matter what the size of her boobs, everyone will look at her the same way, even if she's a minor. So I don't think अब sex education पढ़ाने से या ना पढ़ाने से कुछ अलग नहीं होने वाला है अब. That ship has sailed. What do you think of Subhash Chandra Bose death mystery? I am absolutely in agreement with Anuj Dhar since 2013, not even when I was a right winger. पहले तो laws change करो. या हाँ, laws also come under social science. Social science से narrative पहले घुमाना पड़ेगा, फिर laws change होगा. कांगड़ू जाति must be ताशकंद मैन और गुमनामी बाबा. वकफ गोत्र इश सिंपल है, गिव मनी फॉर बिहेवियर. yes. There's a shabd written by Guru Tegh Bahadur as he was waiting his execution by Aurangzeb. It's called Take Ek Raghunath, I urge you to listen as a Nastik Astik or whatever. I see. Nice. Today, आज तो शायद टाइम नहीं होगा, but you've put me on you've made me think about a different path. I hadn't ever thought of researching a bit of Sikhism. I'll look it up now. Preschool नहीं पर 10-11 year olds. Do you do gaming दादा? नहीं भाई नीनर, वैसे मैं जब छोटा था तब मेरा बहुत सारे फेवरेट कुछ गेम्स थे. FIFA 98, FIFA 2002, Max Payne 2, Quake 3, Quake 2 एंड ये सब, और रोड रैश ऑब्वियसली. उसके बाद से मैंने वीडियो गेम नहीं खेला, और उसके बाद से वीडियो गेम खेलने के लिए इतना पावरफुल कंप्यूटर जरूरी हो गया, उसके बाद मैंने हाथ उठा लिया. हो जाती VPN जिंदाबाद. थोड़ा पॉइंट तो चाहिए होता है. Yes, in Hindu culture, individualism and collectivism is very well balanced. Yes, we can see Hindu families having low divorce rates in the West. I think too much of state. Yes, of course. That should be real sex education. Which one? No sectarianism will always be there. All denominations fight. There will be no 100% unity. True. Which should be real sex education? Kama Sutra. Max Payne win. Yes. Dada, do you want to make this sustainable through Medium, Blogspot, and your own community? I have not decided. कौन जात बा? संगीतज्ञ। तो अब बहुत सारे स्पेशली साउथ में बहुत सारे तो लोग वो मतलब मैंडोलिन श्रीनिवासन ऐसे लिखते ही है, तो उन लोगों ने काइंड ऑफ मान लिया है कि ये मेरा जाति है मैंडोलिन। ड्रमर वगैरह लिखते हैं नाम में, मिडिल नेम में। Yeah, should you try this monk bullshit? It worked, but failed eventually. Okay, then let's go to sleep now. Teaching kids how to treat sex, making lasting relations, who to commit to. Yeah, ये family से होगा, ये school से नहीं होगा, especially with porn being available so easily and with the presence of such insane mothers. Insta भी बैन होना चाहिए, soft porn culture बहुत है. इंस्टा बैन करने का बहुत सारे आर्ग्यूमेंट्स है. माय कंसर्न इज हाउ टू एनफोर्स इट, क्योंकि मेरा भी यूट्यूब अकाउंट जब से है तब आई वाज नॉट सपोज टू हैव इट. यूट्यूब भी थियोरेटिकली अबव 18 के लिए था एक वक्त पे, तो मतलब एज फॉर्ज करने में क्या जाता है. अब इंस्टाग्राम पूरी तरह से बंद कर दोगे तो बहुत सारे लोगों का खाना पीना ही बंद हो जाएगा, तो वो ठीक नहीं है. If you say Instagram should be banned for under 16-year-olds, then I'm with you, but I have no fucking idea how to enforce it. कुछ ना कुछ login ID से घुस जाएगा. Madeline Srinivas is absolutely amazing though. Do a podcast. Relax. ये मैं बहुत दिन से सोच रहा हूँ, कभी कभी करना पड़ेगा म्यूजिक पॉडकास्ट. दादा लिसन टू महेश काले, कन्नड़ राजा पंधरीचा. महेश काले का मैंने कुछ और भी सुना है इस बीच में. Dada just had a thought. Are surnames like pilot, engineer, polo? They're not jati identities technically, but in my way of thinking about caste, yes, they are, and they were meant to have the same effect. But traditionally, वो designation नहीं मिला है शायद उन लोगों को. मगर वो मतलब कुछ ना कुछ बिजनेस या मतलब हाथ से काम करने वाला जाति आइडेंटिटी है, जाति ही है शायद ऑफिशियली ये लोग. We need sexual discipline more than sex education. ये तो ना स्टेट कर सकेगा ना फैमिली एग्जैक्टली बोल सकेगा. Dude, our folk music is all pure soft. In my humble view, actual Sikh history never truly received its due since the literature was bastardized. Caricatured by the politicians. Just I see. Insta ban करेगा तो folk music भी ban करेगा क्या? Yeah. Mahesh Kale and Rahul Deshpande. I think that's the group I heard. I can't remember where I heard these two names recently. By the way, have you all heard Salim Sulaiman's collaboration with Pineapple Express? Pineapple Express at the moment is my favorite metal band. My favorite kind of metal is progressive metal. And Pineapple Express does exactly that kind of metal that I like. Tesseract, Textures, Pliny, that genre. और सलीम सुलेमान ने भाई पाइनएप्पल एक्सप्रेस के साथ कोलैबोरेशन कर लिया. ओफ, व्हाट अ सॉन्ग. फक. सलीम सुलेमान आई थिंक आर द ओनली वंस हु हैव चेंज्ड द लैंडस्केप, द म्यूजिक साउंडस्केप ऑफ इंडिया 3-4 times. A.R. Rahman changed it once. M.M. Keeravani changed it with Bahubali. Salim Sulaiman changed it in the year 98-99 in the independent semi-classical folk fusion scene. No one realized it because they didn't know it was done by Salim Sulaiman with the first Bhumi album. Then they got into background scores with Dhoom, officially their first designated score. Completely different genre. Everyone lost their minds with it. They changed the scape with that. Then they were assisting arrangements with Jatin Lalit. They changed Jatin Lalit's later arrangements, Fana, then Hum Tum, etc. Then they become composers, create a different genre. All 90s kids grew up on Salim Sulaiman, Shankar Ehsaan stuff. And then they have officially kind of quit Bollywood. They have said fuck you to Bollywood. And they are doing the Bhumi 2020, 21, 22, 24 stuff. And now they are changing the genre again by working with people like bands like Pineapple Express. What a project. Holy fuck. Thanks for answering our questions. Very nice of you. Thank you, Hindu Rashtra. इंस्टा बैन करेगा. पॉर्न शुड बी बैंड इन इंडिया, शुड बी. अरे कैसे बैन करोगे? ये बैन करना इम्पॉसिबल है. देचो लोगों को खाना पीना नहीं है मत. Pilot is necessarily Parsi. I've seen Muslim and Gujju Punawalas as well. After Punawala, yeah. Genti prog metal, yes. I think our texts talk about sexual discipline all the time with techniques to achieve it. Yes. Emperor for music is Mac Jati. But a few are Hindus as well. But acha, music is alien to me. I miss the bus. Guru Gobind Singh also wrote Chandi Charitra, which was an anthem or shabd which the Khalsa used to chant on their way to the. Oh, porn is already banned. If I'm एनफोर्समेंट नहीं होता है, फालतू में ये देखो बैन करूंगा या करना चाहिए या कर दिया है, ये बोल के फालतू में कुछ लोग वोट उठाते हैं. ये यूजलेस कॉन्वर्सेशन है. घर वापसी कैसे करें? पैसे दो. और या फिर अभी भी काइंड ऑफ पैसों से ओवरऑल कम्युनिटी सोशल फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट से ही हो रहा है घर वापसी जो भी हो रहा है. व्हाट डू यू थिंक अबाउट द 40,000 टेम्पल्स फिगर? आई थिंक इट कुड बी मोर. आई डोंट केयर अबाउट द फिगर. जितना है सब निकालो, सब वापस चाहिए. Look after, thanks for introducing Sikhi. Yes, thank you. अच्छा तो अब खत्म करते हैं. Okay then, better quality rises. Then thank you guys. Thanks a lot for these questions. We had a nice discussion. Thanks for joining guys. See you soon. Good night. Bye bye.
श्रवरूढं महाभीमं गुणाद्रष्टाम्बरप्रदम् अस्य युक्तं त्रिनेत्रं च कपालकर्णिकाकरां मुक्तकेशीं ललज्जयं पिबन्तीं रुधिरं चतुर्बाहुसमायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत्. चतुर्बाहुसमायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत्. काली काली महाकाली कालिके पापहारिणी धर्मर्थ मोक्ष देवी